effect received was random each time, and now his agility was reduced by 60. His current stat was 61, and the debuff will barely put him above the negatives. In the magic tower, one's body structure changes based on their stats, and he'll eventually become immobile if this continues. Once that happens, he won't be able to continue as a challenger, and will end up burdened and anchored with debt. After gambling all his money away on a completely worthless skill, as he revived once more, frustration started to take over. The young man's eyes opened wide as a beam of light shined on his beaten body. He lay on a pile of rubble, having fallen several meters down. With his agility down to 1, he feels extremely heavy, and it'll be hard to even move anymore. Unable to do anything about it, he looks around, wondering where he fell to. It's odd as he's never heard of such a place in the lower levels. Something catches his eyes at the end of the long corridor, and he screams in surprise as he sees a golden skill stone, one of the rarest of them all. If he manages to sell something like that, it might just be able to cover the debts he's in. His eyes beamed with determination as he promised to bring it back no matter what happens. There are no monsters in the vicinity, so it should be an easy win for him. However, he feels something shift as soon as he steps forward. Holes appeared on the walls. Suddenly and without any warning, countless daggers were shot out, riddling his entire body with blades that dug deep into his flesh. He screamed for a few agonizing moments until infinite revival kicked in and brought him back to life. This time, a permanent debuff of -65 was applied to his strength. Yudo jumped up in shock, heaving and panting from the experience. With this, he realizes that he's trapped between life and death. However, he refuses to be stopped by such a low-level trick. He can't move his limbs since even his muscle strength has been reduced. Nonetheless, he pushed forward, but felt something as he leaned on the wall for support. This time, a stone dragon appeared, with eyes beaming and identifying its target. It unleashes a torrent of flames, incinerating his entire body. The cycle continued. Knowing what was about to happen, he dodged the fire as soon as he was brought back to life. Fortunately, he manages not to trigger anything, despite rolling around on the floor. He finally understands the reason why the narrow path exists. It's meant to lure challengers and effectively kill them with traps while enticed by the rare skill stone. In normal circumstances, people would not be able to pass, no matter how many lives they have. Unfortunately for all of them, Yudo was currently the weakest challenger in the tower, but he's already gone through life and death multiple times. Overflowing with determination, he dashed forward, not caring about the fate that awaited him at every step. A guillotine drops, and the first death of the charge comes. Undeterred, he tries again, even with the debuffs. This happens again and again, so much so that he eventually loses count and sensation. Each passing is horrid and agonizing, while his consciousness slips more and more with each revival. However, he smiles in the end as he emerges victorious, and puts his hand on the magic stone at the end of the path. His life was finally about to change, but his eyes lost focus and his life slipped away once more. The system asks if he wants to use the stone. As he was too hazy to respond, it takes it as an automatic affirmation, and activates on its own. With this, Yudo acquires the skill, Inversion. As always, he wakes up, this time with eyes oddly clear and bright. He moves around, feeling stronger and more vital than ever, and not even feeling the debuffs of his skill. Confused, he checks his status, and is shocked to find something different. All the negative effects on his statuses until now have all reversed and turned into buffs that make him stronger. The negative effects Yudo had been receiving since he got his skill have all turned positive and are now making him stronger. At the bottom of his stats, the window informs him that he's acquired a new skill. Inversion reverses all effects, including buffs, debuffs, and status abnormalities. His eyes grew in understanding. Thanks to that new ability, all the debuffs he's received so far have all switched to grant him positive effects. With his memory still hazy, he wonders where he got such a skill, then falls silent as he sees the empty box in front of him, missing the rare stone he was after. The valuable item was automatically used upon his touch, and while the pros are immeasurable, he can't help but feel sad since he can't sell it anymore. Looking at the brighter side, if the downsides of infinite revival are really reversed, then he'll only get stronger with every death. With this power, he can now rise to the top as a challenger. He vows to do just that, earn a fortune, and make his name known throughout the world. Putting a pin on that goal for now, he turns to the deadly path he just took, and realizes that he has to pass through it again. The instant death traps have returned to their pre-activated state, and he's pretty sure that they'll get triggered again if he gets close. In other words, he'll have to go through a handful of deaths like before. The young man breaks down, remembering the torture he went through just moments ago. Even if he's revived, every single death is still painful enough to make a normal person go insane. If he dies too many horrific deaths in a row, then he'll definitely lose his mind before getting out. For a short while, he shudders at the thought, but calms himself down eventually. Thanks to Inversion, his current stats are about double the original values. With that taken into consideration, he might just be able to break through the traps head-on. The uncertainty of things makes him gulp. Regardless, there is no other way to get through without dying. He plants his feet on the ground and gets ready to try. Dashing forward, the young man disappears in an instant. The traps are triggered like they were earlier, but his current speed was incomparable. Spear shot out and reached his face in no time. Mere millimeters from his eyes, the challenger sped up and with impressive agility, maneuvered around the weapons perfectly, dodging each and every one. Emerging unscathed, he confirms that he can not only see them, but move fast enough to stay safe. Turning into a completely different person within moments, he faces the next set of traps with newfound confidence and blasts through them. Void of the hesitations that used to fill his body, the guillotine from before came like the others, but it was too slow and weak, barely even posing a threat as he quickly moved to the next challenge. This time, the fire-breathing stone dragon emerged, poised to incinerate him once more. Yudo won't let that happen again, and summons a sword from his inventory. As soon as he felt the weapon on his palms, he charged in to destroy the statue before it could even launch an attack. He steps on the last tile and triggers the set of dagger launchers, the first trap that killed him. Already expecting it, the glint in his eyes changed. Instead of dodging, he parried and deflected each blade with his own, proving the difference from before. He let a deep breath out after, and stood tall amid the rubble as he convinced himself. With a combination of the death penalties obtained each time he's killed and the inversion skill, he really can become the strongest challenger in history. The path of traps had been crossed, and all that was left to do now was climb back up. If it was the old him, the very idea of heading back up would have been impossible. Fortunately, the old him is long gone. Crouching down and gathering strength into his legs, Yudo launched himself to the ceiling and bounced off the sides of the walls to make his way up. All it takes is a little effort and focus to reach the opening to the upper floor. Still high in the sky, he faces the elite demon that killed him earlier and apologizes for making it wait too long. Landing lightly on his feet, he gripped his shabby blade ready. They were still far from each other, but suddenly clashed in the blink of an eye. Sparks flew as the enemies tested each other's strength, but they quickly fell back upon realizing the change. The demon watched silently, not knowing what happened, but the challenger just pointed his blade, asking if he wanted to try killing him again. Provoked by his arrogance, it roared in rage to affirm its choice. However, Yudo's eyes were void of the fear they earlier contained, and he's actually happy to play along. With just one life, how long can it fight against someone who has infinite revivals? He dashed in, excited to find out. Yudo made several quick steps toward his enemy, quickly closing the gap and reaching the demon's chest. With vision that's able to keep up with its movements, he dodges. As he thought, it's amazing how abruptly his stats increased. The tides change, and he deftly outmaneuvers the demon, cutting one of its arms off. It screamed in anger and pain. No longer afraid of its attacks, Yudo gets his next strike ready and goes for the enemy's head. A quick swipe sends it flying and crashing to the floor. Confident in his newfound power, the challenger arrogantly declares that that he's won. However, a familiar bright light flashed from the rubble, and his past experience with it was jarring enough to be embedded into his brain. He runs away, well aware of how dangerous the incoming beam is. He manages to escape, and rightfully so, as it demolishes the spot he was just standing in. The demon ends its attack and takes a look at the aftermath, but is disappointed to see its target alive and well. It was fairly close, and he would have died if he had moved a second later. Thinking about it, Yudo says something has been bothering him for a while now. The elite demon doesn't look like any monster belonging to the third floor at all. As challengers go up the magic tower, the strength of the monsters on each floor increases accordingly. He charged in again, adding that something that's strong should be found much higher up. Hearing the human's annoying brain working, the enemy sends him back and unleashes an echoing strike with its wings. Unfortunately, the target manages to hold his ground. Because of the penalties and their corresponding inversions, his stats have increased significantly. It should be stronger than the challengers there, which makes it even stranger to find it roaming around. Unlike him, the demon isn't one to talk too much, and instead tries to strike the human down. The force sends him to the ground, but Yudo is skilled enough to defend and keep his footing. As the oddities become even weirder, he demands to know just what the monster is exactly. It refuses to answer, and is instead filled with enough killing intent to make a common man shiver. The young man didn't expect an answer anyway, but is certain that he's much stronger anyway. Trying to end things, it prepares the blast of magic power again, and it's worse this time around as it's gathering energy on both hands. Just then, something changes, and black bolts replace the purple flashes. Instead of launching the beams, it pulls on the magic, elongating the concentrated spheres, and turning them into blades of pure dark mana. From its stance alone, it's obvious that the demon is finally going to go all out from then on. With a resounding roar that shakes the tower, it swings its arm, sending an attack that rages in and out of the dungeon floor. Yudo does his best to run away, not knowing how to dodge as the attacks randomly sprout from below. While trying his hardest to survive, he sees the demon's silhouette hovering high above him. He reacts quickly and uses his blade to block the fierce enemy's claws. The force, although defended against, is enough to make the ground sink and crumble. He smiles and grit his teeth as the blade was inches away from his face. Just then, the smile leaves as he turns and sees the demon's free hand on the side, gathering energy to blast in while he was completely immobilized by the blade. He curses, unable to do anything. Finally, the tiny but powerful attack hits him directly on the head. The system chimed, saying he's died once more. Because of this, he receives a debuff of 40 points on his strength attribute. This isn't a bad ending, since the inversion skill kicks in immediately after. Believing it had won, the demon turned its back to walk away, not knowing what was coming. In the blink of an eye, Yudo appeared from above, ambushing with a lethal surprise attack. Once again, the elite monster proves its skill by defending even after getting struck unprepared. That said, its eyes were full of shock, while the challenger questioned its nerve to kill him. Capitalizing on his enemy's confusion, he unleashed a barrage of swings as it was still trying to comprehend what was happening. He complains about his deaths, despite being reversed, hurting like hell each time. With a new strength buff, he's able to push his target back unlike earlier, but it obviously still isn't enough to win. The two are locked, unable to move each other as they push against their opponent's blade. However, the demon has the advantage again as a being with complete control over its magic. It uses the connection of their blades and sends a shock wave to envelop them both. Before Yudo could run away, the spell hit, and his entire body was consumed by the power. With this, another death is added to his list, with the death penalty decreasing his agility by 60 points. Conversion works automatically. Waking up and not even bothered anymore, the young man notes the change in his body. He's now more confident than ever, especially with the trait that was buffed. Standing and facing the monster, which glared while seething from its own attack, Yudo says it tried hard and fought really well. It's unfortunate. The newly revived human dashed forward, seeming to leave an after image from his sheer speed. The demon, not knowing how he's even faster now, struggled to keep up with all the changes. The pathetic man he killed just a few hours ago had been reborn into a different and unbelievably powerful person. One final exchange ends it. Standing apart and facing away from each other, the impact finally hits the demon. The battle ended with the enemy cut into several chunks in an instant. Ultimately, its life was limited unlike his, meaning it had no chance of winning from the start. Turning to look at his opponent, a weird feeling of respect filled Yudo. Whether they go to hell or if it somehow gains a few more lives in addition to this one, he hopes to meet again. When that time comes, it would be nice to have a fair fight that's just as intense as this one. With this, he leaves with a grin on his face. With the battle over, Yudo slumps onto the ground, exhausted after trying his best to defeat the demon. He got stronger with each death, but it still irks him that he has to go to such ridiculous lengths. Picking his sword up, he takes a close look at the weapon and falls grim as he sees it crumble and shatter. Since he needs to buy a new one, he decides to earn some money by collecting magic stones. There were huge bunches of stones growing from the dungeon holes and crevices. Meanwhile, the Hermes Tower's first floor was a safe area for challengers. Actually, there's a section where monsters don't appear at the entrance of each floor of the tower. Those are places where adventurers can gather and rest when exhausted from exploring the dangers of the dungeon. Also, while going on about their adventuring, they may obtain equipment and items. There are often stalls in the area where people are allowed to buy, sell, and trade them. Yudo gets right to work and sells the crystals to buy a silver sword that's much sturdier. That said, it's disappointing as he had to use most of his money to pay. He shakes those thoughts away, certain that he has no way to go but up now, and convinces himself that it's an initial investment to make that happen. Just then, he realized that the people around him were staring and gossiping quietly. Some snickered while others felt bad, calling him a naive guy who was fooled into buying the infinite revival skill. He sighs in amusement, realizing the pitiful reputation he had made for himself. Annoyance then took over, and he says they should have warned him. They all knew the scammer. Revival might be a trash skill to the other people there, but for him who obtained inversion to pair it with, it isn't undoubtedly got tier skill enough to make him unrivaled. Since it's something that only he can do and master, it has turned into something much cooler than it initially was. Just then, his proud thoughts were interrupted as a loud voice rang throughout the safe area. Turning to face the source, he sees commotion by the dungeon entrance. A group led by a particularly large man says he intends to challenge the mid-boss on the 5th floor. Proud of his name, he introduced himself as Nogi, also known as the Dominator. Yudo recognizes him and sighs at the familiar sight. The Dominator is a title given to those who challenge the boss room at the top of the magic tower. Magic towers disappear once the boss on the top floor is defeated. Once such arduous milestones are reached, the adventurers involved are able to obtain unique equipment. Dominators are usually respected by ordinary adventurers, but this particular group is questionable. Yudo's eyes opened up in surprise as he realized who the Dominator was arguing with. Mana says he's just a person who happened to take a low-tier magic tower down. Yuri tries to calm her down, but the level 15 challenger just adds on, saying anyone can do the same. She insists that they found the boss room first and is unwilling to let a fake Dominator snatch the rewards. The mage, seemingly much meeker, says it might be better to let the others handle such dangers. With her comrade's submissiveness, Mana has no choice but to keep quiet as well. She bites on her lip in frustration as Nogi annoyingly settles the argument with their silence. According to him, little girls like them should keep quiet and watch, while he uses the bestowed unique equipment AEs to shield any attack that might come his way. The group laughed at the women, cackling as their figures shrunk smaller. Just then, their attention is taken away as Yudo calls their names. They don't even have a chance to greet each other, as Nogi pushes between them, eager to take a look. He smiles as wretched ideas come to his mind. Raising his voice enough for everyone to hear, he puts his face near the young man, recalling how he was duped by a merchant into buying a useless skill. Piling on the insults one after another, he adds that it must feel pathetic to be exploited like that. Yudo remains silent for a while, unbothered by the tirade, and sighs with a smile. Surprisingly, he turns to the young women and and asks them to give the mid-boss room to the Dominator's group. Mon is stunned and feels betrayed, unable to believe that even he felt that way. Ignoring Nogi snickering from behind, he calms them down with a smile. Putting on a maniacal and sinister expression, he says their goal would be to take the boss on the top floor instead. What's more, they're going to do it at a speed that not even the others can keep up with. The two froze in disbelief, doubting what they just heard. The young man promises that he isn't just saying things and has an actual plan to do it. On the other hand, Nogi clicked his tongue as he seethed with anger. Insulted by the words directed at him, he curses the boy and pulls his arm back to attack. He charged in, saying they aren't even allowed to call it bullying this time, but Yuta remained completely calm. To the Dominator's surprise, he weaves and dodges the first 3 attacks, which were thrown with full force. He nonchalantly extends his foot, and the opponent suddenly found himself falling. With this, he crashes to the floor, while the low-tier challenger doesn't even remove his hands from his pockets. The man's lackeys ran to him, asking if he's okay, but he doesn't even know what happened. Still on the ground, he turns around in surprise upon seeing a shadow cast over him. Standing tall with uncaring eyes, Yuto asks how long he intends to keep rolling around. Since they're all there, he wants to see the great Dominator challenge the mid-boss in person. With that, he calls on everyone to join and encourages them to get a move on and start already. Going together, the group walks silently and soon reach the Magic Tower's 4th floor. Mana cautiously calls to Yuto, and they ask if it's really safe to follow Nogi to the boss. All things considered, she says he isn't actually as strong as he makes himself out to be. Yuri shares her sentiments, as even the monsters they've come across until now are really strong. The young man brushes their worries off and says there's nothing to worry about at all. The 2 ladies are challengers he met while exploring the tower. Compared to them, who are level 15 and 13, he's a meager level 8 challenger. That said, the current him has no care about levels as all his stats have been increased by his skills. No matter what fight they find themselves in, he'll be able to turn everything into dust alone. Just then, Nogi called to him, saying it's fine to see how they fight the mid-boss, but added that they'll be alone against small fries. He was trembling in fear earlier, but based on his arrogance, it seems he's pulled himself together. Suddenly, the entire floor shook violently, and a heavy pressure filled the air. A monster unexpectedly appeared from above, aiming for a surprise attack on the Dominator. He notices and reacts on time, and uses his shield to block any damage. Trying to fight back, he swipes his arm, but the enemy just uses it to bounce back and put some distance after the failed ambush. The lizard man readied its blade, eager to take the unwelcome visitors out. It roared loudly, its voice echoing throughout the halls. Nogi smirks confidently, feeling like it won't be a problem to defeat just one monster. However, Yuto suddenly asks them to wait. With a horrified expression, he says there's something terribly wrong. Just then, countless eyes glowed in the dark, and a chilling air swept over the entire floor. Countless lizard men appeared, leaping in and charging at the unsuspecting adventurers. They questioned what was happening all of a sudden, but the monsters suddenly knelt and bowed as a red being stepped forward. A lizard commander came into the light, smiling as it had full control over the swarm. Pointing its blade at the humans, it orders its subordinates to attack, and so they do. They were all surrounded, but as Yuto assured them earlier, there was nothing to worry about with him there. Unaware of this, Mana called to Yuri urgently, saying they should protect their much weaker friend. Surprised, the young man stops before he could even begin, as the 2 women move to guard his sides. He's worried for their safety, and tries to tell them that he can fight too, but his words only irk his comrade. She scolds and screams that he shouldn't act tough in situations as dangerous as this. A silence filled the air, and he turned to look at her in confusion. She meets his gaze with a troubled expression, and says the enemies are completely out his league. He clicks his tongue in disappointment, but Yuri also adds on, pleading that he stay behind them, since it's dangerous if he strays too far. His heart sank upon hearing these words. Watching them fight and do their best to trim the horde down, one by one, the low-level challenger tries to insist that he can fight alongside them. He calls out multiple times, desperate to be acknowledged, but his voice eventually falls flat, and so do his hopeful arms. Standing motionless while the others are the busiest they'd ever been, he realizes right then and there that all he was seen as was a mere liability to take care of. The feeling was downright terrible, and he hated every second of it. Nogi fought hard, sending the lesser lizard men away, but was unfortunate enough to be targeted by the commander. The enemy's blade was swung right at him, and although he managed to block with his unique item, the sheer force was strong enough to send him flying away. He yelled from the unexpected strength, but managed to regain his balance fast. However, the situation turns from bad to worse, as he feels his foot sink on the floor tile. Having experienced this countless times before, Yuto panics immediately, realizing that he stepped on a trap. Just then, a huge area below him collapsed, sending the young man hurtling down alone. Cursing loud, the others turn back and belatedly see him falling, but it's too late. In the dark, he questions why he's the one falling, and not Nogi who triggered the trap. As the tower's name, Hermes, implies, countless traps put the brave or foolish challengers at the mercy of the dungeon. Fortunately, Yuto is far from an ordinary challenger, and such traps don't even face him in the slightest. He's been falling for a while, and crashing down would spell the end for him. With great skill, the young man bounces off the walls and pillars to land perfectly on the floor. Stretching his limbs and checking on his joints, he confirms that he's uninjured. That said, he hears shuffling from behind, and turns to see what's happening. There he sees familiar red figures from the first pillar up to the very back of the room. They were all clad in armor, and carrying dangerous weapons. There's no way to run, and the monsters definitely weren't letting him get off so easy. He walked confidently, saying he's also had enough. Sick of all the traps and tricks, Yuto summons his new weapon, and lets his sinister energy overflow. Despite their numbers, the commander suddenly shivered in fear, as he called everyone to charge. After all, they're all just going to serve as subjects to test his sword on. He dashed in like a tornado of destruction, taking several out in one blow, and saying they'll soon realize what they did by bringing him into such a closed space. All the commanders there are ranked so high that until recently, Yuto wouldn't be able to handle them. A brave one jumped in, making the first attempt to attack. Unfortunately, things have changed, and he now faces the enemy with complete confidence. It swings its blade down, but instead of getting blocked, the monster's arm is forced wide open, completely overpowered. With intense focus, the challenger follows through without missing a beat. He moves past the enemy, cutting the lizard's body cleanly in half. Defeating them now is no trouble, and he proves this by standing tall against the next wave. Like an adventurer far beyond his level, he maneuvers, spinning, swinging, and moving so fast that the enemies can't even see him. Before even realizing what happened, a couple of commanders lose their heads. The assault stops, and Yuto asks them what the problem is. They were all waiting for someone to fall into the trap, but none of them were moving anymore. With a challenging grin, he orders them all to come together and try to kill him if they can. Provoked, they roared and rared to fight, but the human moves first and was already running towards their group. Able to fight properly against such a large number, he races through those standing idly. He's no longer the person he used to be and does not need to be protected like people think. The remaining monsters inched away, fearing him as if he were death incarnate. Meeting their eyes, he says he understands how they feel. After all, he's already experienced it several times, especially as a weakling among the strong. He looked down at a lizard man who was on the ground and shivering in terror, and promised to end things in an instant as a favor. After a while of ending the monster's miseries, Yudo breathes hard, tired, and spent. Just then, he sees a staircase leading to the floor above. He walked up without much care, figuring that it'd be the way back to his companions. A while later, the heavy stone door on the wall opened, and he walked out looking completely unbothered. Exhausted from what seemed to be a routine of falling and climbing, he misses his friends. They notice him first, and run to the young man upon seeing him alive. Yuri quickly checks on his body, determined to see if there are any serious injuries. She sighs in relief and lets out a tender smile, after confirming that he's all okay. They really wanted to help him, but couldn't find a path leading down. Surprised that he was there all alone, they asked if he was attacked by anything while he was alone. Deciding to keep it a little secret, he lies and says he wasn't. Ignoring the pile of dead lizards on the floor below, the young man says there were no issues. Come to think about it, he notices that Nogi and the others are missing from the group. After Mana defeated the lizardman, the man assumed he was dead, and went straight to the boss room. She's still furious as he was the one who triggered the trap anyway, but Yudo calms her down. While the two women were silent, he turned away and called to them. With a sheepish smile, he expresses his gratitude that they even worried about him in the first place. They're surprised by his words at first, but laugh it off like it was only natural. With this, the trio hurries to continue their exploration, hoping to catch up to Nogi's group in time. However, as he turned to speak to the women, Yudo's eyes grew in surprise and worry. There was a lizard man behind them, likely one of the few they failed to finish off earlier. It leapt up to attack Yuri, who was completely oblivious to the danger closing in on her. As he screamed to warn her, the girl turned to see what's wrong, but the monster was already too close. Hearing Yudo's warning, the two girls reacted. However, they were too slow, and the young man had already disappeared from his spot before they could even turn towards the monster. In that instant, he appeared between it and his friend, blocking the attack just in time. While Yuri was still trying to grasp the situation, Mana moved instantly, dashing in and telling them to leave things to her. With her dual daggers, she unleashes an attack on the monster and takes it out in one swift blow. They sigh in relief as it was an undeniably dangerous situation, but it was all over now. Yudo returns to the inventory and Yuri approaches to bashfully thank him for saving her life. Flustered, he awkwardly responds, saying it was just good that he made it in time to do so. Watching the two get along, Mana smiles slyly, recognizing the chemistry between the two. Although it's a shame, she has to interrupt and ask the young man how he reacted so quickly. He smirks and says he might be much more useful than they expect. Now leading the group, he's no longer dead weight to the people around him. After a while of walking, the trio reaches the 5th floor of the magic tower. While the ladies chat, Yudo looks through his status window, which shows his level progress after defeating the group of commanders. Since his status increase from leveling up isn't a buff, it fortunately isn't affected by inversion. That said, the range of his status increase this way was completely laughable compared to what he's used to. The attack status change from death penalty was 65, while the level up only granted him a measly 2 points. With this, it becomes clear one more that the combination of inversion and infinite revival was seriously and undeniably overpowered. Just then, they called for his attention and pointed to the spot in front. The group faced a huge stone gate, which was the entrance to the 5th floor mid-boss room. Mana explains that the magic tower is predicted to have a total of 10 floors. Since Hermes hasn't been there for too long, the ladies were the first to discover the room's existence. Unfortunately, they returned to the 1st floor to prepare for the fight and ran into Nogi's crew. She roars again as retelling the story reminds her of the unfair situation. Yuri calms her down, rubbing and petting the girl as if she were a growling dog. Regardless, they're at the gate now, and the others should just be on the other side fighting. No matter how much one prepares and strategizes, a mid-boss is something to be taken seriously. A bright red light shone as he entered the room, continuing to walk as he failed to notice a flying body high above. He turns his head, and everyone is suddenly on high alert as they see a fellow challenger crash into the wall with so much force. The man was barely clinging onto life, but in front of them was a large and familiar silhouette. Nogi barely turns to acknowledge him, surprised that Yudo was still alive. Smirking confidently, he tells him to face forward and take a look at the mid-boss protecting the room. A colossal monster glared at him. The Orc Lord, immense and overflowing with power, roared as it faced those who dared to challenge him. It leapt, making the ground beneath them quake, and raised its axe to attack the first man. The young challenger screams, worried about Nogi. However, the Dominator laughs and says he doesn't need concern from small fry like him. The boss swings down with all his power, but he stands his ground and blocks it without any trouble. He confidently deflects the axe, saying an attack like that has no chance of getting through his Aegis shield. The lizardman attack earlier was different, as he was just caught off guard by the surprise attack. In a one-on-one fight, he has no intention of losing, especially with his unique equipment. Calling to Yudo, he tells him not to look away, and watch clearly to understand the huge gap between them. With this, the Orc Lord charged in with a resounding scream. Yuri checks on the man that was sent crashing into the wall, and confirms that he's okay. Considering how he was sent flying with one blow, he's amazed by his leader's strength. Nogi was facing the Orc Lord alone, not budging an inch despite the attacks. Standing his ground with a smile, he tells Yudo not to look away, as he was going to show the huge gap between them. The boss swung with all his strength, and it's enough to make the ground beneath them crumble. While he's moved a few inches away, his body remains compact and unharmed, since the shield absorbs all the damage without problems. Seeing that his attacks weren't doing much damage, the boss roared in absolute frustration. With a different and more sinister glint in its eyes, it raised its weapon again. An attack comes, then a second, then a third. The barrage of swings makes the attacker huff in exhaustion, but his target only laughs in amusement. If this is the true power of a mid-boss, then it would be an automatic win for a challenger like him, who's also a dominator. Yudo watched as their match unfolded, and he couldn't help but be impressed by the power of the unique equipment received from a tower boss. Nogi's stats alone shouldn't be that impressive, but the shield is the perfect defense against the boss. The orc struck once again, but its repetitive and simple strikes have become far too easy to read. It no longer takes much for the leader to bounce it off and signal his comrades to follow up. The two men charged in and wounded the defenseless orc while it lost its balance. Trying to regain its footing, the enemy pushes its body forward and ducks down. Nogi takes immediate advantage of this and jumps up, saying it shouldn't have lowered its head. Clenching his fist tight, he drives it into the orc's head, planting the monster into the hard ground. This combination assault manages to defeat the monster, and it falls down, unmoving and vanquished. The group leader excitedly turns to Yudo, still breathing hard, and proudly exclaims that it's the strength of a proper challenger. The young man smirks, looking particularly uncaring. He says he now understands the real power of a unique item. Nogi is too dumb to realize that he had just been insulted, and just proceeds to laugh at the women, saying weaklings like them would never be able to achieve such feats. Just then, one of his teammates called to him and suggested that they look at the amazing thing at the back. In the middle of the room, a golden treasure shined brightly, illuminating the entire area. The Dominator pushed everyone away, eager to claim it, as there was surely a rare item inside. After all, it looks even better than the chest that contained his beloved unique item. Just then, the multiple deaths he experienced just earlier flashed in Yudo's mind. It was impossible for a mid-boss reward to reward something that's better than a tower boss item. Realizing what was happening, he tried to stop Nogi, but the hasty man had already opened the chest. He let his guard down. Even if it was just for a moment, they shouldn't have forgotten that the tower was riddled with atrocious traps. To the man's surprise, the lavish chest was completely empty inside. While he groaned in annoyed confusion, huge and multiple magic circles were released. The light shone bright and engulfed them whole. Suddenly, they found themselves in a similar but dark room, lit only by faint glows scattered around. From a glance, it was obvious that they were were no longer in the mid-boss room, Nogi starts panicking and trembles as he says that they must be kidding. The pressure in the room was something he had only experienced once before. Asked where, he says he felt it at the top floor of the magic tower. Just then, magic circles appeared once more, much more sinister than the golden ones earlier. In the middle of the room, an enormous creature appeared, holding such an immense aura. Claiming his throne, the tower boss sat to greet his challengers. The monster's eyes glowed with life, and it greeted its unwelcome visitors with a resounding roar that made the entire room shake. They're still having trouble grasping the twist that they're now at the top floor. However, all their doubts are quelled as the system confirms it, saying they've been forcefully transported. In other words, the creature before them was none other than the Ogre Emperor, master of the magic tower Hermes. Without wasting any time, the enemy charged in with its huge blade, pulling its arm back as it went straight for the two men. The Emperor is on a completely different level from the enemies Yudo has faced before, except for his own. Nobody's stats are high enough to take it on. He tells the others to let him handle it, but Nogi seriously orders him to stop spewing nonsense. Surprisingly, the arrogant challenger seems to care for their lives and warns that he might die. The young man tries to remind them about his infinite revival, but he and his group were already charging in, pushing Aegis forward. Moving in unison, the lackeys hit the monster right on its skin, putting all their strength into their swings. They get their hopes up as they successively land direct hits. However, it's not that they did well, but the boss just didn't bother to block their weak attacks. As they were about to get swiped away, Nogi rushed in with a resolute warcry and told the beast not to underestimate him. After all, he's one of the proud dominators of this era. Putting himself between the monster and his comrades, he blocks the swing. However, the Emperor is too strong, and his axe breaks through the challenger's shield, cutting through his body. The others gasp in absolute shock, not expecting him to be taken out in one blow. The shield, now shattered into pieces, was supposed to be able to block against any type of attack. Nogi's status window turned red. Due to insufficient stats, the abilities of Aegis could not be activated properly. These words felt like a cruel joke as the challenger lay on the floor lifeless. Screaming in disbelief, his companions tried to rush to him, ignoring the warnings to stay away. Just then, the merciless boss swung again, this time cutting through the rest of them like paper. Bodies, weapons, and armor fell to the floor alike. Yudo trembled and grit his teeth, struggling to come to terms with how fast things were going. He curses their fate. Aside from the ladies, he's now the only one facing the boss. He prepared to attack once more. The two backed up, wanting to take a chance and try running away. Mana turns to face the door, but freezes as she sees sealing magic applied on it, essentially locking them in. With no way to escape the boss room, dread starts to set in, and they wonder if they're going to die as well. The ogre attacks while they're distracted, aiming right for the defenseless Yuri. The poor girl hopelessly put her arms up to guard, knowing they'd do nothing. Just then, metals clash and sparks flew, as Yudo arrived just in time to deflect the axe. The women are stunned to see what he just did, but he stood there coldly and submerged in intense focus, refusing to let anyone else die on his watch. He swears to make that happen, even if it costs him his life. Yudo dodges the boss strike, which demolishes the very ground beneath them. After jumping back to gain momentum, he launched himself forward to strike through the enemy's arm. Unfortunately, even a direct hit results in nothing but a shallow cut. With speed unbefitting something of that size, the ogre dashed forward to retaliate. In an instant, its enormous figure appears right above the puny human. Its claws are driven down into the floor, barely missing the pesky and swift target. He tries to counter, knowing full well that he's faster than the beast, but his blade only clashes with the hard gauntlet as the boss raises its arm in time. The two challengers watched in awe and disbelief, unable to understand how their weak little friend was taking on the tower master all on his own. Yudo falls back. Despite being buffed immensely by his skills, he was still being overpowered. While it's disappointing, it should be expected from something like the final boss. For now, he still doesn't have the stats to beat it, so he intends to focus on depleting its stamina instead. As for slaying the monster, that can wait until after he dies a few times. Fearlessly, and without an ounce of hesitation, he leapt towards the colossal enemy. Each brush and collision was death-defying for the human, and while he tried hard to get a few direct hits in, none of them cut deep enough to do any real damage. More annoyed than in pain, the ogre warden countered, sending him flying across the room. With his body left unguarded, he realizes that he's already reached his limit. The enemy doesn't let go of the chance and swipes its claws right through his body. The gruesome death happens right in front of Yuri, whose eyes tremble in absolute shock after witnessing the traumatic scene. When she lets out an ear-piercing scream, the system informs Yudo that he's died once more. As a penalty, he receives a debuff of 55 on his agility, which quickly turns into a positive value. It's all good, as the young man is determined to revive and stand back up until the enemy is defeated. His friends watch him rise, remembering the power of his infinite revival skill. That said, they're also well aware of the drawbacks that come with it. Knowing the severity of the debuffs, they question how he was still able to fight despite it all. He dies again almost instantly this time, and ends up with additional resilience. This isn't what he needs right now, so the young man continues to fight back. Another death grants him an increase in health. Refusing to stay down, he wills on the death penalty, ordering it to give him the stat that will allow him to deal fatal damage to his enemies. Standing tall against the ogre, he greets death with open arms. Yudo opens his eyes and bolts up, heaving and panting from continuously losing his life. As expected, the excruciating pain that came with each execution was slowly driving him crazy. But fortune favors the bold and tenacious. He passionately smiles as the desired attack stat finally increased, and with a jackpot buff rate at that. Surprisingly, he doesn't immediately get sent back, as a new window informs him that he's unlocked the ability to specify a respawn point. Slightly confused, he asks for a more detailed explanation and reads through the skill description. He smirked in satisfaction and stood up, delighted by the useful addition. With this, the alert for revival appeared, and he appeared right above the Emperor. This time, it was his turn to kill the enemy. Yudo is given the fairly useful ability to designate the spot where he'll be reincarnated. It's probably a feature meant to stop him from getting stuck in cycles of death. If he always reincarnates in the exact spot he died, like a pool of lava for example, then he wouldn't be able to escape despite revival. But having the ability to choose his respawn point would save him from such situations. This is the main point of this feature, but on the battlefield there should be other utilizations. In this instance against the boss, he can easily choose an area and place himself in its blind spot. The young challenger finishes his preparations and activates his revival. Appearing perfectly behind the ogre, he dives from above, ready to take the kill this time around. He grips his sword tight and swings down with all his might, forcing the beast to fall. The ladies are surprised and wonder how he got there in the blink of an eye. Yudo makes sure to note how he appears to others, but there isn't much freedom to do so as the boss fights back. He dodges without any hitches. Nogi and his group were a bunch of nasty people, always arrogantly bullying others, but not once did he think that any of them deserved such a gruesome fate. By defeating the monster in front of him, he's sure to obtain a powerful unique item as a reward. While most would fight for this, the one thing he desires more than that now is the ogre emperor's life. It smashes its fist, aiming for the young man and destroying the floor in progress. To its surprise, it sees its target completely unharmed and running up its arm. Facing the challenger that was speeding towards the head, the ogre's expression turned grim as it realized its fate. Swinging up, Yudo unleashes a devastating blow to end the battle, finally taking the enormous monster's life. Soon enough, it stopped breathing and moving. Assured of his victory, he sighs and returns his silver blade to the inventory. The system announces that he's defeated the boss and sends unique equipment and valuable magic stones. While the reward was surely something to be happy about, the young man can't help but have mixed feelings. His grim and guilty thoughts are cut short as Yuri runs to hug him from behind, crying in relief that he's safe and sound even after all that. Realizing how tightly she was hugging him, the girl jumped back, turning red as she apologized for getting carried away. Mana came next, quietly approaching to thank him. Without his help, the two of them would definitely have died in the boss' hands. However, his way of fighting was just far too reckless, regardless of the situation. Sacrificing himself like he did over and over again just to achieve his goal was plainly painful to watch for his friends. She apologizes, feeling bad for scolding their companion, despite being saved by him. Patting her head, Yuto assures her that there's no need to worry about it. He knows his fighting style is too much, and apologizes for subjecting them to such a horrible sight. Even if he fails over and over again, he will always come back to life in full health. That said, he screams, curses, and trembles in frustration over how much the process hurts. Seeing him close to crying, Mana calms her friend down. Since it's a bit too much for him as well, he promises to do his best and avoid dying if possible. Reassured by his words, their expressions brighten up like before. Just then, the system chimed, informing them that the tower would soon disappear, as it had already been conquered. Remembering this unchangeable rule, they wave goodbye, agreeing to see each other again on the outside. When the two women disappear, Yuto takes some time to turn back and look at the corpses of the fallen challengers. He burns the image into his mind, vowing to never forget them. With this, he says goodbye one last time. Just like that, the magic tower that once reached the heavens suddenly vanished from the city like it was never there. A director receives the news that Hermes has just been conquered. It hasn't even been half explored yet, but her assistant confirms the report. The disappearance of the tower has been verified, and all she can do now is wait for more details. Putting the device down for now, she smirks, saying things are becoming quite amusing. The magic tower disappears, and the people inside are sent back to the city. The civilians and challengers alike pointed in surprise as they watched Hermes, huge as it was, disappear into thin air. Observing like the others, Yuto grasped the reality of the situation and what he had just achieved. He clenched his fist in victory, silently acknowledging that he actually conquered a magic tower. However, his smile didn't last long, quickly fading as sadness and guilt caught up almost instantly. Those around him start talking about the boss that was defeated, even though the dungeon hadn't even been explored properly to the halfway point. Confused, they wonder if someone strong came and finished it off randomly. Hearing this, Yuto considered claiming the victory and glory. If there hadn't been any casualties, then he would have been happy to announce it like that. It seems that conquering a tower for the first time has really increased his self-confidence. Standing up and dusting himself off, he makes a mental note not to get too carried away. With that said, he decides to keep the truth about the boss room a secret for now, as it attracts too much attention. The young man tries to get out of the area quietly, but gets spotted by his friends. Mana calls his name and runs to him. With a loud voice, she eagerly asks what unique item he received from defeating the tower boss. An awkward silence passed for a moment as the onlookers tried to grasp what she just said. Several doubt what they heard, aware that he's the man who was scammed into buying a trashy skill. Despite that, it was undeniable that he was now the dominator of Hermes. After running into an alley, the three finally managed to get some alone time. Yuto sighs in exhaustion, relieved that they finally got away. The people from earlier made such a fuss. Some were filled with curiosity, while others bold with spite. Cheekily winking and clasping her hands, Mana apologizes for being careless. He took the boss down, and while it's a secret that he did so alone, it's natural for him to gain some attention. The reality that he had earned the title of dominator was still a strange feeling, especially since he was so weak just a while ago. At the end of it all, buying the infinite revival skill turned out not to be a mistake. Speaking of the skill, Yuri lets her curiosity take over and brings up the negative effects that supposedly come with each death. She asks how he's still able to move so well despite it, but the question stumps him and he struggles to explain. The young man wonders how to explain the inversion skill, and where to even start the story. Thinking she made a mistake due to his pause, the girl says she isn't cornering him, and was just curious. It isn't really a big deal, and it isn't something he wants to hide from them. Just then, Mana gives him a free pass, saying they can hear the explanation later on. For now, there's something else she needs to know. Her eyes change as she excitedly asks about the reward he got for defeating the boss. Surprised, he asks to wait for a moment, but falls confused as he repeatedly tries and fails to summon his inventory. It's because they're no longer in the magic tower. Fundamentally, a window can only be opened while inside magic towers. The use of other things such as stats and skills are also limited to the borders of the dungeons. Because of this system, there aren't any incidents of challengers causing havoc in normal society. However, there is one exception, a place outdoors where they're able to use their challenger powers. That would be at the site of the magic towers. Passing through the nearest one, they feel themselves entering a different area. Even now, they can't get used to the strange feeling that fills the site of dungeons. With this, he can at least open the windows properly. They gather around him intent on seeing the item he was rewarded with. In the middle of his inventory was the unique equipment, Foes Aminos. Yuto clicks on the sword to equip it, and they are suddenly enveloped in a bright and golden light. As if he was being called to, he raised his arm and opened his palm, welcoming the figure that materialized by it. He stood there, amazed as the obsidian and crimson weapon sat in his hands, humming with power. Yuto swings around his new foe's sword and gets excited about using it in his next magic power quest. Mana sees from Yuri's face that she wants to be with Yuto on his next mission but is too shy to ask. She puts on a mischievous face as she gets an idea. She approaches Yuto and asks if he wants to form a party with them for the next mission. Instantly, Yuri raises her hand and says that she wholeheartedly agrees. The two are so taken aback by her that they are unable to react. Yuri realizes that what she just did was awkward and becomes conscious of their looking at her. She asks if Yuto is willing to have her. The man replies that he is because they are friends. She and Mana become excited. Mana goes on to stare at Yuto with a smile, confusing the lad. She asks him which magic tower they should go to next. She is so hyped up that she suggests that they go to an even stronger tower than Hermes. Yuto thinks about it and realizes that there is a specific place he wants to go to. This intrigues the girls, who think he is about to suggest a big quest. He tells them that he wants to go to Tokyo, to the Challenger Bureau. His answer confuses the girls, who ask why not a magic tower. The man goes on to say that the Bureau will buy his magic stones for a higher price than those at magic tower stalls. He breaks down to complain about how he really needs to go there because of his debts buying the infinite revival. His breakdown and reasoning make the girls feel uncomfortable. Elsewhere is the large building of the Tokyo Challenger Bureau. The narrator spells out that the Management Bureau is a government organization that supports challengers. They have duties like updating magic tower information in real time or buying and selling magic stones and weapons for fair prices. The Bureau is known for its fairness, unlike magic tower stalls that are known to rip off challengers. Their headquarters is built on the site of a magic tower, and so no challengers can use their powers within their territory. Yuto came to the tower and waited for his turn to be called at the reception area so he could trade his magic stones. The receptionist calls for his turn, so he checks his window to release all the magic stones he has in storage. He presses the button to summon his storage stones, only for there to be so many that they fill the receptionist's table. The receptionist is shocked, and so is Yuto, who did not realize he got so many for clearing Hermes. The receptionist gets her composure back and asks that they continue the exchange process. He receives his money and is tingling since he has now become wealthy. He goes to Yuri and Mana, who suggest that he avoid reckless spending. Mana, in particular, strongly warns him to not get into debt again by overspending his money. It makes Yuto give up hope for the dream shopping he was about to do. Yuto suddenly feels a strong and dangerous presence that makes him tense up. He sees that it is coming from a woman approaching them. She introduces herself as the chief of the Tokyo Bureau, Yumi. He asks for Yuto's time and proves that she knows him by telling him that he is the dominator of Hermes as well as knowing his full name. Yuto recalls that she knows Fumi as the one known as the strongest challenger in the Bureau who has conquered 3 magic towers. She even appeared in advertisements for the Bureau as they leaned into her fashion model good looks. It feels weird to Yuto that he is now looking at such a famous figure. He asks her what the president of the Bureau wants with him. She tells him that she wants to hold a hearing about how he conquered Hermes. More importantly, she wants to verify his power as a dominator. The trio walks with Fumi, who hears all about their story in the dungeon. She appreciates them telling her all about it and promises that the Bureau will contact Nogi and his party's family. Fumi can tell that the mention of the dead made the trio sad. She asks them if their deaths pain them. Yuto starts twitching and grinding his teeth just remembering Nogi and the others' deaths. He tears up and admits that it felt painful. Finally, having someone understand the pain makes him feel better. Fumi brings the trio to the large training room. Fumi tosses Yuto a sword that the man finds dull. She tells him that it is the sword they use for training. She pulls out her own training sword and tells him to fight her so that she can properly understand his true power as a dominator. Yuto is not comfortable about this. On the other hand, Mana wants him to tell the Bureau chief that he will send her flying. Yuto goes into a fighting stance and says he will take this seriously. Fumi asks him if he is ready, and he says he is. He acknowledges that his opponent is known to be the strongest but believes that Fumi will also have a hard time against him since he is also a dominator. Fumi is 10 feet away from him, only for her to get inches near him in the blink of an eye. She slashes and he manages to evade. Despite the man looking worried from being caught off guard, Fumi looks calm and collected as he continues on the offensive. She goes on to give him multiple strikes that Yuto only barely manages to block. She is so overwhelming that he cartwheels to back away from her, just as he thought he could rest. He sensed the woman behind him. Her strong slice leads Yuto to back away a few feet from her. Just keeping up with her attacks makes him feel exhausted. He marvels at how she was able to conquer magic towers without even dying once. He then remembers all the ways he dies and smiles as he realizes that he is the one who has the advantage. It makes him feel silly that he has only been defending up until now since he is the one who has no fear of death. Fumi rushes towards him, only for her to be shocked as Yuto runs towards her too. Yuto's rush towards her catches Fumi off guard, so he notices that her movements have slowed down. He can clearly tell that he is the faster one between them at this moment. He strikes, only for the woman to evade and move beside him. The strength of her counter causes Yuto to be tossed into the air. Fumi admits that his offense was unexpected. Once Yuto gets down, he rushes towards her again. As he attacks, he tells her that he noticed that she hesitated. He dodges another of her attacks and tells her that he has only managed to stay in the battle because of her hesitation. He also tells her that he does not think it was because she was going easy on him. Rather, her instinct is telling her to slow down because she still needs to understand why he is moving strangely. He admits that he took advantage of this. He runs towards her while saying that his infinite revival makes him unfearful. They clash blades while declaring his intent to win. While Fumi avoids his strikes, she recalls how she knows about his infinite revival and how he can revive himself endlessly. Seeing his smiling face now, which shows no fear of death, makes her realize that his ability is fearsome. He then successfully lands a strike on his face. She warns him that her delay will not happen a second time. Despite how much it hurts, Yuto does not let himself fall in counters by nearing his sword to the opponent's face. He tells her that no matter how much it hurts, it is still nothing compared to dying. Fumi stands still while his sword is pointed at her face. Fumi smiles. She tells him that she now understands his power and admits his loss. She is surprised that the opponent who seems so strong before suddenly falls to the floor. Yuto tells her that he does not care anymore who won and that all he wants right now is some medical treatment. He's so weak right now, his soul is visibly exiting his body. Yuri and Mana run towards him and forcefully push his soul back. Once he is okay, he asks if he can now leave. Fumi says they still need to have an important conversation first. She goes on to explain that the power he showed during their match makes her realize that she needs to give him a special request. Yuri and Mana marvel at how even the chief of the Bureau is giving him a special request. Fumi continues that he will have a cash reward once he is done. Yuto asks for the details of the request. Fumi informs him that there is a new tower, but the entrance to it right now is being sealed off by the Bureau. She wants Yuto to enter the tower and gather information. The tower's name is Persephone. She admits that this request is tailored specifically for Yuto. Yuto asks why Fumi chose him when it is only normal for the Bureau to investigate the new towers. She tells him that they already dispatched challengers to investigate. However, not a single one of the 10 people who entered returned. The news of this makes Yuri and Mana nervous. Fumi reports that the search team saw all the bodies near the entrance of the tower. Based on how they were found, it looked like they were trying their hardest to go outside, but they ran out of energy just before they got to the exit. It troubles Yuto that the bodies were found in the safe zone where there should not be any monsters. Fumi confirms that they were found in the safe zone and that the bodies had no signs of any monster attack on them. Once she received the report of this, she called back the search team immediately because of the danger. As of now, they have no idea of the what, the where, and the when of how they died. Yuto realizes that his infinite revival is needed to investigate. Fumi says that his ability will ensure that fewer of her people will die in the future. She asks him if he will accept the request for her sake. Yuto thinks about it and finds that he has no choice but to accept. On a different day, he heads to the Persephone magic tower. He enters through the safe zone where the bodies were found. He calms his nerves by slapping his face from both sides. He tells himself that he will identify that cause and relieve everyone's worries. He remembers how Yuri tried to stop him out of worry. He materializes his new sword, foes, and then starts his stroll. A few minutes later, he encounters a squad of undead skeleton warriors. He passes through them in a flash. A few seconds later, his sword slashes delayed effects make them explode. Yuto recognizes how light and easy his new sword is. Just as he thought he could rest, a purple fog appears. He tries to get away from it, but no slice can slow it down. His status window is open. He reads it and becomes worried. It turns out the window warns him that he is under the curse of Persephone, and that he will die in 120 seconds. He realizes that this is the cause of everyone's death, and that he is indeed the man needed to investigate this tower. Yuto recalls that leaving a magic tower means also canceling any conditions caused by it. He deduces that when the dispatcher challengers were afflicted by the curse, they frantically made their way into the exit. They reached the safety zone but still succumbed to the curse, one step away from the exit. Now he realizes why there were no signs of injuries or monster attacks on the bodies. Meanwhile, the fog of the curse moves away from him. This insults Yuto, who thinks the fog is underestimating him. He checks his status window and sees that it is warning him that he will die in 18 minutes. His inversion then takes effect, informing him that he will fully recover instead. He smiles as he feels his body heal up. He then runs to follow where the fog went until he sees the room ahead. He ponders if he should continue to chase it, but realizes he should, since he is the only challenger who can. He enters the room and sees that there is a spring of water at its center. He deduces that the room must be the source of the cursed fog. An energy beam suddenly fires at him, and he only dodges at the last second. Above him hovers a monster wearing dark robes. The system identifies it as the gatekeeper of the cursed spring. It fires more energy blasts at him, but he is agile enough to evade all of them. The frustrated monster screams, and with his scream, the fog spreads across the room like a tornado. The gatekeeper laughs and claps at his victory. However, out of the food, Yuto is still okay. The system overwhelms him with countless warnings that he has been cursed. Behind him appears an undead skeleton warrior. He vanquishes it with his sword, only to see that an army of them draws near. They surround him from all directions until one of them is able to wound him from behind. He voices that it hurts, then falls to the floor. The gatekeeper laughs. However, the very curse the monster brought on him also heals him. He gets back up and slays every undead warrior. He then jumps toward the gatekeeper and tells him that his curse is nothing but the highest quality medicine to him. Then he cuts the creature into a million pieces. As he falls down, he realizes that the purple water spring before has changed into clean blue water. At the Tokyo headquarters, Fumi receives the report on the curse, killing the challengers. It's surprising as the existence of such an abnormal condition was unknown to them. She asks if there's anything they can do to counter the effects of the status ailment. Confidently smirking, Yuto tosses something to the chief, saying it's their best bet. Not even flinching, she catches the bottle containing a glowing blue liquid. After defeating the monster and purifying the spring, thing, he was able to get his hands on the substance. It's holy water, which is able to dispel the curse and make the user immune for the next 600 seconds. If challengers use that before going in, even low rankers can advance without dying. He only looked verified until the third, but it seems there's a cursed spring on every floor. In other words, Persephone is a tower they have to conquer by securing the purified spring's holy water. As he concludes, she can't help but smile in satisfaction. If they understand the warnings and countermeasures, the tower can be open to regular challengers. Since he's completed the request, she thanks and praises the brand new Dominator. He staggers in surprise as the director takes his reward out, stacking piles of cash on the table. In disbelief of the amount, he can't control his reaction. Misunderstanding, she asks if it isn't enough, when the issue is that it's much more than expected. In the streets, civilians looked at an odd figure who was hunched over. Yudo clung to a paper bag containing his massive combined earnings from Persephone and Hermes. While people pointed at his odd expression, he was nervous, not knowing what to spend it on. A few days passed. He prioritizes paying the debts he got from buying Infinite Revival, but a lot of reward money was left even after all that. As such, he went to luxury clothing and accessory stores. People were still staring at him, but now for a completely different reason. He emerged clad from head to toe in designer items, looking absolutely tacky. Facing the light of a new day, he says it has a different feel to it. Just then, he hears a couple of familiar voices nearby. His two friends were walking around, talking about challenging Persephone and inviting him to come with. Yudo panics as he sees them. He turns away and stays silent, praying that they don't see him wearing such a ridiculous outfit. Busy speaking to each other, they pass by without any worries, and he manages to let out a sigh of relief. The moment he lets his guard down, Mana turns to face his direction. He avoids her gaze, desperately spinning as she crept closer to look at the familiar figure. Realizing who it was, she flinched in a combination of shock and disgust. Unable to hide her grossed out reaction, she cautiously calls his name, hoping she's wrong. He explains that he suddenly got a lot of money and had no idea what to spend it on. Yuri kindly compliments him, but even her considerate words don't feel good at all. Moving past it, they agree to set the strange outfit aside for now. The girls then invite him to take on Persephone together, saying it's known to be a dangerous tower. He wonders why they're so interested in it. Magic stones that have been altered by the cursed fog should sell for a ton of money. According to the Management Bureau, explorers have already reached up to the 10th level. Most of all, Mana finds it unfair that he's the only one who got rich and insists that he helped them too. On the other hand, Yuri says she'd gladly go into any tower as long as he's there with them. He thinks about it and how there shouldn't be any big issues as long as they have holy water. With this, they all agree to join the attack on Persephone. But before that, Yudo says he should go and change out of the luxury clothes first. Meanwhile, in the darkness of the magic tower, a challenger fell to the floor, crying and unable to move despite the holy water in his hands. A white Grim Reaper-like figure floated above him, and several others in the same condition. It turned, revealing a skull with eyes glowing with power. At the 10th floor of Persephone's magic tower, a skeleton monster screeched and clacked as it raised its blade to attack. Bringing it down, sparks fly when the steel clashes with another blade. Yudo held his weapon tight, not budging an inch despite the powerful swing. He looks at the enemy with cold eyes and cuts it down into multiple pieces. Just like that, severed bones rained down on the level 16 challenger. His friends clapped in amazement, acknowledging that he's grown much stronger than before. After slaying all kinds of monsters, it was only natural for his level to rise that much. That said, it won't affect his stats much, but being strong with a low level will incur suspicions. With this thought, he decides to raise it a bit more. Just then, a warning appeared saying the holy water will only last one more minute. They shouldn't get cursed since the level spring has already been purified, but Mana tosses them some bottles just to be safe. Although he takes it, Yudo turns away from his companions. If he consumes the liquid, its cleansing effects might curse him instead, due to the inversion skill. Their conversation was interrupted before, so he couldn't find the right time to tell them about it. As he tries to explain once more, a sinister figure, clad in white robes, suddenly appears above the women. He calls out to them in a panic, but it's already gotten its hands on Yuri. Before they could react properly, the monster swept her away, widening the gap drastically. Mana tried to call to her, but just watched as the holy water bottle fell to the ground, its contents unconsumed. Holding the girl by the neck, it turned with its scythe in the other hand, as if goading them to attack. It puts the blade just by her neck, and they notice a sinister fog engulfing the metal. Just then, a red light flashes on Yuri's face. It's the system warning that she's been afflicted with a curse, and will lose her life in 2 minutes. They meet an enemy capable of cursing them, just as the holy water's effects were about to run out. In this situation, there was no way for the girl to consume it on her own. Mana moves first, dashing in to save her beloved friend from the enemy's grasp. She unleashes a flurry of attacks, aiming at multiple points on its body, but the enemy just spins its side to block each and every one. While she's surprised by the perfect defense, it counters and aims for her head. She reacts and blocks in time, but the force is strong enough to send her flying away. As they worry about each other, it's time for Yudo to take charge. Dashing forward, he tells them to leave it to him, and closes the gap in an instant. However, the enemy parries in time again. He gets increasingly frustrated, and lets loose a rush of attacks just like Mana did earlier. As if repeating the events from before, it completely blocks each attack, even from the stronger challenger. Unable to get through, they realize that the monster isn't just a random small fry. He jumps back to his team, wanting to recuperate for now. He wonders why it's still focusing on defense, despite being pretty strong itself. Mana insists on moving faster, as the curse will destroy Yuri's body in 90 seconds. The captive screams and struggles, begging to be released from its clutches. Turning to the desperate girl, the enemy stared and, to their surprise, laughed. The room echoed as it let out a screeching cackle, relishing in their hopelessness. Now they were against the Soul Reaper. Hearing it laugh maniacally, Yudo finally understands the situation they're in. The enemy waits until the holy water wears off, and savors the fear and desperation of its target. His eyes seethed with anger, as he told the monster not to underestimate him. He charged in like before, cursing the enemy and filled with hatred for its disgusting methods. Yudo strikes again, letting his hate and anger fuel the power behind his blows. Successfully blocking again, the monster laughs in his face, mocking the challenger. It pushes him away for now, and brings its captive farther away from her teammates. The pair rush to chase it down, moving fast along the corridors of the dark dungeon. Upon turning a corner, their eyes grew in surprise, realizing their mistake. In a huge hall, an army of skeleton soldiers was waiting, commanded by the Reaper. It orders its subjects to attack, after having successfully lured the targets into the trap. Noticing Mana's silence, he asks if he's scared after everything that's happened. She only smiles and raises her blades, ready for what's to come. Rather than being afraid, what she's feeling is more like getting fired up. A skeleton approaches, but is hacked to pieces by her daggers in an instant. Although sweating from exhaustion, the two feign resilience, smiling as they insist that they're keeping up well. They charged in together, moving past the army and heading straight for the Reaper. Tearing through everything in front of them, they fail to notice an archer aiming at them from far behind. Pulling the bow tight, they release and let the arrows fly at the targets. Some reached Mana, and were inches away from piercing through her head. She raised her arms despite knowing it'd be too late, but her partner fortunately parried them away in time. Confirming that he's okay, he tracks time, saying there's only a minute left until the curse kills Yuri. The pair gets more desperate as the situation grows direr by the second. Letting his power overflow, Yudo declares that he'll open up a path. He dashed forward, raising the group of enemies that stood in his way. Just Just then, an item drops. It's a ring with a red crystal called the Corpse Grudge, which afflicts the user with death every 5 seconds. He laughs at the equipment with no merit, saying its existence should be considered harassment. Something like that would never be equipped by ordinary challengers, but he's from what people would consider ordinary. The ring appears on his finger, and it activates as soon as it's equipped. The Corpse Grudge takes effect, and will grant him death in 5 seconds. However, his inversion skill should reverse this debuff, and instead fully heal him when it elapses. In other words, there's no need for him to worry about defending. The young man, now braver and more reckless than ever, sped towards his target. Instead of killing the skeletons, he jumps over them and reaches the Reaper perfectly. Raising his blade, he sets out to show them the special ability of his unique item, 7-Strike Assault. Crimson lights, reminiscent of red flowers, flash throughout the hall. With each strike, the attack power increases. But if the strikes are interrupted, the skill fails, and there's a long cooldown before he can use it again. Normally, finding the timing is difficult. The enemy swings down and cuts through his bones to sever his arm. Seeing the damage, the ladies panic. It hurts like nothing before, but the ring debuff and inversion takes effect, reattaching his arm instantly and allowing him to continue with his skills barrage. With the ability to heal every 5 seconds, he can keep attacking without worrying about being interrupted. The empowered strike sends the enemy flying, and he dashes right into follow-up. This time, his entire torso gets cut in half, but it's timed so perfectly that he's brought back to full health in the same instant. He starts off by cutting the Reaper's arm and saving Yuri from its clutches. Meeting the monster's terrified eyes, he says the next hit will be the last and his most powerful. Yudo grits his teeth and grips foes tight. The chain bloom finishes, and the entire room erupts in a blinding and beautiful flash of flower petals. Engulfed in the Yudo's blooming strikes, the Reaper screeches with its defeat and soon dissipates into nothingness. Yuri is released from its clutches and plummets to the ground, still unconscious. Fortunately, the young man moves fast and catches her gently in his arms. She panics upon realizing that she was cradled in his embrace, but he just smiles warmly, glad that his friend was alive and well. That said, they seem to be forgetting about the curse that was seconds away from seeping into her system. Retrieving the holy water, they hurriedly pour it over her body to remove the curse. It's still difficult to believe that a monster was smart enough to aim for the exact moment it wore off. Just then, countless red windows flashed in Yudo's face. They were all death debuffs of the corpse ring, piled up after being ignored for a while. While he wonders how long it's going to keep going, the red crystal suddenly cracks, letting the dark energy trapped in it burst out. Panic starts to set in since it didn't seem like good news at all. He tried calling to his friends, but was stuck in a little bubble of his own, worried that it'll explode. The young man tries and fails to take it off, and the ring suddenly shines brightly. The theatrics made him brace his body, expecting something huge to happen, but the light simply died down. Its activation limit has been reached, and as such, it has turned into a corroded ring. Surprised by the light, the ladies finally turn to see what was going on. Brushing it off for now, he successfully unequips the item, and wonders what they're going to do next. Since Yuri had a pretty tough time today, Mana suggests heading back after collecting the magic stones. Feeling guilty, despite their assurance that it isn't her fault, the mage decides to at least do her best and help gather all the magic stones. They cheer her on for a few minutes, showering the girl with praises. However, this goes on for a few tiresome hours, and she just wouldn't stop slaying lesser monsters. The conquest of Persephone continued smoothly, and the large number of challengers entering daily sped the process up. In a week, a report arrived that the 30th floor boss room had been discovered. However, there was one problem. Back in the headquarters, Yudo sat alone, silently sipping on his coffee. Putting it down as he was deep in thought, he suddenly hears a couple of people talking about the tower. Apparently, the door to the boss room is sealed, and nobody is able to get inside. Familiar voices called to him, thanking him for waiting. It was Mana and Yuri, who had come for their plans to investigate Persephone's tower. That said, he says they still haven't figured out a way to break through the seal. Suddenly smirking with confidence, they say an acquaintance found a hint on the top floor. He reacts loudly as it's huge news, but is shushed to keep people from noticing. Whispering, they say the hint is just a short phrase. As proof of many deaths, raise the proof of decay. Their expressions are dead serious, but neither knows what the phrase actually means. While their brains fall short this time, Yuri chimes in, saying she also came across some information. It looks like several challengers of the tower received a ring with the death effect on them. Remembering the corpse grudge from last week, they confirmed that he has something like that too. Apparently, a person can only receive one of those, and people think it might be some kind of key for the boss room. Come to think of it, he never received another ring, despite slaying countless more enemies in the tower. Things click as he remembers the hint phrase, and the countless death alerts he faced before. With this, Yudo finally solves the puzzle. Yuri was still lost in thought, going on about how the keys weren't working for others, when he suddenly stood up with a determined urgency. He walks away first. Without turning back, he says they're heading to Persephone. After all, only his ring is the true key that can open the boss room on the 30th floor. Yudo arrogantly claimed to have the answer, and acted like a cool person. That said, he had no assurance he was right, and would be embarrassed if he was actually wrong. He can already imagine his friends punishing him for acting so haughty. While imagining their disdainful eyes, Yuri spoke, asking why he's so confident that his ring is the true key. As such, he explains how the item changed into something else after hitting a death limit. They're shocked to hear that he actually activated the death effect, as no sane person would. Since he has infinite revival, he was being reckless again, against his promise to them. That said, he only ever used inversion, but brushes it off as essentially being ineffective on him. Now there's no information after it changed. This is where the hint comes in. The evidence of decay and proof of many deaths is indicating exactly what happened to his ring. With the logic reasonable and the mystery solved, they praise their friend, making him turn away in embarrassment. Facing away, he hides his nervousness, blushing and thinking that he said too much. Now all he can do is believe in the ring and hope that it doesn't prove him wrong. Whether he becomes a laughingstock or not is entirely dependent on it. The trio reaches the boss room soon enough, and Mana pushes as hard as she can. As expected, it doesn't budge an inch, just like all the other challengers said. Exhausted, she turns to Yudo, saying it's all up to him and his precious accessory. Calming himself down, the young man nervously approached the gate. Heating his ring up like a lucky charm, he raises his hand, commanding the door to open at the beckoning of its key. However, an awkward moment silently passes, as nothing happens. He feels smaller and smaller by the second, and the realization that he was wrong hits. Just as he was losing hope, the crystal suddenly glowed brightly, along with the entire door itself. With this, the entrance opened. Yudo sighs in relief, hiding his tears and delighted that he turned out to be correct. Come to think of it, they were so focused on whether or not it would open, that they forgot about the boss up ahead. To make things worse, they were on the 30th level, so the monster should be much stronger than the one they defeated in Hermes. Turning and calling to his friends, he suggests taking a moment to regroup and plan. However, he belatedly senses the ominous hand reaching out to him. No one reacts in time to stop the young man from being pulled inside the boss room. The hand tosses him to the middle of the area, where he painfully tumbles and crashes. For the first time in a while, Yudo trembles in fear. He tells the ladies not to come inside, but it's too late as they've already stepped forward. The door closed with a resounding thud, and a magic circle sealed them all inside. Just leaving after opening the door is not allowed. A large blue portal appeared in front of them, brimming with power. There, a haunting figure with long hair and dark robes emerged. The three summoned their weapons, preparing for what was coming next. On the other hand, the boss, leaning on its cane, tapped the wood on the floor. The portal disappeared, and they were left alone in the room with the being enveloped in power. Gathering energy into its body, it lets out an ear-piercing shriek, loud enough that its sound waves pushed the challengers back. They were locked inside, and left with no choice but to take on the consequences for opening the door. The boss of the Persephone Magic Tower is the Elder Bone Priest. Speaking in an indecipherable language, it casts a spell and sends blue flames at the challengers. From the flames, countless skeleton warriors march forward, brimming with power unlike the others below. Given the summoning ability, they'll be at a disadvantage if they don't end the battle fast. Ready to do just that, Yudo grips his sword tight and dashes in to make the first move. Ignoring the useless ones, he appears right above the boss and aims to take it out at once. He dives down and swings his blade, but a hard barrier blocks him completely. His eyes widen in surprise as it meets the elder's threatening gaze. A huge explosion sends the young man flying back to where he came from. While he remains unharmed, the enemy's flawless defense is going to be a huge problem. Just then, a skeleton sneaks up and ambushes him from behind. While he manages to defend one attack, he fails to block the other and is impaled in the chest. He doesn't die right away and instead turns to see a couple more enemies coming with their blades raised. The first death comes, granting him an increase in his defense stat. He responds right behind a skeleton, taking the opportunity to launch a surprise attack. Against their expectations, the common monster defends perfectly with an unbreakable guard. Trying harder, Yudo grits his teeth and pushes as hard as he can, acknowledging its strength. Suddenly, he's locked in an intense skirmish against the skeleton that's on a completely different level compared to the ones before. Dealing with one was already difficult, yet the elder was able to summon entire legions. While he wondered how he was going to handle it, a couple of enemies grabbed his arms, opened his guard, and pushed him flat on the floor. He struggled as hard as possible, but could not do anything as he was forced defenseless in front of the boss. It looked at him for a moment but turned its head at the commotion nearby. There, huge bursts of magic blasted a bunch of skeletons. It was coming from his two comrades, who were surrounded and also on their last legs. Yuri summons a powerful cannon of water, hitting a target. It enlarged and raged into a powerful torrent. For just a second, the girl feels victorious, but her face drops as she sees the scene before her. There, the skeletons engulfed in her magic stood tall, wet but completely unharmed. Similarly, Mana was struggling against a single skeleton soldier. The two are cornered, and they don't know how to get out of the predicament. Yudo panics, pushing and pulling to free himself as he sees his friends' lives at risk. He freezes for a while, seeing the elder raise its sharp cane above him. Bringing it down, the boss mercilessly severs the challenger's right arm. It takes a moment for the pain to register, but he soon screams in agony, falling back and rolling in misery. The huge enemy seemed to chuckle, as its underlings held the young man still again. They pulled on his body, straining against his thrashing limbs. His left leg comes off next, cut cleanly off, but not dealing enough damage to take his life. The elder smiled, enjoying and relishing in his desperate cries, while it chipped away at his body. Falling to the ground, he silently begs them to stop. Bony hands gripped his body, and the skeleton warriors crowded him, biting and tearing his flesh off piece by piece. His tormented screams filled the room, echoing and ringing as they continued to eat away. Yudo is still breathing after all that, as if intentionally left alive to maximize the trauma he'll suffer from. Breathing raggedly, his eyes began to close, and the last thing he saw was the elder's staff. Even then, he knew it was going to haunt him on the other side. With this, he finally dies. The boss, delighted with what it did, raised its arms and cackled with satisfaction. Yudo's eyes slowly opened, and the first thing he saw was the image of the elder priest. He jolts up in shock and breathes hard, remembering how he was tortured, dismembered piece by piece. Checking on his arms, he sees both there, shaking in fear and pain. The memory is too much to bear, and he can't get the traumatic experience out of his head. He clings to his face as if anchoring himself to the world. His final moment flashed by, along with all the suffering that brought it on. Unable to hold it in anymore, the poor challenger wailed in agony, endlessly weeping as the thoughts were burned into his brain. After a long while, he manages to calm down, but his face is completely devoid of life. The system screen before him flashed. If he doesn't go back, and if he fails there'd be no one to save Yuri and Mana. He has to hurry up, revive, and defeat the boss to rescue his two friends. Standing up, he reminds himself that he has to forget the fear for now. He knew it better than anyone, but he couldn't, for the life of him and his comrades, stop himself from trembling. There were only 7 seconds before revival, and he had to quickly designate a respawn point. The instruction plays and plays in his head, and the infinite lives skill finally brings him back. The battle is still ongoing, and he sees the two ladies surrounded, desperate to somehow survive. Yudo was going to call to him, but as the elder turned to him, his entire body froze, except for the obvious shaking in his limbs. Slowly, his hand lowered while the skeletons closed in on them. He couldn't do anything, and he was back to being a pathetic little challenger. The young man fails to even move his body, despite his friends cowering in each other's arms as death approaches. Tears fell, believing they were all done for. Just then, the seal on the door hummed with power and burst into flames. A huge explosion behind him rocks the room. Turning back, he sees a lone man entering through the gigantic hole he blasted the door open with. The man, Kagu, had heard that nobody could enter the boss room, so he tried to force it open. Little did he expect that there would already be someone fighting inside. Quickly scanning the area, he sees the ladies in trouble, the boss at full strength, and a lone young man crying in the middle of it all. The intruder stretches his neck, recognizing that the situation doesn't seem to be favorable in any way. The skeletons jumped in to attack Yudo. Before he could even react, the man peered between them in an instant, swinging his blade and taking them out. He offers the youngster a bit of help. Rest assured, since the Dominator King Kagu was there, nobody was going to die anymore. The boy thinks about the title he just mentioned. It's a heroic name, reserved for a chosen few, who have conquered magic towers with more than 100 floors. Deciding to talk about the details later, the Dominator says he'll conquer Persephone first. With a cheeky expression, he activates his unique sword, engulfing it in flames. As soon as he said its name, a huge and powerful blast consumed them all. The tornado of burning fire spun around them, raising the room and turning the skeletons to ash. Yudo watched in amazement, unable to believe the power he was witnessing. Annoyed but also fearing for its life, the elder jumped to the ceiling and away from the blaze. Unfortunately for it, Kagu had no intention of letting it escape, and was already targeting it from above. It cast its shield once more, but the Dominator King's entire being overflowed with power. He swung down, clashing with the barrier and sending sparks flying throughout the area. Just then, the defense cracks and soon explodes. The fight is so intense that its shockwaves force the ordinary challengers to brace themselves. Kagu stood still in the middle of it all, unmoving as if baiting the enemy. It works, and the elder appears behind him, roaring in anger. However, he was already prepared for it, so a quick punch sends it crashing back. Turning around, he calls to the young man, and graciously serves him the finishing blow on a silver platter. Yudo is confused, not understanding the offer. While Kagu doesn't know what he went through there, his face looks terrible. Gazing sternly, the king advises him against carrying the experience strangely, and settle it with his own hands. Yudo finally breathes calmly, gripping his blade tight. He expresses his sincerest gratitude. The elder sees him and charges in, wanting to get rid of the weaker opponent first. With clear eyes, the challenger sends it back, thanks to their savior. He feels like he can fight again. Kagu can see that Yudo has reconquered his trauma. He grabs Yudo by the shoulder and congratulates him for becoming the dominator of the Tower of Persephone. Yudo is not comfortable with this, citing that he only delivered the final blow, and that it is Kagu who is the real dominator of the tower. Kagu does not care, especially since a window opens up that informs Yudo that he gets all the rewards. Yudo offers to take everything, but Kagu does not want it. He suggests that his party use the reward for all of them to get stronger. He sees Yudo, Yuri, and Mana so happy to survive their ordeal, and it makes Kagu smile. He tells the trio that he is not short on money, and is already satisfied with his signature sword. All he wants from Yudo is for him to take a peek at the unique weapon he received. Yudo looks at his weapon storage window and sees that his new weapon is a magic staff. He presses the staff icon, and it materializes in front of them. They marvel that they are looking at the rare staff known as Aqua. Kagu asks if Yudo is good with magic. Yudo says he is not, so he offers the staff to Yuri instead. Yuri is hesitant to take it. She tells him that she does not feel like she deserves to take it from him. She explains that she and Mana have discussed that they have not been any help in conquering the tower, nor were they in their last tower. It pains her to say that they think that they are just a burden to Yudo. Mana interjects that they have decided that they should not have formed a party with him in the first place. Yudo does not like where this is going and so justifies that even he was not much help in the boss fight and had to rely on Kagu. While sweating, he tells the girls that he was only able to protect them because of him. His words are like a dagger in Mana's heart. She makes him notice that his words prove that he knows that they are just objects to protect. Yudo makes the excuse that he did not mean it in a bad way. He can tell that he feels far apart from the two girls, despite them being inches away from him. Mana tell him that their new resolve is to get stronger. Yuri follows up by saying that they have to tackle the Tower of Persephone by themselves to do so. They announce that once they catch up to him, they will return to him as his party mates. Yuri insists that he should keep the staff until that moment happens. Yudo suddenly tosses her the staff. He explains that trying to get stronger is all the more reason she should take the staff. Yuri is about to thank him, only for status windows to suddenly open around them. It informs them that the tower will disappear in 10 seconds. As a bright light engulfs them, Yudo tells his teammates goodbye. Once they reappear in the streets, Kagu tells Yudo that they said farewell maturely. Yudo does not agree, since he is still wiping his tears from the loneliness he has right now. Kagu suggests that if he feels like passing some time, then he hang out with him. Kagu explains that he has been called by the chief of the Tokyo Bureau, even if he is active in the central region. He believes that if he had been called all the way to Tokyo, it must mean he is about to get into something serious. He says that he only stopped by the Tower of Persephone to kill time before the meeting and that it was only a matter of chance that he found him. Later they walk together. Yudo asks why he bothered so much for someone like him. He knows that since he did not activate the infinite revival in front of Kagu, he should not have a reason to think that he is anything special. Kagu replies that he is interested in him because Fumi told him that Yudo is the promising dominator of the next generation. It shocked Yudo that the chief said something so highly like that. Kagu recalls how shaken up Yudo looked during the boss fight and thought the chief must have been mistaken. Yudo thinks his impression of him is right since he only sees himself as just a regular guy. Kagu assures him that he does not need to worry about it since he can always put in more effort next time. Since they still have time before the appointment, Kagu suggests that they go shopping to relax. He brags about how a Dominator King like him can teach him about smart ways to use money. Yudo's eyes sparkle at the once-in-a-lifetime chance to learn about money from the Dominator King himself. In his eyes, Kagu looks like a god. Later, the two head to the bureau headquarters looking tacky in new clothes. Fumi looks at them and teases them by asking who they are. This simple comment sets Yudo off. Kagu admits to his new friend that having the title of Dominator King feels empty since he does not have any fashion sense. Fumi tells Yudo his new clothes look messy. It ticks the man off even more that he points at Fumi and accuses her of looking like someone who also knows nothing about fashion. She finds his comment cringy. Fumi grabs a magazine from her cabinet and shows them that she is the cover girl wearing fashionable clothing. She points to the words written on it that state that she is known as one of the most fashionably trendy people around. Instantly, Yudo goes to his knees to apologize to her. His actions make Kagu laugh. He does not beat around the bush and asks Fumi why she called him. Fumi explains that the bureau is about to carry out a large-scale operation. She elaborates that they will conquer the greatest magic power, Zeus. Since the death toll has been rising in that tower, the bureau can no longer overlook the tower. The resources gathered in the mission will be distributed to all volunteers participating in the operation, and all volunteers' skills will be considered for making strategic plays. She warns him that the danger of Zeus dwarfs the danger of every tower in the world. She expects that there will be many casualties, but she wants to recruit him to the front line so as to reduce the number even slightly. She determines that she needs the Dominator who conquered the magic tower Hephaestus in the central region. Kagu agrees, knowing his involvement is needed to save lives. Meanwhile, Yudo feels awkward since he has nothing to contribute to the discussion. This changes as Kagu's only condition for accepting the quest is that he can bring Yudo along. Fumi agrees to his terms, making Yudo feel like his agency has been taken away from him. Kagu tells his new partner that he will be counting on him, making the man get into a cold sweat. Yudo screams, and it can be heard throughout the building. Kagu and Yudo head to the Tower of Proteus. There they are ready to level up. Days before, Fumi told them that they still had time before their mission to the Tower of Zeus, so Kagu asked him if she could suggest any tower that would be perfect for leveling up. He says that he needs it so he can train Yudo before their big mission. Yudo asked if he could choose not to participate in the mission, but Kagu only laughed at him. He asked instead why he wanted him along. Kagu responded that he wants him to get stronger, confusing the lad. Fumi suggests to them to take on the magic tower of Proteus if they want to get stronger. She goes on to say that while the tower does not have any unique features, the monsters there are at a high level. She also informed them that a large-scale mining area has been found there, making it a popular spot for challengers. Kagu thought about it and agreed on the spot. He surprised Kagu when he told Yudo that their aim was for him to fight the boss there. Back in the present, the duo are in an area in Proteus, facing a monster that looks like a knight carrying a lance. Kagu tells Yudo that he needs to fight it alone so he can see his limits. Yudo is reluctant, but he still charges towards the enemy. The knight attacks, and while it scratches his cheek, it does not slow down his momentum, and he manages to hit the monster. Still, the knight can fight back. Yudo sees an opening and gets to hit it with a finishing slice. The knight gets to its knees, yet Kagu warns Yudo that it is still not over. Despite being on its knees, the knight throws its lance at his enemy. Kagu is tempted to help Yudo, but knows he needs to stand back to get to see what he is capable of. He apologizes, knowing he is about to die. The lance hits Yudo directly in his chest. The force of the throw is so hard that it also lifts Yudo upwards. He falls to the ground, looking lifeless. Just as the knight thought it was over, Yudo suddenly responds inches from him and is so angry that he cuts off its right arm. Kagu sees that infinite revival is the real deal and that Yudo can never die. It convinces him that his ability is what makes him the perfect candidate to become his partner. The knight is down, so Yudo tells it to yield. Light suddenly appears where the arm of the knight once was, and it grows into a sword for an arm that stabs Yudo in the chest again. The system window tells Yudo he has died and will get a permanent debuff, only for his inversion to take effect and buff his stats instead. He responds on the battlefield again, angry that the monster pierced his heart twice. He attacks the knight with the declaration that he will never forgive the creature. Yudo and the knight are evenly matched in their crossing of blades. It frustrates the man that he can't give the creature a decisive blow. Suddenly, he senses something coming from the distance. It is a lance, and he dodges it just as it is about to hit him. It turns out that another knight has appeared, carrying the same sword arm as the first one. Unbeknownst to Yudo, two more lances are dropping over him from above. He is only lucky that both lances did not hit him. He then sees that two more knights with sword arms appear. He finds himself with no way out as the four knights surround him from all directions. He tries his hardest to block and parry their moves. He counters back, yet they evade. As time goes by, their moves get harder and harder to evade, and he fears that it will only be a matter of time until he dies. Just as he thinks this, their blades near his eyes. Kagu realizes that it is time for him to enter the fight and blocks the knights' attacks before they reach Yudo. He hits all of them, sending them flying to the rocky walls with a bang. Kagu compliments Yudo for the effort he has made so far, but tells him that it is his turn now to show him his power. As the knights come back, Kagu materializes flames that obliterate the creatures. Kagu tells Yudo that he wanted to do more, but the enemies evaporated in a single hit. Yudo hates that he is complaining when he is so strong. Kagu goes on to tell him that it saddens him that he did not get to show off how desperate he was to cling to his life while fighting like he was. This insults Yudo, who tells him that he only did that because he had no choice. It leads the two to get into a heated argument. It ends as Kagu accepts that there will be more chances to show off his strength. Yuto asks what they need to do now. Kagu answers that they need to go to the magic stone mining area up ahead. Since magic stones attract monsters, he explains that many strong monsters appear there. Yuto reviews that their mission is to find monsters and to take them down. Meanwhile, in the mining area with rocky walls filled with crystallized magic stones, many challengers are there trying to remove them with pickaxes. Among them is a trio of women looking like they are having a good time talking to each other. Unbeknownst to all of them, among the rocky landscape is a rock monster who blends into the background. Now, its glowing red eyes open up as it awakens. Yuto marvels at how many magic stones there are in the mining area. He tells Kagu that he has never seen a place like it at any other magic tower before. He recalls how much money he had the last time he sold magic stones. It gives him the idea that he will become extremely rich if he sells all the magic stones in the mine. He forgets about their monster hunting objective and would rather just mine stones. Kagu makes him realize that if it is as simple as he says it is, then there should be more people than the countable ones in the mine right now. Yuto realizes that he is right. Kagu explains that in such a place where so many magic stones are clustered together, their individual power gets lowered because they compete for the surrounding magic power. This is the reason he says that their quality is not that good. He warns Yuto that the stone here will not give him much money, since there are still people who are willing to mine them. The Management Bureau maintains the environment and has placed challengers to defend it. The demand for the site, he says, is that it is a place where people can earn money safely. Yuto sees that the trio of girls are enjoying their mining of magic stones. They remind him of how he used to enjoy his time with Yuri and Mana, and it makes him lonely. Kagu suddenly puts his arm on his shoulder and asks if he is staring at the girls because he has a crush on one of them and gets excited to know which one. Yuto denies his accusation, so Kagu tells him that he is boring. However, it gives him the idea to ask which girl he likes from his previous party. Somewhere else, Yuri suddenly becomes tense. Coach admits that the two ladies he was hanging out with before were both cute. He asks again which one he likes or if he likes someone else like Fumi. Elsewhere, Yuri is paranoid that something is happening out there beyond her control. Yuto takes his hands off him and tells him that he came for training, not to talk about romance. Kagu points at him with judging eyes and calls him a tsundere, so Yuto screams at him to shut up. Meanwhile, the trio of girls has spotted a part of the mine that is filled with bigger crystals than the rest. One of them starts mining by hitting it with their pickaxe. The stones there are so hard that they hit the woman's hand. As they wonder why this spot is harder than the rest, glowing red eyes appear from the spot they just hit, revealing that it is just a camouflaged monster. The rock monster rises, scaring the girls. They run away, but the creature chases after them. It simply sits down, and it causes tremors that put everyone in the area off balance. The creature starts to levitate its crystals and shape them into sharp spikes. It aims its spikes at the women and then projects them at them, much to their fear. Yuto quickly gets in front of them and blocks all the crystals with his sword. He tells the girls that this is their chance to run away. The girl seizes the chance to escape. Despite his attempt to look cool, he finds that his body gets filled with sharp crystals, leading to him lying on the ground. He tells himself that as long as he saves someone, dying is not a big thing. He wishes for the day that he can be as cool as Kagu when it comes to saving people. As the monster nears him, it is about to step on him with its giant foot. Yuto reflects on how he originally wanted to be like Kagu after conquering the magic towers. He would never have to worry about money again. But then he was asked what was next in life after that, and he had no idea what to say. However, seeing Kagu save them all at Persephone made him realize that he wanted to be a challenger who saved others in a cool way. All these thoughts course through his mind before he falls dead due to the numerous crystal shards that have pierced his body. The monster then moves to crush Yuto's lifeless body, as we see on the system window that a permanent debuff of 34 intelligence will be applied as a death penalty. His inversion skill then turns it into a plus 34 intelligence. Yuto revives the memories still fresh in his mind and now filled with an intense desire to reach his ideal. He knows he still has a way to go, but is now filled with assurance as he charges right at the monster. He leaps forward and delivers a powerful blow on the beast's rocky exterior. However, it is too hard for him to cut through. He jumps back and wonders how he will be able to penetrate it with his sword. He suddenly remembers Kagu and wonders where he is. Nearby, the cool challenger is busy guiding the others to safety. Two guards tell him that they can't just run away from their duty. He replies that the monster is strong but that this partner will be able to handle it. Yuto looks a bit surprised to hear that as the monster then fires another round of crystal projectiles at him. He parries some with his sword and then runs frantically to avoid the others. Kagu screams to get Yuto's attention and then asks if the young challenger has any intelligence. Yuto's first reaction is anger as he thinks he is being mocked. Kagu, however, simply laughs and says he is not referring to being smart but to the INT status. Yuto continues to move defensively as Doku explains that if he has a decent int number, then he should try to observe carefully. The secret to its hardness will then become visible. Doku then waves goodbye, saying he is leaving the fight to him, while a slightly annoyed Yuto mutters that it is quite irresponsible. INT is a status referred to handling magic or magical power. A higher number will allow one to use more powerful magic. Yuto's INT has increased, but it is still not enough to use spells. Still, he checks the screen and sees that general skills called magic sensing and magic manipulation are now available. Magic sensing makes it easier to perceive magic in the area, while magic manipulation allows one to consolidate the surrounding magical power. Yuto is a bit surprised to see this, but then remembers that he did gain some INT during his last death. He smiles and immediately uses magic sensing 1. This allows him to see an unstable purple aura around the monster. The image is unstable, so he focuses more on increasing the skill's effectiveness. He is now able to see that the monster is protecting its entire body with a shell of magic. Now he knows why its skin exterior was unusually hard. The enemy then focuses its magic, and 3 balls of energy appear above it. Yuto sees them getting bigger as the magical energy gathers together. He then realizes he is in trouble as powerful magical blasts appear from all 3 balls. The young challenger is thrown back into the wall by the impact. He gets up slowly, looking a bit forlorn. Seeing the magic will mean nothing if he can't defeat the monster. He then notices that the magical shell has become unstable due to the monster focusing its magic on attacking him. Yuto smiles as he realizes this is the opening he has been looking for. He immediately gets up and rushes at the monster. He avoids the enemy attacks and looks confident as he thinks about how he will strip away the magical shell by delivering a big attack. Yuto spots the crack in the defensive shell, which has become temporarily unstable. Thus, if he strikes it with an immense amount of magic power, he should be able to destroy the shell. Before that, he must first destroy the magic stones, and he slices some that are near him. The monster, meanwhile, continues to gather crystal shards and hurl them at our hero. Yuto moves with lightning speed, zigzagging around the room, avoiding all of the monster's attacks. He looks up and sees more crystals about to rain down on him. However, he is once again able to deftly avoid them all while slashing the magic stones in the room. He then turns around and sees that the room has become filled with dust. However, the monster is not there. He is stunned as he realizes it stealthily moved behind him to jump at him in an attempt to crush him with its body. He is able to leap out of the way just in the nick of time, and he quickly casts magic manipulation 1. This draws all the droplets of magical energy around him. The skill can only gather magic and not produce it. The droplets all head to Yuto, where they are gathered in his hands. He then takes this power and transfers it to his sword, which becomes imbued with a blue Q. He is confident this will be enough to break the shell, and he lunges forward with all he has got. He strikes the monster's magical shell, but is only able to create a tiny tear. Yuto is not worried, though, as he has a trump card. He positions his sword and then activates the unique skill Chainburst. The monster fires more projectiles, but he parries them easily. Chainburst is a 7-hit attack where each hit gets stronger. He rushes forward, planning to add magical power to the final attack, which he will unleash with all his might. The monster uses the magic beam attack again. Yuto is ready and dodges the blast. blast. He is in no rush as the more magic is fired, the more magic power he will be able to gather in his sword. Sensing it is enough, he jumps right at the monster's face, which is now starting to look frightened. It starts firing at him desperately, but none of them connect. Yudo's eyes are glowing as he knows the monster will not be able to withstand this attack. There is an immense surge of magical energy, and the last strike undergoes a transformation symbolized by blooming flowers. Kagu is watching the fight and is highly impressed at what Yudo is doing. The young Death to Fear is engulfed by a bright magical aura as he plans to destroy the core and shell at the same time. The impact of his sword on the monster's skin creates a huge explosion of magical energy. The monster's defenses are completely broken, and the slash slices it right in the middle. This immediately causes it to blow up in a fiery blast, which sends Yudo flying. He falls to the ground exhausted. A shadow covers him, and he opens his eyes to see Kagu proudly smiling at him. Yudo also cracks a smile of relief as they both do a thumbs up sign. He asks if everyone is okay, which Kagu confirms. Yudo is pleased to hear this as he waves at the three girls, who now look even more in love with him. Out of nowhere, something causes a huge impact on the walls behind him. He turns around and is surprised to see what looks like a robotic beast looking at him. Kagu screams at Yudo out of concern, while the three girls look terrified. Yudo, though, was able to jump back out of danger. He turns around to ascertain the situation and sees a giant serpent with metal skin in front of him called the Steel Serpent. He sees the giant hole in the wall and notes that monsters with such abilities are quite rare. It is so unusual that this is a completely abnormal situation. He grips the handle of his sword in preparation. The monster then thrashes around the room and heads right for Kagu with an open mouth. The veteran challenger raises his big broadsword and blocks the monster's mouth. He is pretty impressed with the beast, and he swings his sword, pushing it back. He realizes he needs to get serious, or he will get eaten. He creates a pillar of fire and plans to control the area with scorching heat. He then causes the flames to engulf the monster. Yudo shields his eyes and then is surprised to see that the flames have no effect on the beast. Kagu notes that the steel outer shell probably has a high fire resistance. He thus has no option but to use sheer physical power to defeat it. He charges at the Steel Serpent, which lets out a loud, angry yell before lunging at Kagu like a snake. It strikes the ground, creating an explosion of dust, but Kagu is able to leap out of the way. He swings his large sword downward, striking the monster's steel exterior. The serpent now lunges upwards, its mouth wide open, but Kagu easily avoids being bitten while taunting the monster. An area of its body then opens up. Kagu sees this and is now on high alert. Multiple long tentacle claws come out. This causes the veteran challenger to sweat a bit as four massive claws make their way towards him. He places his broadsword in front of his body in a defensive position. Just then, Yudo appears and pushes Kagu out of harm's way. He had no idea the young challenger would do this, and he shouts in concern as a claw heads straight at Yudo and passes right through him, rupturing his entire middle section. There is darkness for a moment, and Yudo feels the pain of the attack, but he materializes again right in front of the monster's face. Dying in that position allowed him to get close. He now targets the monster's eyes. He successfully drives his sword right into one of the eyes, causing the Steel Serpent to scream in pain. Yudo falls to the ground after this attack, but Kagu catches him in midair, and the two of them land safely. Kagu apologizes for letting him die, but Yudo says not to worry about it. However, the fight is not over as the monster is still alive. It strikes the walls and the floor of the room in a fit of rage, and then moves to attack the two challengers once more. However, the monster is blocked by an invincible barrier. Yudo is amazed as he learns that this is what happens when a monster tries to enter a safe area. The beast recovers its senses and then seems to be deep in thought about what to do next. Yudo wonders what it is up to. He learns soon enough as the Steel Serpent burrows down into the ground and disappears underneath. Kagu wonders if it intends to go to one of the lower floors. Yudo is concerned upon hearing this, since monsters usually get stronger the higher you get on the magic tower. Lower level challengers would be no match if a monster like the Steel Serpent were to attack them. The two of them then agree that they cannot let the monster roam free on the lower floors, or it will result in massive consequences. Yudo looks down at the massive hole that the monster made when it burrowed down. It looks like it was able to actually move between floors. Each floor's entryway has a safe zone, so monsters are usually unable to leave their areas. However, there have been cases where monsters were able to do it using some method or ability. Doku states that the snake monster is likely one of those anomalies. Such monsters are placed in a special category by the Management Bureau and handled appropriately. This category is called Errors. Doku intones gravely. Yudo is stunned since he is hearing this information for the very first time. Kagu is not surprised since such details are only shared with a selected number of high-level explorers. He turns around and tells Yudo that they need to head back and report the situation to the Management Bureau immediately. They both move towards the exit when Yudo notices the three girls staring at him and looking quite scared. They say that they just saw him die. Yudo remembers that they all saw what happened with the monster, so he makes an excuse, stating that what they saw was simply an illusion. He tries to laugh to lower their tension, then adds that he didn't really die, so they should not worry. In his mind, he justifies his lie, saying he is doing it so that they won't become traumatized. The girls don't seem convinced just yet and point at the lifeblood on the ground, which looks incredibly real. He reiterates that it is just part of the illusion, and they seem to start to believe him. They move close to him and, from the bottom of their hearts, thank him for saving their lives. Yudo is a bit flustered but quickly regains his composure and says he is just glad they are all safe. The girls all blush, and the one in a white top moves closer and asks if it is okay to have his contact number. The other two girls are instantly jealous. Kagu, though, reminds them that everyone has evacuated, and Yudo replies that they will be right there. He tells her that they should go back for now, and it would be unfortunate to be killed by the Steel Serpent right after being saved. He then apologizes to Kagu for the delay, but the old man says it is okay. He teases Yudo a bit about what happened with the girls, which embarrasses him. Kagu then says they can use the teleportation gate and head back to base. This gate allows one to teleport to another gate within the same magic tower. They exist every 5 floors and are located in safe areas. Once a challenger reaches a floor with a gate, he is then automatically able to use it. Yudo notes they were lucky to be on a floor with a gate allowing an easy escape, but it won't be the same for others attacked by the Steel Snake. They will have no means of escape. Kagu says this is exactly why they must return to the Bureau so they can coordinate with Fumi. Sometime later in the director's office, Fumi informs them that several people have already been injured or killed on the lower floors of the magic tower. The Steel Serpent has also been officially classified as an error of the highest priority. It is so unique they created a new category just for it. In addition, all exploration in the Great Tower has been temporarily suspended. Fumi then gets up and announces that she will head to the magic tower herself. Kagu says that even with Yudo, they still couldn't defeat it and asks her to bring back up, but she insists on going alone. She tells them not to worry as a surge of energy appears on her hand. A sleek sword with decorative carvings appears, and Yudo is thoroughly impressed. Fumi poses on the floor and declares for the third time that she will go alone. In the magic tower's lower floors, Yudo is devastated as he looks at the aftermath of all the carnage that happened. There is lifeblood and weapons of fallen challengers still strewn all over the floor. According to intel, after fighting Yudo and Kagu on the 25th floor, the Steel Serpent descended to the 8th floor and attacked the nearby challenger. There are still intermittent earthquakes on the floor, meaning the monster is still nearby. Fumi says they cannot let it escape. Yudo questions her strategy of sending an advance party of subordinates before they arrived, as they could have been attacked by the serpent. He reminds her of the Persephone incident, but Fumi says there is no cause for concern, as a different team has been sent this time. Kagu and Yudo then turn and see the special task force under the direct control of the director of the Bureau arriving. They are more commonly known as the Hypa Squad. They report to Fumi that they are done investigating the area. The constant tremors mean that the monster is likely residing inside the wall, causing earthquakes whenever it moves. The head of the squad then acknowledges the presence of Kagu and Yudo. The young challenger is at a loss for words and is further surprised to see the squad leader bow to them in respect. He says it would have been ideal if the Hayako squad could have handled it on their own, but this is a first-class threat on par with the boss of the Magic Tower. By fighting alongside Yudo and Kagu, they will be able to minimize their casualties. The word casualties shakes up Yudo quite a bit as he realizes the gravity of their situation. Kagu sees this and places a comforting hand on the young challenger's shoulder and says there won't be any. Yudo seconds this statement with a determined look, which the squad leader finds reassuring. Suddenly, the ground shakes. Fumi notes that the type of tremor means the monster is below the ground. There is a loud explosion as the steel serpent bursts forth from the floor. All of the Hayako squad members immediately summon their weapons and get ready for battle. They surround the monster and attack it from multiple directions. The steel serpent unleashes multiple long tentacle spears, which the squad members are able to parry while in the air. One member, though, notices a claw coming at him from the side. Two of his teammates had his back, though, and protect him from the attack. Kagu tells Yudo that this coordinated movement is a trademark skill of the Hayaka. They can easily take down mid-level bosses. However, the steel serpent is on a different level, as their attacks are proving ineffective. Kagu notes that even the elite ice Hayaka won't last long. He asks Yudo if he is ready, and then says they should go all out. They both get their weapons ready and then join the fray, charging at full speed at the monster. Kagu jumps right at the monster's face, and with all his might, delivers a strong uppercut blow right under the snake's mouth. This sends its face upward, where awaiting Yudo is ready to lower his sword right at it. However, a long tentacle appears right in front of him, blocking his attack. Furthermore, 3 more are heading right at him from above. Yudo is acrobatically able to maneuver out of their way. He looks down and sees the steel serpent slithering away. Kagu screams that they can't let it escape. Fumi then springs into action, saying it is now her turn. Yudo looks on with an anxious expression as Fumi blazes forward and quickly gets in front of the serpent, blocking its exit. Yudo is amazed at her speed, while Kagu says it has been a while since he has seen her go all out. She is utilizing body enhancement and high-speed movement through magic control, as we see her calmly stand in front of the steel serpent. On top of all that, she also has a unique skill called Frost. Fumi is incredibly fast. She charges at the steel serpent, and before it can react, she strikes it right in the neck. She lands gracefully and turns to face the snake, who is still looking around for what hit him. It lets out a scream of anger but is interrupted by multiple slashes all over its long steel body. Fumi doesn't seem to be breaking a sweat as she continues her relentless attack on the steel serpent, who is unable to even counterattack due to her speed. She jumps back again to a safe distance and then rushes forward once more, leaving trails of frost on the ground. She jumps up in front of the steel serpent, charges her sword with energy, and then points it right at the monster's body. She then delivers a powerful slash, which Yudo states might slice right through the metallic body. Kagu explains that her ice amplifies her magical power to the utmost limit. Combine that with her genius-level ability to control magic, and she is able to unleash attacks so sharp that they send shivers down the spine. She lands firmly on the ground as the snake collapses behind her. She then turns and instructs everyone to prepare as they will now eliminate the error. The Hayaka squad moves forward to the fallen monster, while Yudo and Kagu watch from afar, figuring it is not yet their turn. Fumi stands on the serpent and is about to slice when it suddenly opens its eyes. A plethora of tentacles suddenly appear out of nowhere, and the monster starts to spin around and thrash about wildly. This prevents anyone on the squad from being able to get close. The steel serpent then rushes towards its escape tunnel, while its multitude of tentacles continue to move around it wildly. Fumi lands unharmed behind the monster but sees that she won't be able to stop it from escaping. Yudo is determined, though, not to lose sight of the monster and dashes right past the director. He jumps right at the snake. It senses this and attacks him with multiple tentacle claws. Yudo braces himself for the pain as they all impale him, ripping his body apart. He quickly resurrects and grabs hold of the steel serpent. He is unable to do anything, though, except get dragged along as the monster keeps moving towards the tunnel in the wall. All Yudo can do is scream in fear. We then see the upper layer of the magical tower. The steel serpent emerges from the upper side wall, and Yudo gets flung to the ground. He lands with a thud, then slowly gets up to his knees. He looks around and sees he is in a giant cave with colorful magic crystals scattered all over. In front of him is the monster, who seems to be relaxed. Yudo takes it all in as he wonders where he is. Yudo looks around the massive cave and wonders if it is a normal floor. He quickly deduces that it is not and that it is in fact the monster's nest. The steel serpent senses the intruder's presence and quickly springs into action. It attempts to strike Yudo with multiple tentacle attacks, but the young challenger is able to run out of their way. He knows, however, that it is not practical for him to try and take down the snake all on his own. As he continues to run evasively, he decides the best course of action will be to get the director and everyone else so that they can face it with their maximum power. The serpent then tries to hit him with its tail, but he is able to jump up and avoid the attack. Yudo spots the hole in the wall and knows he must make it there. He positions himself and then breaks out in a mad sprint for the exit. The monster sends multiple tentacles at him from behind, but he is able to jump away from them and continue his desperate run to the hole. The serpent attacks with tentacles once more, but this time it positions them in front of Yudo to prevent him from escaping. The young challenger smiles and comments that the monster is not good at playing tag. He then slides underneath the tentacle like a baseball player heading for the home run plate. This allows him to reach the hole. The monster sends more attacks at him, but it is too late, as he is able to jump down into safety. Back on the lower floor, Fumi, Kagu, and the others are still assessing the situation. They are all surprised when Yudo appears out of nowhere looking exhausted. Kagu says he is worried, but Fumi nonchalantly states that she knows he will not die. Yudo apologizes but quickly states that he made a discovery. He found the steel serpent's lair on the upper floors. If they all attack together, they can end it once and for all. Fumi thinks about what he said and then asks if he noticed any unusually colored stones in the room. Yudo notes that there were magic stones that are different from those in the mining area. Fumi says everything now makes sense. During the last battle, the ice squad analyzed the serpent structure and discovered it was powered by high purity magic. However, all the stones found in the tower were impure, so that meant there was another area that contained these pure stones. She says those are what Yudo saw, since they are what is powering its nest. The monster will not risk running away. She steps forward and tells the team it is time for them to finish this fight for good. She then pauses and Yudo wonders what is wrong. She turns to him, looking a bit ashamed, and asks him to lead the way, as he is the only one who has been to the lair. They climb up to the upper lair, where they see that the steel serpent is eating the magic crystals. Yudo guesses that it is refueling its energy. The squad members soon arrive looking gassed after the long climb. The squad leader is impressed that Yudo was able to climb the ledge so easily. Just then Kagu and Fumi leap up from the hole looking like they barely broke a sweat, which awes the others even more. Fumi then takes out her sword and then tells everyone to start the battle. She instructs them to give it all they've got. They all then charge at full speed at the steel serpent, determined to destroy it. The steel serpent sees the group of adventurers heading straight at it. It lets out a massive scream that echoes all throughout the chamber. Kagu attacks first, saying that as a great warrior, he cannot afford to witness any more suffering. He will thus put everything he has into this as his entire body and sword become covered in a magical fire aura. The serpent moves its head towards him with the intention of devouring him whole. Kagu concentrates all his magic power into this attack and then swings and strikes the serpent right in the mouth, stopping it dead in its tracks. The impact damages the monster's mouth. Kagu then swings his sword like a golfer would swing a club, sending the monster flying into the air. It crashes into the wall and falls to the ground. Yudo saw this all and thought it was amazing. The serpent is far from done, however, as the light in its eyes seems to emit anger. It once again releases its myriad of long tentacles, striking everything near it. Kagu is dismayed that his all-out attack was still not enough to kill it. The monster then sends its tentacles at the Hayaka squad members. They rain down on the ground like bullets, which the challengers are barely able to avoid. A panicked voice pierces the battlefield as Yudo looks on with concern. Fumi also hears it, but her face betrays no emotion. Two of the squad members are fighting for their lives. They stand back to back and block the two tentacle attacks with their sword. One of them states that he has defeated numerous errors, so an attack like this should not be enough to take him down. Yudo sees them and shouts at them to pay attention to the area above them. They look up, but it is too late, as the tentacles strike them down, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Kagu is surprised. Even Fumi starts to show some concern on her face. The squad leader screams out their names in grief and fails to notice that tentacles are also coming down on him from above. He knows he won't be able to stop them and closes his eyes and braces for impact. Yudo, though, appears from behind him and is able to parry the two tentacles, thus saving the squad leader's life. The young challenger tells the leader not to let his guard down and that the time to grieve their fallen comrades will come later. He adds that if he dies too, no one will be left to honor them, as he remembers his past tragic experiences. The squad leader looks at the bloody corpse of his friend and then says that Yudo is right and that he will get through this. Elsewhere, Kagu also has his hands full blocking tentacles non-stop. He moves towards Yudo and says that the enemy's attacks are overwhelming them all. He wonders what their strategy is. Just then, Fumi casts Frostbite Ultimate Expansion. The whole ground and area around her become covered in ice. The tentacles are also frozen in place while some squad members look on in relief and surprise. Fumi says that if only she had been stronger, no one would have been hurt. Yudo looks on, unsure of what is happening. The director's hair then turns white as snow as she seems to be frozen as well. The powered up Fumi approaches the serpent. The creature launches its tentacles at her. The director effortlessly evades them while getting nearer to the monster. She cuts one up, evades the others again, and cuts them again. Every tentacle comes to her, so she cuts them all up like a demon. The serpent screams in pain from all its limbs being cut off. It rushes towards Fumi with visible rage. It tries to bite her, but she evades. She declares that she will take the monster's head off and power up her sword until it looks huge and long. She drops the blade towards the serpent. It causes a powerful explosion, but she misses the target. The creature then uses its tail to hit Fumi on her side. The impact sends her flying to a high wall. Yudo worries for the director. Her powerful sword then drops to the ground. He recognizes that his foe's sword is not sharp enough to sever the steel serpent. He targets Fumi's sword, thinking it will be enough to defeat it. The monster then sets its sights on Yudo. The man gets scared but resigns himself to the fact that he is about to die. He lets it bite at him. He dies, then respawns near Fumi's sword and grabs it. As he runs, he tells the creature that he is not as fast as Fumi. He then puts the blade of his sword next to his neck. He cries as he declares that he has a way to make a guaranteed strike at the monster. Yudo dies and then reveals that he has respawned just above the head of the steel serpent. He then slashes it with his finishing blow at its neck. Blue light envelops the creature. Finally, Yudo is able to behead it. The others marvel at the sight of the monster being defeated. Fumi thanks Yudo for it and tells him that the deaths of their subordinates won't have been in vain. Suddenly, the window notifies them that the boss of the magic tower has been defeated. Yudo gets confused and asks the director what this means. Fumi now realizes that she made a mistake when she said that the Tower of Proteus does not have any special features. She reviews all the reports of the tower and all the monsters they have faced so far and realizes that they all have the ability to hide their true forms. She now realizes that Proteus is the tower most bold in concealing its form, and that the steel serpent has been its boss all along. She cites this as the rare case where the boss can leave the top floor of the tower. Fumi sees that Yudo seems dissatisfied. The man replies that he does not feel like it was he alone who defeated it, and that it was all down to the entire team. He remembers how he told Ryu that there wouldn't be any casualties under his watch and regrets that people still ended up dying. Despite the window saying that the boss has just been defeated, he is not satisfied with himself and hopes to be even stronger. Slowly, his surroundings start to disappear. Later, they meet up at the management bureau office. There, Yudo gives the unique bracelet he received as a reward from the tower to Fumi. He also gives her the mountains of magic stones he received. The director thinks that this is some sort of prank. Yudo says that the boss's defeat was a collective achievement, so he does not feel comfortable keeping the rewards to himself and has decided to entrust it all to the bureau. He asks that the director use it to support other challengers. Later in the corridor, Ryu appears in front of Yudo and Kagu that he wants to ask them a request. He explains that the raid on the Tower of Zeus is about to begin, and that the Hyuga squad will take part in it. However, he feels frustrated now that he realizes that his strength is not yet enough for him to lead his men there safely. He admits that losing more comrades is the last thing he wants. He lowers his head towards the two and asks that they train him. Ryu is in the bureau training area looking exhausted, yet still having a determined look in his eyes. He charges towards Kagu, but he blocks his sword without effort. No matter how much Ryu tries, the man can't be hit. Still, Ryu does not stop trying. Behind Kagu comes Yudo, who is about to strike him too. Kagu is impressed he sneaked up on him, yet he still effortlessly blocks his strike. Despite being surrounded from front to back, he still overpowers both men to the point of them being pushed meters away from him. He tells the two that they are being soft on him and challenges them to give it their all. It was 1 month ago when Ryu asked to be trained by the Dominator. Yudo told him that he was in no position to train anyone since he was in the middle of training too. It leads Ryu to ask that he undergo the same training as him. Kagu was glad to take him in and told him that he was welcome. He promised that he would make them stronger before the Zeus operation begins. Back in the present, Yudo and Ryu are gauging Kagu for an opening. Despite feeling stronger since a month ago, he still feels like Kagu is a mountain he can never climb. It makes him all the more motivated to attack the guy with Ryu on his side. While Kagu swats his attackers away, he tells them that he will rest easy once they get even stronger. Yudo reviews that Kagu has not been hit once since they began their training. Again, Ryu calls for them to attack Kagu. Both have not lost their resolve and rush towards him in full force. They look fierce as they near their mentor, yet the man looks unmoved. Kagu warns them that he will dominate the arena with his flames. He gets engulfed in a tornado of flames. Later, Yudo and Ryu can barely stand as they rest. Kagu compliments them for improving their coordination. He tells his students that it does not matter that they were unable to win against him, but that they do well in the upcoming magic tower. Still, his students are frustrated. Later, the trio goes to the building lobby. There, they see from a screen that the bureau has finally announced to the public about the Zeus operation. Ryu promises that he will protect his subordinates this time. A few days later, volunteer challengers have gathered at the examination venue. The host there tells the volunteers that their abilities will be taken into account so they can be assigned to the right operation groups. The host asks for the first 2 volunteers to step up. Fumi realizes who the 2 are and tells them that Yudo told her all about them. She wants to confirm to herself how much stronger they have become. It is revealed that the 2 are Yuri and Mana, and they look stronger than they were before. Yudo and Kagu arrive at the 60th floor of the magic tower of Zeus. There, people on the front lines have gathered with tents and equipment. The area looks like a crowded market street within a dungeon. Kagu tells Yudo that there are many of them because their group will be split into those who fight and those who will support them. He also informs him that Ryu and the Hyuga squad will be deployed later once the operation has progressed further. They laugh as Yudo makes a joke that they should not die until they meet up with Ryu. One of the volunteers is a man who gets pissed off by seeing the 2 so relaxed. He yells at them for acting like this whole operation is just a game. Yudo and Kagu turn their heads to him, looking intimidating. Instantly, the man regrets saying anything. They comfort him by talking to him like a friend and telling him that it is okay to relax for now. Yudo tells him that they are just doing it before the hell they are about to experience. Near the camp is a rocky environment filled with pools of magma. Yudo reviews that the Tower of Zeus has been open to the public for a long time, but it has only been recently since the 59th floor has been cleared. The number of casualties has been vast since people started going to the 60th floor, and so the conquest operation has been drafted by the management bureau. Now he sees that the cause of these casualties is the heat wave. Kagu tells him that stepping into the heat wave zone means continuous continuous damage. He announces to the group that they have no choice but to advance while continuously casting healing magic on the group. Kagu claps his hands to gather everyone. He orders those in charge of healing to focus on their magic, while everyone else needs to protect the healers. Yudo wonders if his reversal skill might turn the group's healing magic against him. He turns to the heatwave area and wonders if his reversal will turn the damage into healing. He puts his hand into the heatwave area, and as he predicted, the continuous damage turns into continuous recovery. He smiles, knowing that he does not need healing magic in the area. He approaches Kagu and awkwardly tells him that he is resistant to the heatwave. Before Kagu can ask any questions, he quickly runs off. It is so out of nowhere that Kagu and others in the party do not know how to react. They see him get into the heat zone alone, and they have no idea what to do about it. Yudo is exploring the heatwave zone when suddenly, his body gets cut by multiple blade strikes. His body goes limp on the floor. Just before he closes his eyes, he sees a trio of people wearing white robes and bird masks approaching him. He responds, angry that they just ambushed him. The attackers pull out their daggers and fly towards him with their wings. He manages to block their strikes and push them back from him. Yudo declares that because of his training, they can't do anything to him in a head-on fight. Yudo gets into a back and forth, crossing blades with the white robe trio. He wonders why they have wings. The system window then tells him that they are the Holy Assassination Squad. Yudo feels like angels like them should be out of place in an area where there is a heat wave. He charges towards them again and is able to push aside two of them to get to the one in the center. The assassin tries to strike him with its dagger with such a quick force that it almost hits him. Yudo tells him that he could have hit him a month ago. He counters and hits him with a force that puts him into the far rocky wall. Yudo sees that he is still not down. Just as he is about to attack him again, he senses a dagger about to hit him. He manages to block it, but the moment of distraction lets the trio escape. He runs after them but stops as he realizes that they might be luring him into a trap. They are so quick that they disappear in a blink of Yudo's eye. He looks around but can't find them. At the last second before their attack, he realizes that they are above him. He evades the first strike, but the strike breaks the ground, and a golden magic crystal gets thrown near Yudo. It explodes, sending him flying away to a great distance. Still, the angels go after him. They destroy as much of the rocky surroundings as they can and hit all the magic stones. It leads every stone to explode all at once. Yudo dies and then gets revived with plus 40 strength points. He responds at the exact moment he can behead one of the angels. He then goes after the others, so they throw daggers at him. These blades all get sent to the ground, exploding more stones that Yudo gets away from on his way to his enemies. He then reaches one of them and cuts him into a million pieces. The last one ambushes him from behind, but he blocks the attack and sends him slamming into the distance. Yudo gets an idea and follows up his attack, intending to make him explode. He thrusts his sword into the enemy, smashing him into a wall full of magic stones. The angel assassin tries to move away from the exploding magic stones, but he is no longer strong enough to stand. Meanwhile, Yudo is already far away from him. The stones explode along with the enemy. Meanwhile, Yudo has discovered that his burns heal up because of his reversal skill. His system window informs him that the explosive magic stones are the heat source for the heat wave. He looks at the stones that surround the walls and notices that he is at the spot where they are most concentrated. It gives him the idea of destroying all the stones to make the heat wave disappear. He hits as many stones in quick succession, causing a chain reaction of explosions. Elsewhere in the heat wave zone are Kagu and the team, and most of them look exhausted from the heat. One male complainer demands one of the healers hurry up with the healing magic. The healer girl instantly activates her magic and heals everyone. It consumes her energy that he rests. The complainer sees her resting and yells at her. He looks frustrated as he complains to her that she needs to feel more responsible about their lives. Kagu puts his arms around his shoulder to calm him down and tells him not to pressure the healer. Secretly, Kagu is worried that their team is on edge. He looks around and sees that all hope is lost in their eyes. Suddenly, a creature is behind the healer girl. In an instant, she is already lying on the floor. One healer wants to treat her, but the complainer tells her to abandon someone useless like her in favor of the rest of them. Suddenly, an angel assassin appears from above the group. Kagu slays him before he harms the others. It leads 3 more angels to appear and attack the team. Everyone panics as they know that they have no chance against them in their weakened state. Only Kagu is able to face them. He worries that it will only be a matter of time until his team gets wiped out. Meanwhile, he sees Yudo running towards the battle. The complainer thinks he just came back for healing magic and accuses him of being useless. Yudo laughs as he tells him that he just destroyed all the heat sources and that the heat wave will disappear soon. After 3 seconds, the heat wave disappears. Kagu can't believe he extinguished the heat wave all by himself and tells him that there is never a dull moment with him. Yudo gets back at the complainer with a big smirk and asks if he still thinks he's useless. The man abandons his pride and awkwardly thanks him for saving them. They see that the team's morale has been lifted up already. Kagu tells Yudo that they need to use the momentum to push forward. They bump each other's fists and then continue their trek. They continue from the 61st floor up until the 64th without losing a single member. Elsewhere, somewhere in the tower, a group of angel assassins are pulling something with chains. Out of the shadows is a 3-headed, long-necked dragon. The creature raises its body and makes a loud roar. The team has arrived at the 65th floor. There they are glad to see a transfer gate portal that will make going back and forth with the lower floors much easier. The others are so tired Kagu thinks they should let them rest on a lower floor first. The main complainer asks how Kagu and Yudo are still so energetic despite clearing so many floors in a row. Yudo wonders it is because of his harsh training under Kagu. Yudo asks everyone to take a rest while he and Kagu explore the 65th floor. A voice suddenly appears to tell the complainer that he does not need to worry about the two of them as long as Hayuka squad is by their side. Out of the transfer gate come Ryu and his Hayuka squad. Ryu reports to Kagu and Yudo that his squad has already cleared the remaining monsters on the 61st to 64th floors. He also reports that the rear forces are collecting resources on the lower floors. Ryu also says that he came to lend them help and then fist bumps with Yudo. Kagu, Yudo, and the Hayuka squad explore the 65th floor and notice that there is no heat wave. Ryu warns Yudo not to take it easy since his experience tells him that they are about to face a mid-boss soon. Yudo worries since a mid-boss in Zeus might be stronger than other mid-bosses of other towers. He suddenly stops walking and then reminds Ryu to protect his subordinates this time. Ryu asks him why he is getting so serious all of a sudden, only to realize that they are already in front of the gate of a mid-boss. The group enters. There, they see the 3-headed dragon. The system window shows that it is the Annihilate Hydra. Ryu commands the Hayuka squad to prepare for battle, so they tense up and prepare their weapons. The Hydra tries to attack them, but the chains around its necks stop it. Yudo questions why it is restrained and has a bad feeling. He tries to stop Ryu and the others from attacking, but they are already running towards the creature. They behead every head from its neck. In the process, the restraints around the necks are also removed. Still, the monster's body is down and seemingly lifeless. Seconds later, the necks start to regrow until all the heads have returned. Yudo worries that the battle is about to begin now that the collars are off. The creature roars as it prepares for battle. Yudo worries for Ryu as the Hydra has its eye on him. Ryu blocks the monster's claws and assures Yudo that he has endured the same training as him. He declares that he will die. The monster then tries to attack the others in the Hayuka squad. Ryu blocks that attack too and declares that he won't let his subordinates die either. Ryu makes hand gestures to signal to his team their next attack. 2 of the Hydra's heads charge up an energy ball in their mouths. They shoot at the squad, but they evade it by jumping high into the air. They then head to the monster and attack it with a unified assault. Kagu and Yudo see that the squad has become even stronger and more refined in their coordination. It motivates the two to get on the offensive too. They notice that while the head can regenerate, its other wounds around the body are not healed. Yudo asks Kagu if they need to focus their attacks on other areas than the neck. Kagu replies that its torso is so thick that they have no way of fatally damaging it. He proposes that they figure out how it is regenerating its head first. He cuts off one of its heads again to learn more about the creature. The head starts to slowly grow back. Using his magic perception, Kagu notices something off. He tells Yudo to use his perception too. Yudo activates it and sees that magic is concentrated at the regenerating neck. He also notices that there are magic cores in each of the necks and so determines that it is using the magic from the core to regenerate its necks. The duo begins their rush with the plan to destroy the cores. The Hydra roars and moves its giant wings. The flapping of the wings is like a tornado that pushes everyone off balance. Two of the heads begin to make their ball of energy. It shoots multiple orbs of it across the battlefield. The challengers stand their ground while their surroundings get enveloped with destruction. One of its giant collars that was on the creature's neck before gets tossed to the air by the destruction and almost lands on Yudo. He notices that the collars have engraved magic circles under them. Kagu sees that he looks troubled, so he asks what is wrong. Yudo replies that he is concerned about the engravings under the collar and how they might have been used to seal a magic attack from each head. It makes him wonder why the other two have green engravings, while the one in front of him has a red one. He imagines that this means this engraving was meant to seal the most powerful head. What troubles him the most is that the head at the center has yet to show its attack, and he theorizes that it must be the head sealed by the collar with the red engraving. The Hydra flies higher. While hovering, the center head charges up an energy ball with a different color than the ones the other two heads produced. All challengers on the battlefield are tense in anticipation of the attack. The ball of energy then grows 20 times its size, with black electricity surrounding it to boot. The Hydra launches its giant ball of energy, and it hits the ground, putting shockwaves and black lightning everywhere. Everyone jumps to evade the electricity. Unfortunately, the lightning on the floor is not disappearing no matter how long they wait. The members of the Hyoka squad land first and get electrified. Even Kagu is electrified. Lastly, Yudo lands and experiences the pain himself. While it is painful, he recognizes that it is not enough to kill them. He looks at the others and is shocked to see that everyone is lying on the ground. His system window opens to reveal that he will experience severe paralysis like the others. This window then turns green and informs him that he will be paralyzed. Yudo sees that only Kagu is the one left standing of those unable to move. Yudo faces the monster but is not confident he can slay it alone. The creature shot its orbs of energy at him, so he evaded. Yudo also worries about what will happen if any of its attacks reach his teammates. The Hydra uses its tail to whip Yudo, sending him flying. While he is still flying, the creature readies to fire another magic orb towards the paralyzed challengers. Yudo steps on one of the pillars to propel himself back. He blocks the path of the orb, but he dies in the process. His inversion gives him plus 38 of health. The Hydra is about to fire, so he responds just in front of one of its heads. It fires, so he dies and gets plus 51 of defense. He responds in front of the creature just in time as it is about to fire two orbs of energy. He worries that he can't stop both at the same time. Mana suddenly appears to tell Yudo that she will stop the one on the right. The girl runs towards the creature with lightning speed. Meanwhile, Yuri is at the entrance gate and is about to fire a water blast with her magic staff. She tells Yudo to leave the other one to her. Yudo is surprised to see Mana and Yuri again. Mana jumps into the air and spins and then drops at the Hydra to deliver numerous cuts at it. It causes the Hydra to fire its ball of energy towards the ceiling. However, Yudo sees that the other head manages to fire on target towards the paralyzed team. Yuri assures him that she will shoot it down for him. She launches her water blast, and it intercepts the energy orb and makes it explode midway. The explosion reaches one of the creature's heads and disintegrates it, leading it to back away. The girl asks Yudo if they have become stronger in his eyes. He asks why they are here, so they tell him that they are one of the volunteers of the subjugation squad. They tell him that they will not be a burden to him anymore. Yudo recalls the days when they were the ones trying to protect him and the time when they split up as a party. He remembers then saying that they will be back to form their party again once they get stronger. Yudo smiles and tells them that he can tell how strong they are just by looking at them. The trio stands together, ready to defeat the Hydra. Yudo tells the two that their objective is to destroy the core inside the creature's body to stop its head from regenerating. He tells Yuri to use his magic perceptions to confirm the location of its cores. She sees it, so Yudo asks her to pierce it with her magic. She powers up her magic staff to ready her next spell. She uses her magic perception to aim, and then she fires a water blast. It pierces through one of the necks, destroys the core, and exits on the other side. Yudo is impressed and is relieved that they no longer need to worry about the head regenerating. The Hydra rises with its wings and readies to fire its giant energy ball with lightning paralysis. Yudo and Mana rush towards the creature to stop it. They both cut the central head in tandem, leading the monster to fire the energy ball at the ceiling instead. The monster then quickly recharges another giant energy ball to fire again. Yuri assures the others she got it and fires a water blast. It pierces the central head's neck, destroying its core. It leads the Hydra to fall to the ground, but the ball still fires past Yuri. They fear that it will reach the paralyzed teammates. Meanwhile, Ryu has just recovered from paralysis and is about to be hit by the energy head-on. He gladly faces it to protect everyone behind him. Yudo realizes what he is about to do and tries to run and stop him. Ryu smiles and faces the blast without a hint of fear, while declaring that this is his wish. The ball explodes the moment it hits him. The moment it explodes, Ryu is sent flying far until he hits the wall and pulverizes it. There he lies and gets incapacitated. The Hydra roars as if it knows it gained a victory. It makes Yudo angry. Meanwhile, Kagu has also recovered. Behind him, so are the Hyoka squad members. Yudo tells himself that Ryu's actions have not been in vain. He asks Kagu if he can count on him to cut off its neck. The man replies that it is a guarantee. Both of them rush towards the enemy. Again, the Hydra fires an orb of energy, but Yuri is there to counter it with a water blast in midair. The Hydra backs away from Yudo and Kagu, but it does not see that Mana is also nearing it from above. She hits the creature, putting it down. While it is down, KGU cuts off its center neck. While it regenerates, Yudo is coming to finish it off. The man demands that the creature stay down permanently as he stabs it at its regenerating neck. He pierces the last core inside it, making the creature break into pieces. Elsewhere in the tower, a goddess-like woman senses the life of her servant fading away and wants to know who is responsible. Back in the mid-boss room, the team has gathered around the dying Ryu. The dying man sees Yudo looking sad and tells him to stop it. He claims that he is not dying after all despite being ready for it. He says that he only needs rest and treatment. However, the man still goes lifeless. Yudo cries and screams for his friend. Elsewhere, the goddess senses a divine presence and realizes that it is the infinite resurrection. She feels happy, knowing she can meet someone she knows again after a long time. Back in the mid-boss room, Yudo continues to cry over the death of his friend.
So we had a pretty interesting thing happen. This entire event has massively popped off. So Stop Killing Games has reached 1 million signatures.
Okay, this one's going to be fun. So, the Stop Killing Games initiative is almost over, and the last time we covered it, the European Citizens Initiative, which is the part of it that matters the most, had just opened. And as of right now, you've got just days to join it, meaning that this is your last chance to make your voice heard and hopefully prevent the games that you buy from being destroyed.
That's right.
But here's the thing, until last week, it really did seem to be rather doomed.
Yeah.
They needed hundreds, over 500,000 more signatures. But, well, right now, it's getting thousands an hour. The reason why is quite funny. So
it crossed 1 million. They have reached the goal, and they are even going beyond that even farther. What is it at right now?
happened. They needed to hit 1 million signatures, but after months of stalling, they only had 450k. But then, over the horizon, a savior came.
Surpassed 1.13.
Pirate software. And that's because his opposition, plus a few pinches of World of Warcraft, started drama that is now surging signatures to the tune of over 240,000 in just 7 days. So,
that's right.
I'll get you up to speed. It all began last year when the darlings at Ubisoft shut down the crew. Now, they didn't just shut down the online features, they shut down
Every
everything.
game, yeah, you can even
turns
play
out, even the single player required the online components. That basically meant that your copy of the crew was, no longer a thing that you could really do anything with.
Yep.
So, Ross Scott from Accursed Farms was no fan of this, so he started a movement. Now, you may know Ross from things like Freeman's Mind or Dead Game News, and his plan, right, was to use the law.
Ross has been an advocate for gamer rights and other types of consumer protections for electronic media for a long period of time. It's not like this is his first rodeo and it's his first time talking about this. He's been an advocate for this for quite a while.
Not change.org, to actually change things here. And it certainly seems that now, a year on, he actually may succeed in a way. So basically, right, Ross believes that consumers bought a product with games like The Crew, and that product was then taken away. But from Ubisoft's perspective, it's rather different. They argue that they sold a license to a live service, a service that they could simply end whenever they wanted. So put simply, what this movement aims to do is to address this gray area, so that at the very least, people would get...
I don't think that companies should be allowed to repackage sales as licenses rather than products in order to just take consumer rights away from the user. I think that's bullshit. How does that help anybody? How is that in any way in the benefit of the actual customer or the population? Yeah, it's not right. Yeah, it's bullshit.
Formal clarity on what they were actually buying. Best case scenario would involve something basically with more teeth. Now, this was all multi-pronged. There was a UK campaign that hit problems early on with the government claiming existing laws already covered the issue. As for the US, well, basically, it was never an option because of already settled law. Now, because of this, stuff looked grim. But last summer, another path opened, and that path was the EU Citizens Initiative. So, this lets EU citizens propose on legislative agendas, and this proposal was very simple. Stop destroying video games. And what it would certainly does sound simple. It's that any game sold in the future would have to prepare for the eventuality or possibility of server shutdowns, that they would need to remain in a functional, playable state. Now, this could be through, say, single-player access, maybe through...
Or they gotta give people their money back. Like, I think that if you revoke service from somebody and you take somebody's service away, you have to give them their money back. Like, you can take them off of your official servers, maybe, but, like, to just take their entire account back, because, like, again, it's just not fair. There's not really a balance of power between, like, the user or a, what do you call it, the user and the seller.
Peer connections,
it's completely distorted.
Server stuff, you get the point, right? But actually, what's key right now is that at this point, the implementation details are actually not required. The way this works is that if it is successful, the EU would then have 6 months to respond, and if they say yes, then they will adopt a resolution, and that would guide EU activity.
So it moves things in that direction.
Mean a whole bunch of new super hasty laws, but make no mistake, it would actually matter, and that's because EU
it would get the ball rolling. It would not just like immediately, oh, we get the petition to 1 million signatures and then everything solves itself. No, it will take time for this to happen, but it at least begins that timeline. It starts the timeline.
Has got global impact. I mean, it's pretty obvious now. Just look at Apple.
I disagree with this. It's all false flat on intellectual property. I understand that, and I know that a lot of developers feel that way, but the way that you imagine intellectual property, I don't think is in the best interest of the customer. And I think that if you have a business transaction that's fundamentally not in the best interest of the customer, and it's predatory, problematic, or unfair in nature, then I think the government needs to come in and regulate it to make sure that the customer is being represented and treated in a fair way. So I understand that, like basically, I don't agree with the current, I think intellectual property law and the amount of ways that a person can exercise intellectual property law right now, I think that it's too overreaching. It's way too overreaching, and it's not fair for an average person.
For one example. Now, for this, all that's needed is...
Or just don't buy it? No, I don't agree with that at all. I think that whenever... And the problem is that just don't buy it doesn't work when every other company inside of a market does the same thing and adopts the same principle. So that's called a cartel, right? Like, you have price fixing and all these other things that are against the law. Like, just stop buying something is nice to say, sure, but you're not existing... Like, there's a lot of people that have an illusion of a free market, but most markets are actually not very free at all. Just don't buy it. And also, by the way, just don't sell it. Like, if you can say just don't buy it as like a throwaway line, then I feel like I could say just don't sell it as a throwaway line too, right? Well, if you don't like the law, then don't make a game like that. So you're at an impasse.
B, a minimum threshold being passed in at least 7 EU countries, which basically just exists. So I don't know. The French all get together and want something that nobody else wants. Only one country passes, then hey, the EU's safe. Anyway, you get the point. That is the challenge. Those are the stakes. So here's what happened next. Going through the requirements, the regional thresholds do seem to be quite manageable, right?
Yeah.
Now the 1 million signatures is
a lot.
I mean,
and it happened. And it fucking happened. That's what's crazy.
International campaign, one that's actually centered on EU citizens. Who was leading it? Well, an English-speaking YouTuber with a cult following, which
is authoritarianism, as you were saying earlier. You see, you view it as authoritarianism. I view it as freedom from authoritarianism. Because, in my opinion, authoritarianism, what makes authoritarianism so scary is whenever it's tyrannical without the ability for the public to be able to have a recourse against it. So, for example, if you don't like the president or you don't like a representative in your country, or at least in the United States, you can vote to have that person removed. But the problem is that whenever you're having this with a company, you can't necessarily vote to have a company be removed. And when a company establishes a monopoly in a certain market, like, for example, Visa and MasterCard do in terms of payment processors, and then they apply their laws and their rules arbitrarily, or like the recent case with Epic and Fortnite and selling on the Apple Play Store, I think that you run into a big issue of authoritarianism with no accountability. Because authoritarianism is being exercised right now, but the people that have the authority are not accountable to the public. And that's what the real problem is. So the actual argument that I'm making here is not in favor of authoritarianism, it's actually against it. Because I want authoritarianism that is accountable to the public rather than authoritarianism that's accountable to shareholders.
I mean in a positive way, just so I'm being clear. But basically, it's not a huge number of people. Now, this story obviously did cut through. Loads of people covered it, us included, and the early momentum was really strong.
Yeah.
Until it wasn't. Now, this is because some things fell through. One being...
This is the end goal of capitalism. Why are you discovering this now? Capitalism is one of the greatest things, and it's the best social and economic system in the entire world. And every country that doesn't adopt capitalism is a awful third world shithole that you would never want to live in. And even countries like China are adopting capitalism in multiple other ways, and you are naive to think otherwise. Capitalism has brought an untold and unfathomable amount of wealth to the entire world, and it is the premise of the entire identity of Western civilization. So if you don't like capitalism, go move to a shithole without it. But you won't, because you know capitalism is a good thing. As with anything, if you drink too much water, you'll drown. Is water bad? No, it's not. Anything can be overdone.
Newsletter that was tanked by that company having layoffs. Even Heineken, yes, Heineken, the beer people, wanted to include in campaign in their marketing, but only after the petition ended. But there is another one, and I think I know it's the one you want me to talk about. Yes, the Pirate.
Oh.
Okay, TLDR. Pirate Software opposed the initiative. This is back when it all kicked off. So what I'll do here is boil down what I essentially think is the best case, or like the best faith version of this argument, which is essentially that in very many cases, over-regulation often actually helps the incumbents. In this case, would help the AAA companies. The reason
this is true. That wasn't the argument I think Pirate Software was making, but it's true that oftentimes a lot of companies that are very big argue and advocate for higher degrees of regulation that have additional costs in order to pull the ladder up to make it difficult to have emerging companies make it into the market. This is very common. It's like, for example, like think of it in World of Warcraft, whenever you get to item level like 600, and then you make it to where after that, the only people that can join your raid are also item level 600. Well, that's what happens, basically.
The only companies with the resources to actually overcome the regulations. That is actually a fair enough, reasonable argument. But I think in practice, it's fair to say the Pirate Software in his two videos was not really steelmanning his opposition. There were some errors, wasn't really a great situation. But really in this story, there's a key thing to remember. The initial, I'll say drama, let's just say hot public disagreement, that would have happened when, let's just say his internet stocks were in a slightly different and altogether more healthy place.
It did.
Since then, he was involved in a major World of Warcraft drama, which I will cover shortly. I don't like doing drama.
It's crazy how bad that drama affected him. It is actually insane. I don't think that I can, like, I don't know the last time that somebody had video game drama negatively affect them that much.
But in this case, it does actually inform how the news would play out. As for the initiative, well, by the following April, signatures were just sitting at 425k. That's not even halfway. And only 25,000 signatures had been added between April and last week. So it basically was dead in the water. Momentum from the previous summer had completely fizzled out. But then, with only weeks to go, Scott posted his video. Everything changed. The end of Stop Killing Games. It's a fairly dramatic, somber title for a video, and one that is fair. It absolutely did appear to be dead. It was a final plea and an explainer made by a very, very tired-looking man. It was clear to me that the campaign had taken its toll. Scott admitted as much. One choice quote: "It's like asking someone with severe dyslexia to write a book report on War and Peace. I'm the wrong person for that job." I think that does speak to the absolutely mammoth amount of work that doing anything like this would actually require. But that's not all that Scott said. He took aim at Pirate, and he explained point by point, right, how Pirate's coverage was, in his view, not at all a fair representation of the overall initiative, its goals, its specific language. And I would say, from my read of it, I think Pirate almost immediately jumped straight to some worst-case outcomes of a maximalist version of the campaign. Sure. Of course, we can add to that an interpersonal level to all of this, the usual emotional reactions, hot words. But if it was just that, if it was only that, well, what happened would not really be what has happened. So let's talk about World of Warcraft.
Feed my blossoms, self-deceivers.
It's actually crazy that this was all because of a WoW guild. This was nuts. Oh my fucking god.
I hate covering drama, but today it is actually relevant because basically
it all comes back to WoW.
I think what we're seeing with this initiative would not really have played out if these World of Warcraft related events didn't play out the way that they did. Because basically this is why people...
That is what happened, is that as soon as the WoW event happened and people got really mad at him, then it got really popular to make negative content about him. Then people went back and they brought up like that Maldavius fig tree stuff, and then they brought up him doing those playthroughs and people thinking that it was inauthentic, and then they brought up what else besides that? Oh, the voice changer thing. And I think there was like a couple of other things. Yeah, Ashes of Creation, where he pulled that mob, and Ashes of Creation. Like a lot of stuff, right? So it kind of, it was like a domino, basically. It was topic after topic. Yeah, exactly. People went crazy about it. As soon as people realize that you can get positive feedback on social media by being negative about a person or a topic, it creates a feedback loop that multiplies that amount of negative feedback or negative sentiment by like 50x. Because people want social media attention, and so they go after it by adopting these causes and saying these things. Whereas in a lot of cases, if this was happening in a private situation, any of these dramas, like even like the big ones, would probably not be taken very seriously on an interpersonal level. But on the internet, they're taken extremely seriously because there is clout to be gained. And this is not something that's unique to Pirate Software. It's a phenomenon that happens on the internet, and it's happened to me multiple times too. So I've seen it happen. I've been on the. I've farmed other people for this, and I have been farmed for this. Sometimes you're the farmer, other times you're the crop. That's the way it goes. It's a rough and tumble world out there, and if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. That's the way I see it.
Ready, willing, and even excited to hop back into the fray and to pump all of this up. So here's the TLDR. OnlyFans is a WoW Classic hardcore streamer content guild. That's a lot of words, but basically think of it as a reality TV show where dozens to hundreds of hours of gameplay are at stake because when a character dies...
It's like Love Island, where instead of everybody having sex, nobody does.
it is dead, just that that character has got lots of fans in Twitch chat and some sort of big name behind them in the form of a streamer. Pirate, along with other streamers, were doing a dungeon in this game. And that dungeon went poorly. People died, and of course, whenever they died, that means they lose their characters. Characters progressed. Now you might be thinking, so what? A World of Warcraft dungeon run went bad and people lost their characters in a hardcore server. Why is that a news story? Well, there absolutely is a reason why. So it was broadly seen that he went very much every man for himself mode, trying to save his own character, and really to the detriment of his teammates, a few of whom died. Now at the time, tensions were high, and those tensions were pointed at Pirate software, both from viewers and from his fellow party members.
Chance kicked Pirate out of the guild. Large majority of the guild felt uncomfortable doing it. It put Chance in a pretty weird position. I mean, as I said, after seeing this happen, and in my opinion, I think that, like, I could tell that OnlyFans 2 was going sour. Not when the Pirate stuff happened, but when the S-Fan stuff happened. There was like an entire hate community about S-Fan dying in Classic WoW. Like, you can just search this up on Reddit, but there was a huge community that was dedicated around shitting on him and hating on S-Fan. The what? Yeah, it was really, really cringe, right? And like, oh, S-Fan's bad, he doesn't know what he's doing, right? And it's like, I mean, it's a video game. Like, I can't really give a fuck about this, but it was funny. Well, it was funny, but the problem is that when you allow that type of hostility into a community, that hostility manifests in different ways. It's not like it's only going to apply in one circumstance. It will then apply on other people. They hated on everyone, bro. They did, but S-Fan was one of the prime targets for it. Let's be fair. And so, but no, you're definitely right. And so, like, after it happened to S-Fan, what happened to Pirate Software made a lot more sense. Go grow and spread, yeah.
And what followed was, I think, to put a very messy thing in simple terms, in an emotional sense, the opposite of saying, shit, my bad, I'm sorry, I absolutely could have done more there, my bad. Basically owning the L, doing so in public, and doing so in a way that feels authentic. Of course, feels authentic because it actually is authentic. So if you ask me, what actually happened is a common downfall of very smart, very rational people. That's because very smart, very rational people can rationalize how they are very, very right and others are very, very wrong.
I think Belluar is very accurate about this, and this is something that I've learned before myself, is that, like, I don't really understand why people get emotional. I'm not an emotional person. And because I'm not an emotional person, when people react emotionally, I don't really know how to approach it or how to react to it, because it's like putting water on a computer. It's just like short circuits my brain. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you thinking like this? Why can't you just think about this normally? How many people have been accused of being Zionists because they think that Ethan Klein has a reasonable claim to against fair use for Denham's, Frogan, and Caseytron? And they're being called Zionists, that they like Ethan Klein, they're Nazis, and all this other stuff. It's totally illogical. And what I've learned is that people are just simply not logical. The strongest argument isn't an argument. And because of that, people like Pirate Software fall into the trap of trying to logically reason with people that do not want to be reasoned with. Yet you're wrong. You can, but they have to be open for the conversation to change. I'm talking about in a general sense, not in an individual sense. In a lot of cases, on an individual personal level, you can change people's minds. But once people get together in groups, it's like the the Men in Black quote: "A person's smart, but people are stupid." I think that the more people and the more momentum a mindset has, the more one-dimensional it becomes, because it has to cater to that increasingly lower common denominator. So yeah, no, I could talk about this a lot, because it's group psychology, basically. And I think that Belluar, the reason why is I really think Belluar had a great insight with this. And it's something I've never heard discussed before. It's that when you try to apply logic to some situations, many people are just simply unwilling to hear it, even if you, and this is what happens to me, even if you can prove, like I had this happen with my mom, for example. Like I would tell my mom whenever I was like 8 and 9 years old, I said, why are you smoking cigarettes? Cigarettes are going to kill you. It says cigarettes kill you. You know cigarettes are going to kill you. They're expensive and they're killing you. Why would you want to kill yourself? And she just kept smoking cigarettes. And I could just never understand that. It never made sense. Why would you do this? And it transcended all rationality in my mind. I still, even to this day, I can't understand it. And so it's hard to stop. Well, it's hard to do a lot of things. It doesn't mean you just shouldn't do it, right? And so that's what it's not choice. Well, there's plenty of people that choose to stop smoking. Many people choose to stop smoking. They do it every day. But she just wasn't one of them. And so anyway, I just couldn't understand it. And that was probably the first time that I came into conflict with this.
Other people think, and to not have a holistic view of the situation. I mean, to put it in very simple terms, people thought he came off really defensive, and what all of this meant was fuel for the fire, an abundance of fuel. And I've got to imagine that from Pirate's point of view, it really must have looked like the entire world was against him.
Well, they were.
For the dynamics of Twitch, it was an incredible content event. And the reality is that once people are against you, it's very hard to change minds, especially when, as I think Pirate was, you're feeling...
Somebody says, remember you saying anything, best way I could explain to you is a non-smoker, cigarettes or smoker, what soda is to you? Yeah, but my mom was a Catholic, and I remember I said to her, I was like 8 or 9 years old at this time, I said, if killing yourself makes you go to hell, then wouldn't you go to hell for doing something that's killing yourself? And she's like, I don't know. And like, I had thought this up, and I was like, okay, this is going to convince her to stop doing it. Didn't work. That's a bad analogy. Well, I'm just saying, it's just using logic. But yeah, and addiction doesn't care. Yeah, it doesn't. People do not follow logic.
Quite defensive, and you're very much feeling the toll of thousands of angry people being very angry at you in just about every way they can. Meaning that, yeah, some people were, let's just say, going beyond having just a civil disagreement. Now, after that point,
I was also 8 or 9 years old,
there was
right?
a clip of an Ashes of Creation raid pool that sparked a bit of a drama. There were then accusations of pre-watching games in order to look better on stream. There was critique of his Blizzard credentials and a whole lot of different things. Basically, he turned into somewhat of a punching bag. Now, to, I suppose, try and work through some of this, he did a session with Dr. K. I think it was a pretty enlightening one. It certainly is, I'd say, a good listen. It essentially did get into why he reacted, what he did, what he actually felt. I'm not going to paraphrase here too much beyond just what I've already said as my takeaway, so I'd recommend if you want more texture, more understanding of this story and the social dynamics he made it play out.
Let's see here. I agree that the raid made it the half game. I think behind his stance on stuff killing games is extremely biased. I think that people were unhappy about his stance because he came at it from the perspective of a developer, and most players don't care about a developer's perspective because they're not developers.
today's video watch. But as it
Pretty
pertains to the
simple.
Stop Killing Games movement, I think you can see how, well, whenever there was the initial disagreement of Ross, pirate stocks were looking pretty good. But then he was involved in several major dramas. These dramas led to hundreds and hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of people finding out about him or having a changed opinion of him. There were a lot of videos talking about, mistakes, examining everything. And that's why right now, for this video, when I just searched for pirate software on YouTube, here's what I got. We've got the pirate software unraveling featuring a game developer, 211k views.
Jesus.
A Josh Stripe Hayes reaction, 204k views. An Axeman video, 586k views. An Upper Echelon video, 266k views. One from Moist Critical, 1.1 million views. And that is just the top few search results.
Yep.
We're talking about millions of views here.
A lot of
now,
people.
While so many of these were rooted in dramatic aspect, obviously they were related to Stop Killing Games, and they all painted Stop Killing Games in a positive light. And what that essentially meant is that now you didn't need to be a game preservation enthusiast to know that Stop Killing Games exists. All you needed was a patent.
This is actually a very good insight from Beliewer again. This is a great video that he made. He's saying that the hate on pirate software that made him oppositional to Stop Killing Games made the initiative more accessible to more people. This is a very, very good insight.
Interest in one of the larger ongoing dramas.
I think he's right.
Of course, even if you didn't have that, social media algorithms do know how to find you if you could be interested.
Yeah.
All of that means a humongous megaphone. And so far, it absolutely seems it's done the trick. We've
What was
almost
this
certain
intent,
failure
though? Let's talk about how it
154k signatures too. At the time of writing this video, 714k. And, at the time
And now it's at 1.1
a few
million.
hours later, 737k
Jesus.
signatures. Now that basically means that
Edited
they
in
need
less than a day
263k in about 30 days. And obviously,
Yep.
if this rate holds just a little bit longer, they'll absolutely make it. Or will they? Because here's the thing. They do actually need consistent, legitimate signatures.
Yep.
The reason why it's pretty simple. Fake ones could be stripped out. Overexcited Americans having fun with a VPN, I don't know, could probably try to sign up for this. Wouldn't help the initiative. It would probably get scrubbed. And, well,
That was definitely not a good
can't
thing.
sign an EU petition. So
Yeah.
it's not a guaranteed thing just yet, but it certainly is looking like it's going to pass a million. Now, what happens if it succeeds is basically this. The EU Commission will consider further action. That could be legislative action, or it could just be guidance on existing consumer laws. Now, no matter what, the industry would have significant input, but regardless, we would get a formal statement on the matter and its legality. And that's actually a powerful starting point for future conversations and new laws.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, it gets even better. Because those conversations have already begun, and we've already started to make progress. Through all the noise and all the
has.
the core problem's fairly
This is a
simple.
great
The
thing.
audiences often think they're buying a product when they buy a game, but in reality, they're actually buying licenses. Now,
Yep.
since October, Steam explicitly states that all purchases are licenses, that it's not ownership. And that was all.
I don't think that's enough. Just because you say something should be a certain way doesn't mean it is that way. I think that a customer should be entitled to certain things when they spend their money, and you shouldn't be able to just take it away from them because they signed some TOS. That's bullshit.
Case, it's just that now it's no longer hidden in their EULA. And Valve's timing was, let's just say curious here, that's because California signed AB 2426, stating that any media that you can't permanently access offline must be labeled as a license, not a product.
Oh, there it
site,
is.
This is companies
That's a
seeing
good start.
PR opportunities, and there's a beautiful irony. Ubisoft,
Yeah.
it's the very company that started this whole mess, is actually taking action. That's because they're testing offline modes for the Crew 2 and Motorfest, and I think it's very clear that the Stop Killing Games movement inspired this. So, you know what? In certain ways,
And I think there's also like a certain level of consumer advocacy that certain games and publishers will feel pressure to do this, even outside of the legal expectations. Like, now that companies are more afraid to do... A great example of this is like Web3 and NFT stuff. Like nowadays, saying that you're going to make an NFT game or a Web3 game, this is like an immediate pass for, I would say, 98% of the internet. And so because there's such a negative sentiment around it, I think that it's created a feedback loop where companies are not making content that way.
already winning. Now, another thing that could inspire this was an actual lawsuit, specifically a Californian one about the closure of the Crew. But that lawsuit is actually facing some problems right now, and that's because of a Final Fantasy XI related precedent that lets companies remove users from games. Because, well, as a user, all you've bought is a license, and that can be revoked. That's a ruling that obviously plays to Ubisoft's advantage in that lawsuit, but looking at the big picture, we actually do see the developers are choosing to address these issues.
I agree with companies being able to remove users from their own servers. Like, for example, like if you're on a multiplayer server and you're cheating, I think they should 100% be able to ban you. You think it's good to think like that? I do. I'm very much a big fan of that. I think it's a great thing. I think that every company should exist, at least not for the detriment of the population. I'm a big advocate for consumer rights and consumer protections.
And not because they're being forced to by the law, seemingly because they want to. But there are many reasons for that. It could be PR, or it could simply be because they see what way the wind is blowing. Here's something cool. Take a look at Super Moves
Same as
World of
Web3.
Parkour. This is an indie game that failed. Legal obligations prevent keeping the online functions active, but existing owners can still play it in single player. There's another example. Whenever Blizzard Entertainment purchased Spellbreak's developer, they obviously stopped the game. But months later, they released a peer-to-peer version of the game on itch.io. That's awesome. And before all of this, Melon Studios ended Knockout City.
Yeah, there's no reason why they can't do this. Really, there's no reason why they can't do it. And also, by the way, we can just tell them to do it. You realize that, right? We can just say, you have to do this now. And if enough of us get together and we say, you have to do this now, then they have to do it. Because that's the way the government works.
They made sure the private server still would work. This
It's
is
that
basically
simple.
3 indie teams finding a way to preserve their games retroactively. It is good shit. It matters. Now, yes,
Great.
it is the case that player counts may be in the single digits, but it preserves gaming history. If a bunch of people want to play one of these games together, they actually can. And if Stop Killing Games passes, developers would have to consider things like this, not retroactively, but from day one. And that doesn't mean you can no longer make an MMO. You can still make
of course
Helldivers,
you can.
but you'll need to sell your games correctly.
Like a peer-to-peer
you need to
or something
label
like that,
them as what they actually are. Are they products or are they licenses? And you'd need to provide some sort of exit plan whenever servers shut down. And
Exactly.
nobody's saying that retrofitting games for offline play is an easy thing. I don't actually think that's
Just because something is complicated to do doesn't mean that you should just forego the consumer experience and then the consumer shouldn't be represented or treated in a way that's ethical or fair. I think that there's a lot of things about this that make it complex and difficult, but that doesn't really matter to me because what really matters is whether something like this is in the best interest of the player. There's a lot of things that are complex and difficult, and if you can't do it and you can't deliver that product to the market, then that's your weakness as a business. Like, not every business has the right to exist.
the reason not to try this. Because in many ways, the direction of travel has not been great in gaming. It's often not been great in consumer law, at least until recently. I think making progress in this realm is absolutely a good thing. And I think the idea, why not try? Well, I think that is the attitude that we need. Of course, as for some of the reasons why not, you likely heard those from Pirate Software. I think most people are thinking that on balance, no, it's actually worth giving this a shot. I think the benefits, consumer awareness, consumer protections, and, well, game preservation are pretty damn good reason why we should actually try. So, it's up to you. My question is simple. Why not give it a try? You can find the thing linked down below.
It's a great initiative. It is. And if you're from the EU, you should sign it, even though it's past 1 million in case of fake signatures. I actually think this is one of Bellier's best videos. I think that's probably the reason why so many people watched it. He brought in a number of elements of insight into this that I think nobody else has really discussed. And I think that he talked about the psychology of how and why the resurgence happened in a extremely informed and intelligent way. This is one of his best videos. I'm going to link it to you guys.
If you want to see an example of consumers not being treated fantastically,
give it a like.
Capcom, you're being naughty and it's time to call you out. And find out all about it in this next video.
There's a video right there. I genuinely, reason why signing a petition is actually a bad idea, and it may lead to Pirate Software saying, I told you so. In case it doesn't go well. Well, no, I mean, like, then people are just going to push for it in general, right? Oh, we're conspiracy. I just saw it. What Pirate said all that to bring attention to the movement and have it succeed? I don't think that's why he did it. I don't think so at all. But, you know, either way, it created that effect. And I think that having a face for people to go against definitely helped a lot of people advocate for it and go after it. That's 100% true. And what is this here? What do you think is really going to happen, though? Will these companies truly cave? I think that you guys have a very, very pessimistic view on how easy it is to make companies do what you want whenever the government just tells them to do something. The fact is that the government has the army, the government has the guns, the government has all the power. If they tell a company to jump, the company says how high. That's it. And if they don't say how high, then they do what they do to that guy from Telegram. They just put the motherfucker in jail. And then the next person does it. That's it. It's that simple. It's so fucking easy. They have to follow the law, and if you don't, they shut you down. That's the way it is. Apple cable is the best example. Yeah, Apple wanted to make their own charger cable, and then they said, no, you have to just use a basic USB-C cable. And you know what they did? They did a USB-C cable. It's literally that simple. You can make them do whatever you want. You can. All you need to do is get enough people together, and then you apply the law to them. That's it. And it's that simple. Or the company moves to a different country. It doesn't matter, because even if the company moves to a different country, if it's doing business in your country, then there's still, like, I mean, then the company can get blocked. They can extradite people. There are a million ways that governments can find like opportunities to negatively affect one of these companies. And so don't ever think that this is beyond any level of accountability. None of these companies are, and they could easily do it as much as they want. Someone tell that to Nintendo? We could easily do that. And also, by the way, Nintendo is facing an issue with that right now. So they're facing a lawsuit right now over the ability to disable Switch 2 consoles in Brazil. Like, I don't think, like, even in Brazil, they can still hold Nintendo accountable. Yeah, and also the more companies do that, then the more, like, let's say, like, one country has this law. Okay, well, let's say Brazil. Brazil's a huge market, but it's not the size of the United States or the European Union, right? Or China. So let's say this happens, and it's against the law in Brazil, but the company continues doing this stuff. That's totally fine. But the difference is that when more and more countries make it against the law, then that business model becomes increasingly less viable, because you're looking at your target audience, and it's becoming more and more and more narrow. You see kind of how that happens? The chances are the others will follow. Yeah, and once enough countries make something against the law, it becomes the default for international trade. That's what happens. And I think it primarily is decided by two different groups of people, right? And it's primarily decided by the United States, China, and the European Union, and the UK. Those are the prime, main, big money groups in society. And if you're not making money inside of that, you've got some problems. I'm happy Nintendo's getting sued, especially for this. They are. And also keep in mind that we could do this to them in the United States, too. The European Union could do this to Nintendo, too. There is no limit of what you can do. If you get enough people together, you can do anything you want. Not the mods? Yeah, this has been an ongoing thing for a while.
For as long as games have existed, players have been modding them.
You want to know what the original mod? Is putting a piece of cardboard between the split screens in Halo 1, so you don't have, like, your little brother or your friend watch your screen to see where you're at. That's the original mod right there.
Whether they were creating entirely new experiences or just putting Thomas the Tank Engine in a game. Slowly, the creators of some of our favorite games have become outright hostile towards mods. And with some big changes happening in gaming, the future of modding might be in trouble, which seems odd. Some of the most successful games in history have benefited massively from modding. Skyrim has been released like 15 times at this point. Yeah. People keep buying it because of the modding community. The thing is, many people who play video games are creative. They want to make the experience their own. And if they have the tools to do so in a game that they already love, then they will. Incredible modding communities have created entirely new genres, turned mods into standalone experiences, and have given games communities that have lasted 20 plus years after they've been released. While a lot of mods change up gameplay and add new content, some of the most commonly used ones make very minor quality of life tweaks. Like,
yeah, I think that's the way that most mods are. Like, it's just things that just make something easier to play. Like, you know, for example, the Valheim mod that, like, auto sorts chests and stuff like that.
In the UI, changing the graphics, or they just add something funny. One of the first mods ever made was Castle Smurfenstein, a small change for Castle Wolfenstein on the Apple II. A little weird, but we could all see from the beginning, modders have been making all sorts of stuff. This is part of the fun. Majority of the time, I just see mods like Shrek and Skyrim. Just people having fun replacing character models. Even though it doesn't look like much, the sheer goofiness of these mods does add value, because for many players, these small goofy changes add replayability, which ultimately sells more copies. The developers don't even need to lift a finger. It sounds like—
Well, you want to talk about replayability, bro, like, you don't need to think about this shit. You got to think about Dark Souls. Like, you go and you look at Steam, like, some of these people went and made a whole ass new game. Like, Dark Souls Arc Thrones, that's a new game. Like, Dark Souls Daughters of Ash, that's a new fucking game, man. It is insane.
a win-win to me, right?
Convergence
Not to mention,
mod?
there are cases where mods are genuinely game-changing, like the DayZ mod for Arma 2. When the
Yeah.
DayZ mod came out, it was incredibly unique. Tons of people who had no interest in Arma wanted to play DayZ.
I was one of those
play
people.
this mod without owning Arma 2 first.
No, I
So in this
never-
case,
I
and
never
many
bought it,
others,
but I thought
players
about
might
buying
not
it.
be that interested in the base game, but a modded version is what sells
Exactly.
them. So even if a crazy realistic milsim isn't your cup of tea, you've got to own that milsim to play the
Yep.
awesome zombie survival game. So thanks to DayZ, Arma 2 saw a massive sales boost, as much as 300,000 copies within
For a
2 months of
fucking
the mod's
mod.
release.
That
That's
is insane.
wild. All that work done at no cost
That's like winning the lottery. Like, imagine just like randomly selling 300,000 copies of your game because somebody else made a mod for it. It's like, oh, nice, cool.
to the developer.
Great.
And they got to just rake in
Yeah.
the cash.
Yeah,
Another
I bet he's
example
happy.
of the mod is GTA 5 roleplay. This is a mod for GTA 5.
That's a really good point,
Completely
yeah.
changes the gameplay and allows players to do things like get an actual job, be a police officer enforcing the law,
Yeah.
or get held hostage during someone else's heist.
Uh-huh.
The popularity of GTA 5 RP has helped GTA 5 be one of the top 3 watch categories on Twitch for the past 3 years in a row. And
Yeah, it's been insane. Like, because people still get focused on GTA RP even now. Like, is SFan Live doing it right now? Of course he fucking is. What else would he be doing? There it is. At this exact very fucking moment, people are doing GTA RP, and it is the third most watched. I mean, to be fair, it's the second most watched just because Kai's playing Elden Ring right now. It is the second most watched category on the entire platform. It is insane.
popular and people want to try out the mod, they have to buy a copy of the game.
Yep, I
Benefits
did.
of mods to both players and
Oh, it's
developers
that
seem
guy.
crystal clear. You would think smart developers would do everything they could to court modders to their game and make modding as easy as possible. With all these benefits, why are some developers doing everything they can to keep modders away, even taking legal action? Well, for starters, mod support isn't as simple as just flipping a lever.
Yep.
There are many different levels of mod support that developers can add. They can make it easy for players to change numbers in a text file, or they can give them the tools to
Yep.
make new maps and levels,
Sure.
or they can make the script more accessible. Generally, none of these things are very easy from a developer's perspective.
I've always assumed that this is the reason why Bethesda wants to use the creation engine, because it's very good for modding. I feel like
Developers
that's the
can't
main
just
reason.
Give modders access to the same tools.
It's
they
not
use
actually
in the
because it's good.
And adding mod support can take a lot of time, know-how, and effort. But even if developers don't add mod support, dedicated players will find a way. Whether they create a custom mod launcher to make mods accessible, or just individually tweaking the game's code, no amount of dev resistance has ever fully stopped modding. So if modding is pretty much inevitable anyway, and brings so many benefits, even if you don't have time to build in the tools, why do some studios react so negatively to people that mod? Larian Studios might have something to say about reason number 1, backlash. Larian Studios, the developers of Baldur's Gate 3, recently received a ton of backlash from the modding community. Baldur's Gate 3 has recently been called the first real quadruple A game. Sorry, Skull and Bones. And the developers have done an excellent job communicating with the player base.
Well, this is what's going to happen. Like, this happens with every game whenever there's new patches, that it's going to fuck up mod support. Every single time that happens. Yeah, I mean, that's the same with WoW, right?
updates. And while they don't have any official mod support yet, they are very pro mods. So
Yeah.
what has people upset? Well, the game recently had a major patch which changed the game's script extender. So players with any mods installed that used the script extender couldn't play the game with mods until it was updated. Shortly after the patch, many mods were updated.
I think that's so fair. Like, I'm sorry, but anybody who's complaining about this, I think is ridiculous.
Only to break again when Baldur's Gate devs made another
Yeah,
tweet.
this is
The many
normal.
updates pissed off many members of the modding community, with some even threatening Larian's development team. Again, Larian is very pro mods.
I mean, what, like 6 people? Like, let's be real. Who the fuck actually is doing this?
And is even planning official mod support by the end of the year. But their first concern has to be making the base version of their game as good and stable as possible. And even though it's a small group of people, when a developer puts in as much effort as Larian and they get
Yeah.
death threats from modders, other developers might get a little bit nervous. But
Well, I mean, I don't think that you should ever, like, you should never make decisions like that based off of people that should be in a padded room. Because if you capitulate to people like that, you're going to end up in a padded room yourself. You can never make those people happy.
Backlash is only the tip of the iceberg. The second issue is legal. Remember that Thomas the Tank Engine mod? The player who made the first popular one for Skyrim got in some serious legal trouble with Mattel, the company that owns the rights to Thomas. Mattel began issuing takedown requests on YouTube videos featuring the mod, and the creator was contacted by Mattel's lawyers, who were upset because he had diminished Thomas's brand by showing him roasting people alive. When developers are creating a new game, they have to be careful not to infringe on others' copyrights. But modders don't usually worry about that,
No.
which is why so many mods just add copyrighted characters into the game. Now developers aren't on the hook for what modders do with their game.
Yeah, who
As we
cares?
saw with the Thomas mod in Skyrim, modders got sued, not Bethesda.
Exactly.
But many studios still don't like other people's IP popping up. In 2022, Rockstar clarified that it wanted RP to continue to thrive, but it was not okay with the misuse of Rockstar trademark in other people's IP.
No,
So
no,
Arthur
they
or
just-
SpongeBob.
Nah, they just say that because they have to. Do you think Rockstar really gives a fuck? I bet they think this is funny. I bet, like, if you actually ask them, like, off camera, they think this shit's fucking funny. They don't care. They just have to say that legally.
Which is also why developers sometimes sue modders themselves, because if they don't like what modders are doing with their game, or if they think it negatively impacts their brand, they sue. Which is why
Well, I mean, to be fair, like, this one here, like, everybody knew this Pow World mod was going to get taken down, right? I mean, like, the day it happened, it's like, I remember, I think it was, like, Ludwig, who, like, made a video about it and, like, preemptively censored it, because, like, everybody knew that this was what was going to happen. And, like, yeah, I think that people have the right to protect their IP to an extent. I mean, I don't think you can stop this from happening. Like, it's not the company's fault. I don't think it's really a big deal. But yeah, I mean, of course, it's, like, kind of, like, not a great thing. I in general, am very, like, pro-open copyright laws. Like, I don't, almost any restrictions on it, I'm kind of against.
they sue. Which is why so many studios hate
IP protection's good and bad, yeah, exactly. And also, like, you've got to keep in mind, like, these are obviously guys from Nintendo. The way that Nintendo has, like, Nintendo's laws and copyright laws are totally different than America's copyright laws. And I feel like every, like, 4 months we figure that out. We get reminded of that, whether it's from Nintendo or Capcom or something like that, Sony. Yeah, that's just what happens. But I think it's mainly a cultural difference. Did you just call Japan Nintendo? That's what I meant. That's obviously what I meant.
content mods or mods in general.
Yeah.
They believe it hurts their brand. Companies work really hard to portray themselves a certain way. The brand is supposed to be seen as family friendly and safe for kids. The new
Yeah,
games need to
just
be
a porn mod or
family
something.
friendly
Yeah.
at all times. It's never that way. Don't worry about that. But if modders come
Yeah.
in and make a lot of easily accessible, not safe for work mods for your supposedly kid-friendly game,
Right.
that can really damage your image. Nintendo is notorious for
I actually, by the way, don't think it damages Nintendo's image at all, and I think the people that act like it is are completely fucking delusional. Nobody is going to look at a mod and then think to themselves, oh my god, Nintendo has porn on it. Like, and if people do, like, who gives a shit? Like, personally, I really don't care about people that make mods like that, because I believe that if you buy a game, you should be able to use that game however you want to make the game. I don't think that, like, as a single-player game, if you modify the game files in a single-player game, I don't think that's a problem, because you bought the game. That's it. You bought the game, you should be able to do what you want with it. It's just that simple. Like, I understand, like, you know, it's like, oh, it's a license. Actually, you didn't buy it, it's a license. I don't care. I think that's the way it should be. If you buy the game, you should be able to do whatever you want with the game. Now, talking about, like making a character naked is, like, one thing, right? But, like, adding in another IP, that's probably a little bit stickier. But I think especially, you know, for, like, just nude mods or, like, different random mods like that, I really don't see it as being a problem.
The modding
about
their
that?
game.
That'd be a good
This is
one.
the primary reason why. Allowing modding, particularly in an online environment, can make it very hard for developers to control what shows up in their game. And even if they set restrictions and rules on what's okay, they don't always get followed. Which is why companies like Blizzard, Take-Two, and Epic have all sued modders. So if companies don't
When
want
did
to
Blizzard sue
companies
modders?
like Blizzard, Take-Two, and Epic have
Hold
all
up. When did this happen? Well, Blizzard welcomes some mods and sues others. That's in 2017. I don't remember why this happened. Was it private servers? Like, oh, I remember. It was the voiceover mod pack. Okay, so that's what I think it was. So really good call there. Almost nobody remembers this. So Belluar went, and in 2017, this is the beginning of Legion, he made an entire voice-acted mod pack for World of Warcraft as a whole in 2017. And this was not a private server. This was for retail WoW servers. And Blizzard had to shut it down because the Blizzard legal team said that it was so big that it would count for an expansion and it would cause some sort of legal issue. So that's probably what this was about.
Epic have all sued modders. So if companies don't want to worry about legal issues or brand degradation,
I'm just explaining what happened.
Like modding. The fourth reason developers don't like modding is because they want to control what happens in their game.
Yeah, I don't think that they should have the right to do that. If they want to control what happens in the game, then they shouldn't have sold it. That's my opinion. Don't sell a game if you want to control people doing it.
The problem developers face is cheating, finding things like aimbots and mod menus that give godlike powers and wall hacks. Developers
should've made a movie.
because they negatively impact other players' experiences, which can cause people to stop playing.
And this, by the way, only applies to single-player games. Like, the second that you start modding in a multiplayer like lobby and you're playing on their servers, they have every right to kick your ass off. Every right. It's not even a question. You start cheating, you're done.
Buy the game. Pretty obvious reason to not like
Life
certain mods,
sentence in
and
prison.
I'm completely behind this one.
Forced
The issue
labor.
is something newer, third-party monetization.
Yeah.
What do I mean by that? Well, for example, NFTs are something that many developers have actively avoided, but third-party modders have tried to tie them to their servers in more than one game. In GTA, the rapper Lil Durk created his own RP server with NFT tie-ins, which Rockstar shut down real quick. Minecraft had the same issue, and Mojang informed everyone that they would not allow blockchain products in the game at all. So the question is, as a developer, do you allow modders to monetize the products that use your game? Many developers clarified in their game rules that all derivative products cannot be sold and must be available for free. Some developers...
Yeah, I do think it's better that things are, like, just available for free. Like, that's the same problem that WoW has had. I go back and forth on thinking about, like, whether that's justifiable, that the company should be able to exercise that right. And I still am not, like, completely convinced one way or another. I think there's a lot of very strong arguments for both sides. So I'm not sure really, like, what's the more ethical thing to do. It's their game. Yeah, it's their game, but it's your money that you spent to buy that game, and then you should have the right to do with that game what you choose to do with it, right? So, like, what about your rights as a customer? So, like, I don't think it's really that simple, but case by case, yeah, I think it's definitely case by case. This wants some money, because we're rights on the USI, yeah. We were better kicking ourselves cheaters ourselves and we ran our own servers. Yeah, in a lot of cases, right?
allow monetization.
Not to monetize that game? Well, I don't see the problem. Oh, look who it is. I don't see the problem. Like, if you monetize the game, why should they be allowed to tell you that you can't do that? I don't understand. That doesn't make sense to me. Because like if I buy a hammer and I build something with a hammer and then I sell the thing that I built with a hammer, should I not be allowed to do that? Why? You bought it as a customer, not a producer. If you want to resell the game, say that to the company up front, but you're not reselling the game. Like that, but that's not what's happening. Yeah, you're not. IP's a little different though. Yeah, but you're not though. You still have to buy the game. Yeah, and you still have to buy the game. And on top of that, it doesn't like so. Basically, I think that what's always bad with copyright is whenever something cannibalizes the product that it's made from a derivative of. So, like for example, if somebody just like buys a CD and then they burn the CD and then they give it to somebody else, that's bad, right? Because then the person who they give it to won't have to buy the CD. But if a mod isn't doing that and it's adding its own value, then and you still have to like buy the original game, I don't really see how it's ethical to tell people that they can't do that. I can't imagine right now an argument that would convince me otherwise. I'd really have to think about it. A better analogy would be comparing games and music, other forms of entertainment. You can purchase music, but the artistic IP of it, you can't just go and rip the beats and create your own without giving value to the author. Well, yeah, but that's because you're selling.
A man named Carl was known as the Cooper family's most useful shadow. However, he was accused of betrayal, and the new head ordered his execution. Upon hearing this, Carl clenched his teeth in fury. Without hesitation, he retaliated and raised his sword to the new head's neck, but he was stabbed and betrayed by the family he served. Surrounded, he wondered if this was the end. Nevertheless, he swore that if there were an afterlife, he cut them all to pieces. Soon after, Carl opened his eyes. His senses sharpened as he scanned the surroundings. Though the place looked familiar, he felt something off. Suddenly, a bucket of water was poured over him. A maid then ordered him to wash because someone was coming. Seeing the murderous look in his eyes, she slapped him thinking he was just a rebellious child. Confused by being called a child, Carl looked into the water's reflection. After seeing his face, he let out a quiet laugh. Though he now appeared to be only 3 years old, he had been reborn. In his past life, Carl was a Cooper shadow trained for missions like assassination and arson. In exchange, the family promised them wealth and glory. Due to this, many endured the hardships without complaint. Scorned as an illegitimate child, Carl trained hard to overcome his limits, but he was neglected, so he took on missions for the family. He executed enemies and slaughtered entire cities. He fought battle after battle. With that, he won many victories and expected rewards from his family. But instead, he was accused of treason and sentenced to die. Moreover, the new head revealed he was cursed by shadow oath blood magic. He explained that Carl's strength fed the family head, while his pain and injuries became Carl's own. As for the glory and money, they are just to entice bugs like him. Hearing this, Carl launched an attack. He swung his sword towards the head, but when it hit the family head, he was struck by multiple spells in return. Reversing the oath successfully successfully restored Carl's powers from Alan, but it cost him his life. Now in this new life, he swore he would not make the same mistake again. At that moment, his stomach growled. He then noticed a mouse nearby, so he briefly considered eating it after recalling how rodents once tasted better than human flesh. Suddenly, someone arrived while calling him worthless. The man then informed him that Alan wanted to see him. Hearing this, Carl recalled this was when he became a shadow, but the cursed initiation left him with no memories. Realizing this, Carl bit the man's hand. The man then responded by asking if he was some kind of dog. Still, he and the others refused to let the boy act with such arrogance. One of them attacked, but Carl quickly dodged the strike and seized the man's sword. Without hesitation, he sliced through the man's arm. Seeing this, the other man was shocked that someone so young could wield a sword. On the other hand, smiled at himself since the path to revenge was now open. The Shadow Oath used forbidden blood magic to bind a shadow with a single drop of blood. Once bound, the shadow took the master's pain and transferred any strength it gained to them. Due to its cruelty, the Empire banned the Shadow Oath and erased its spellbooks. Now in the present, Carl watched the man earlier get slapped. The 8-year-old hare, Alan, then scolded him for losing to Carl, to which he apologized for. Ignoring him, Alan approached Carl and scolded him for touching his people. But Carl showed no fear. In response, Alan gave the order to throw Carl into the dungeon. But before the servants could act, someone intervened. Alan's mother, Hera, then told him that Carl's actions came from neglect and urged patience until after the oath ceremony. She also reminded him not to forget her words, so she leaned in and whispered their plan. Alan then eyed Carl and was puzzled by his mother's choice for him to become his shadow. Regardless, he agreed to his mother. Satisfied, Hera said she'd take the others out to avoid disruption. With that, she ordered the servant out while the others cast soundproof spells. Afterwards, Alan filled a cup and ordered the children to swear loyalty to the Cooper family as new Shadow Army members. In response, the children obediently pledged to dedicate their lives to the family. However, Carl merely stared at the cup with a smirk and began to drink it. Moments later, the cup clattered to the floor as Carl and the other children collapsed. Alan then laughed and called them fools for mistaking drugs for holy water. Without wasting time, he drew his own blood. He then declared that their strength would be his, and their bodies would bear his pain. As he spoke, the dark shadow beneath him stretched outward. After that, it enveloped Carl and the others. Soon after, power surged through Alan, and he planned to tell his mother. But when he turned around to call for her, a sharp snap came from his knee. On the floor, he realized he couldn't move his legs. Panic then rose as he feared this was a Shadow Oath side effect his mother never mentioned. Nevertheless, he called out desperately for her, but someone called him a coward for hiding behind his mother. The person also added that his mother won't hear him due to the soundproof spell. Upon looking back, Alan was shocked to see Carl. He then asked how Carl was awake and knew the oath, but Carl claimed he knew much more. Hence, he asked how Alan would react to a reversed Shadow Oath. With that being said, he drew his sword and struck it against the floor. In response, Alan clutched his chest in pain and demanded to know what Carl had done. Hearing this, Carl recalled sacrificing everything to reclaim his stolen power. So in this new life, he was merely returning the favor. Outside, a piercing scream echoed. Upon hearing the spell had broken, Hera grew concerned for Alan. That night, the butler told Hera Alan had only fainted from excess magic, and said the servant who broke the spell was to be executed. Upon hearing this, Hera ordered that the servant's body be fed to the dogs. Setting that aside, the butler said Alan was still distracted and might be mentally burdened. Meanwhile, Alan felt something had happened but couldn't recall what. Suddenly, his mother gently caressed his head. She then told him not to worry about the shadows. However, Alan slapped her hand and questioned her use of worry. He then declared himself a future Cooper head and said they were born to die for him. When asked if he was right, Hera praised him and offered a reward which made him happy. Meanwhile, Carl overheard it and thought their strong bond was a pity, because from now on, Alan was his shadow. In his past life, he found a blood magic catalog with a Shadow Oath. He gave it proudly, unaware he was a victim, but later used its secrets and past lessons to regain his strength. Now all it took was a little blood to reverse the Shadow Oath. Even so, he knew he was too young to fight them and needed to grow stronger. With that in mind, he remembered the first step. It's the volcanic mountains that's a harsh Cooper test site for selecting shadows to sacrifice. Like Prometheus punished for stealing fire, the Cooper family threw children under 10 into the volcanic mountain. There they walked through thorns as eagles tore at their flesh. Even dying, they couldn't stop until one reached the peak and gained Griffin's blessing for an unbreakable body. Now in the present, their trainer Enos told them they had 3 days to reach their goal by any means. Their only objective was to survive and reach the peak of the mountain. He also added that anyone who failed or gave up would be executed after the 3 days. For their bright future, he took out his whistle and gave the signal for them to begin. However, Enos noticed something unusual. He saw that Carl appeared completely calm. Another trainer then noted Carl was the illegitimate child who offended Elan, and Enos quickly remembered. At that moment, Carl began to climb the mountain. They then laughed at his choice to climb instead of taking the slope, and predicted he'd fall to his death. One trainer even suggested retrieving his corpse early, but Enos stopped him. He said he had just thought of a funny idea, as it was about time for someone to show up. Soon after, the children saw something descending the mountain and thought it was just an eagle, but when they saw it clearly, they screamed that it was a monster. Meanwhile, Carl finally reached the peak. There he was greeted by Griffin standing surrounded by the corpses of children. Upon noticing Carl, Griffin bit down even harder on one of the corpses. At the same time, Enos decided to use Griffin to get rid of Carl as punishment for offending Alan. Hoping to make Alan happy, he readied his bow and fired an arrow directly at Griffin. In response, Griffin demanded to know who had done it. Upon spotting Carl, she charged at him to kill him, but Carl jumped to avoid Griffin's attack. Drawing on the experience of his previous life, he grabbed onto Griffin. While on it, he knew that in order to receive Griffin's blessing, all he had to do was to tame Griffin. After Carl struck Griffin's head, he stepped back and realized Griffin wouldn't be tamed without defeat since it had human-like intelligence. Knowing this, Carl knew he had to risk a trick, so he charged again. As he attempted another strike, Griffin began to gather power in her mouth. Following that, she unleashed it in a powerful blast aimed at Carl. The force of the attack sent Carl flying toward the cliff's edge. Fortunately, he managed to grab onto it just in time. Climbing up, he remembered that he only had the skills, but his body is still of a 3-year-old. That meant his body was far too small and light to close the gap against Griffin. Suddenly, an idea came to him when he spotted a nearby cave. At that moment, Griffin charged another attack and blew a powerful gust of wind toward Carl. As Carl dodged, he realized Griffin's wind grew stronger with each breath and rose from level 1 to 10. If it reached the final stage, there would be no way to escape. Thinking quickly, Carl came up with another plan. Since he could not outrun Griffin's wind, he decided to use the force of the attack to launch himself into the cave. Just as he had hoped, the wind carried him straight toward the opening. While airborne, he used the Shadow Oath to drain Alan's power and save his own. Elsewhere in the mansion, the servants panicked when Alan suddenly fainted again. Back at the mountain, Carl landed inside the cave successfully. Without hesitation, he rushed deeper inside, but Griffin followed him and asked where he thought he was going. Just as she was about to strike, she froze in shock. There in Carl's arms was her cub, crying for help. Suddenly, Carl explained that he knew Griffin's cubs couldn't fly at birth, and assured her he meant no harm. On the contrary, he could actually heal its wings and help it fly, which stunned Griffin. However, Carl pointed out that he had a condition. Meanwhile outside, Enos and the trainer thought Griffin ate Carl and wanted to report it to Elan for a reward. A voice then replied he'd send them, and Griffin appeared behind them. On top of her head stood Carl telling them they would have to wait in hell for Elan. The two men were stunned and tried to flee, but Griffin quickly devoured them both. Afterward, Griffin said she kept her promise and Carl replied their next stop was the mountain's north side. Soon, they arrived at the Land of Stone. There, Griffin said Carl must retrieve the sword of Perseus and Medusa's healing blood, and he agreed at once. But deep down, he had no intention of helping her or retrieving the sword. As Griffin opened the entrance, Carl calmly planned to use her power to destroy the Land of Stone. Immediately Immediately, they were welcomed by Medusa and the stones. In Karl's past life, Hera sent shadows for the Sword of Perseus to counter a hidden Medusa statue that turned all to stone for Elan. To protect Alan from Medusa, the shadows took heavy losses. In the end, Karl alone survived, but the Sword of Perseus required S-class talent, which he lacked. But Alan has S-class talent, so he easily wielded it and slew Medusa. Hence, Alan was hailed as the chosen one and gained vast resources and loyal followers. But in this life, Karl vowed that if he couldn't have the sword, neither would Alan. Suddenly, Griffin asked where the sword and Medusa's blood were after seeing only rubble. Unexpectedly, the door behind them slammed shut. Alarmed, Griffin asked Karl if he was trying to trick her, but Karl just nervously told her to look behind. There, the stone statues began charging at them. As Griffin fought, she asked why the statues awakened, but Karl said he didn't know. Despite that, Griffin continued to shatter the statues one by one. However, the shattered pieces started to reassemble and merge into a single entity. Seeing this, Karl recognized them as Dino, Inyo, and Pemford that resembled the Grea sisters. Like Medusa, they were Poseidon's daughters with power over seawater, so Karl urged they run. As they escaped, Griffin told Karl to find the sword, and he replied he was already searching. But Griffin warned the place would collapse and they'd die if they delayed. Karl then pointed to a rune on the wall and hinted that it might be the solution. However, he actually plans to let the realm collapse and bury everything. Besides, he already knew a hidden passage from his past life to escape. Pretending to help, he told Griffin the rune said to remove the eye above to stop the attacks. Griffin immediately looked up and saw the eye. Without hesitation, she charged toward it and removed it. As she passed by the Grea, they began to dissolve. Impressed, Griffin remarked how amazing it was. Karl then explained that Perseus stole Grea's eye to find Medusa, so the eye is their weakness. Intrigued, Griffin asked if the rune showed the blood in Sword's location. In response, Karl pointed towards the sword's direction. Just as he had said, the sword of Perseus was indeed close. Karl reveals Perseus used the sword against Medusa, and her red blood is poisonous, while the green can heal. But Karl said it was just legend hinting at a deeper secret that made Griffin curious. Hence, he revealed that when the sword of Perseus appears, Medusa herself would be resurrected. Seeing Medusa attack Griffin, Karl decided to leave them behind, since once activated, the Medusa statue won't stop until beheaded by the sword of Perseus. But just as he turned, he noticed something behind him, and quickly dodged Medusa's tail. After landing safely, he eyed her suspiciously and wondered where Griffin went. To his surprise, Griffin shrank herself and surrendered everything to him. Before he could react, Medusa launched another attack. While dodging, Karl felt grateful he passed through the realm before and still had options. He then immediately thought of getting the Knights of the Round Table's shield. Using this, he could reflect Medusa's gaze and lessen the risk of petrification. It could also serve as protection against her direct gaze attack, so he rushed to retrieve it. As soon as he blocked her attack, the impact sent him flying. From this, he realized that the shield alone was not enough. Looking around, he saw the secret exit was already destroyed. Worse, his current talent wasn't enough to wield the sword of Perseus. Still, he figured he had to try, so he ran toward the sword. There, he reached out to grab it. To his shock, he lifted it effortlessly. Stunned, he wondered how it was possible. As the sword was dragged, he still doubted he was strong enough to use it. Suddenly, he recalled Alan calling him a mere D rank for daring to touch the sword. He also remembered them stealing his talent and hid it using an amnesia spell. Recalling all this, Karl began to understand what had really happened. There he saw Alan claiming his swordsmanship now belonged to him. Just then, a surge of immense power enveloped Karl's body. Curious, Griffin peeked to see what was happening. As a result, she was surprised. After all, she saw Karl completely unharmed. As she gazed into his eyes, she saw him behead Medusa, and this made her call him a monster. Later, while collecting Medusa's blood, Karl realized his past sword talent could have been S rank, but Hera stole his talent for Alan and erased his memories with powerful magic. Karl then laughed at the memory, which made Griffin curious what amused him. At that moment, Karl found his family interesting, but they would still face his revenge. Seeing Karl laugh like that, Griffin decided to quietly slip away, but Karl suddenly ordered her to come back. Griffin then asked why and was confused by her nervousness, but Karl just asked if her head was made of metal, which left her even more puzzled. Eventually, she forced her way through the crumbling walls. Upon landing, she realized Karl used her but stayed silent for her offspring's sake. As the realm collapsed, Stone Medusa's spirit was transferred to a shield. With that, its eyes turned bright. Later, after returning to Griffin's domain, Griffin formally declared she would bless Karl with her title. She granted him an unbreakable body that is immune to all attacks. As his body healed, he felt relieved he no longer had to transfer wounds to Alan and risk suspicion. However, Karl needs to hide his S-rank sword talent to avoid attention. For the moment, he told Griffin to give Medusa's blood to her cub to heal its wings. After the cub drank from the vial, it was suddenly enveloped in a glowing aura. Moments later, its wings were healed, and it began to fly for the first time. But Karl said the cub would remain a foolish bird without a master, which puzzled Griffin. Karl then explained it was kind advice, as she once grew strong by accepting a master. Griffin then agreed since her master used to feed her human brains for strength, and doubted she'd find another like him. But someone suddenly came to her mind, so she called for Karl. She then asked Karl to take her child as his pet, but Karl already knew it was exceptionally gifted. Seeing that she had taken the bait, he agreed and insisted on a deal where he wanted all her information on Bled Cooper. Additionally, he asked about the key to the Cooper family shrine of Bled. Later that night at the mansion, Hera was surprised no one knew why Alan fainted and asked how long it would last. But the butler assured that Alan was protected by shadows that healed and strengthened him. Although she agreed, she suspected someone was behind Alan's symptoms since the Shadow Oath ceremony. Suddenly, the butler told her Karl topped the confidence test as expected. However, Hera was stunned to learn Karl used Griffin to kill the walkers and tamed her offspring as his pet. Without hesitation, she handed her coffee to the butler and instructed him to look for Karl. As she walked, Karl greeted her and asked if there was anything he could do to help. In response, she immediately asked why he had killed the walkers. He explained that it was for the family and that a shadow officer killed by a child was useless. As he asked Hera if she agreed, Hera looked at him in horror. Amused by Hera's expression, Karl felt unbothered by any trick she had left. To his surprise, she told the butler named Doug to reward him with time in Eden Spring. Karl then thanked her, thinking Eden Spring might be his chance. After Karl left, Hera ordered Doug to speed up deprivation magic to give Karl's talent to Alan and secure his hair status. Satisfied, Hera spared Karl and was eager to see his pride fall later. Meanwhile, at the Eden Spring, Karl wandered around deep in thought. He recalled Griffin saying her master sealed his soul there to pass on sword skills and preserve the Cooper legacy. Griffin also gave Karl a key and told him to follow Eden Spring's undercurrent to a cave. Still, she warned Eden Spring had changed and its blood magic user would be tough to face. Knowing this, Karl realized claiming the swordsmanship inheritance before Alan wouldn't be easy. Nearby, the children talked about Karl after he topped the training and tamed Griffin's child. But Renault's sidekick Lucian appeared and mocked Karl as a prostitute's son. Renault also mocked Karl for looking like a monkey yet reaching the summit first, making Lucian laugh. Watching them, Karl recalled they were once his subordinates who framed him with Alan's support. When Karl didn't respond, Renault lunged to test his so-called invincible body. As he threw a punch, Karl swiftly caught his hand, which shocked him. Without hesitation, Karl twisted his arm to demonstrate his strength. This startled Lucian, who immediately pulled out a knife and lunged at Karl. But when the blood finally splattered, Lucian froze. To his horror, he had stabbed Renault instead. With that, Karl calmly claimed he accidentally used Renault as a meat shield. After that, Karl kicked Renault toward Lucian, sending them both flying into the spring to recover. After all, he planned to use them for training and turn them into his pawns. But as he watched, he noticed black magic energy swirling around Renault. He then questioned this sinister magic and recalled Griffin's warning about the spring. Realizing the danger, Karl knew he had to reach the bottom without touching a drop. Just then, a familiar voice cried out nearby. Karl saw a servant harshly scolding a girl over spilled tea and realized it was Anna. but Anna defended herself, which only angered the servant more. Unexpectedly, Carl's sword cut through the servant, splitting his head and body cleanly. Seeing this, the other children screamed and ran to report it. Meanwhile, Carl calmly extended his hand to Anna and helped her up. Seeing his face, Anna thought he looked like a prince, but Carl on the other hand wondered if he had frightened her. Hence, he quickly apologized, but she said no. After thanking him, she introduced herself and asked for his name. Seeing her, Carl recalled how Anna was his gifted best friend who always cared for him. They had even fought side by side for a few days. And of course, there was also a time when she confessed to him. Now, as she continued to thank him for saving her, he found himself thinking that this 5-year-old version of Anna was incredibly cute. Pushing that aside, he brushed it off as a gentleman's duty and told her to call him Carl. Shifting the topic, he asked if she knew how to drain or enter the spring without touching the water. Hearing his question, Anna asked if he had sensed it too, which puzzled him. She then whispered the spring healed but blocked all other healing, which created dependence. Carl then realized the Coopers used the spring to control shadows to force them to return when in pain. Suddenly, Anna offered to help him enter the spring safely to thank him for saving her. With that, she cast a spell. Soon, her duck magic enveloped them and let them enter the spring without getting wet. Hearing this, Carl realized it was isolation magic, though Anna's naming was still ridiculous. But suddenly, guards began hunting him for killing the servant. With that, he quickly grabbed Anna and dove into the spring. Once inside, he noticed the strong undercurrent and knew this was the right spot. However, Anna wanted to leave the place quickly, but before he could react, the undercurrent pulled him in. Later, Anna tried to wake Carl. When he finally opened his eyes, he immediately questioned where they were and searched his pocket. After finding the key, Anna asked about it, and he explained it unlocked the palace of the sword spirit. But Anna noted no visible door, so Carl said the door might need to be summoned. Though unsure what a sword spirit was, Anna offered to try. Determined, she called for the key and asked its master to open the door. While she was doing this, an enemy lurked nearby. As Carl sensed danger, the enemy charged at them, and he pulled Anna to safety. After narrowly avoiding the attack, he noticed that the door had finally appeared. He then called out to Anna, but she had lost consciousness. With no other choice, he carried her in his arms. He then gently placed her down in a safe spot, and he cast Anna's invisibility magic to hide her. After all, he knew the battle for the sword spirit's inheritance would be tough. As he stepped through the door, he was greeted by the sight of countless corpses. So even though he was prepared, he found the scene overwhelming. Then he noticed someone nearby. At the same time, the monster was still busy with its prey. After sensing another presence, it paused and turned to the guest. Carl realized Eden Spring was no healing spring, but it was where the Cooper family kept their concubines, and everyone brought there was eventually fed to the sword demon. Suddenly, the monster emerged before him. Sensing Carl, it recognized the scent of an S-rank talent. Carl instinctively stepped back and was unsettled that the creature knew that. The demon then wondered if he was the gifted child but was confused by his rough appearance. Hence, it assumed Carl was just an illegitimate child after the inheritance. As their weapons clashed, the demon warned the inheritance required a fight, but Carl only wanted to kill it. Amused, the demon said it was expected from his blood Cooper's descendant. Moreover, Carl was crazy enough. Without warning, the monster made a swift strike and hit Carl directly, sending him crashing to the ground. As it observed Carl lying still, it declared him too weak. But then, something unexpected caught its attention. Carl's wounds healed, which surprised the demon that Griffin had already blessed him. While the demon recalled seeing Griffin, Carl remembered Blood's sacrifice to seal the demon. So despite his limits, Carl stood and clinging to a sliver of hope. Suddenly, a cross rose behind the demon. In an instant, its hand was pierced. Nailed to the cross, it realized too late it was trapped in a magic sealing blood formation. With that, Carl declared that the demon was long dead and the Empire had learned to counter blood magic. Now, Carl just had to take its heart to claim the inheritance. In response, the demon let out a furious roar of defiance. Just as the blade was about to land, it broke free and began mocking Carl. Carl backed away as the demon laughed and called him a little mouse. However, it declared that the game was over because it no longer intended to play. Summoning its lackeys, the demon admitted Carl had skill and potential, but it thought that wasn't enough to inherit its sword technique. While fighting the blood spirits, Carl was awed by its control over blood. Unexpectedly, he was struck and surrounded because the attacks were too concentrated. In response, he activated the holy sword protection to defend himself against the magic, but the demon touched the barrier and mocked its futility. With a single touch, the protective aura shattered. In one swift move, the monster seized Carl by the neck. Holding him in place, it coldly stated that a cat always eats the mouse after it's done toying with it. As Carl struggled, he began to feel his blood and mana slowly draining away. Suddenly, the monster said Carl's aura resembled a concubine it once devoured, and possibly his mother. Hearing this, Carl was triggered. Nevertheless, the demon called it the perfect time to taste her child's blood. Meanwhile, Carl recalled when his mother helped him sleep. She had gently assured him that everything would be alright. He also recalled picking a flower for her, but he tricked before he could give it. Suddenly, his mother said she was leaving and disappeared despite his pleas. Later, Carl was bullied for being abandoned. Children hurled stones at him, calling him trash. Still, he held on to his belief that his mother had never thrown him away. Now facing the demon, the truth sank in. Rage rose as he grasped the truth. Hence, he stabbed the demon while yelling in rage over his mother's death. As the sword pierced its chest, the demon let out a scream of pain. He also questioned how Carl had known about his blood feast magic. Enraged, the demon threw him and realized that Carl burned his blood to strike. Weak from summoning, the monster stumbled off to devour more women. As the monster fed, Carl stepped in and asked if it tasted good. With no reply, he stepped closer and coldly asked if his mother tasted good. As the sword struck, an image of his mother calling him flashed, making him freeze. Seeing his sword still lodged in the monster's head, Carl pulled it out. As it fell, the demon deemed Carl mad and planned to seek more concubines. But before it could act, Carl stabbed him once more. This time, Carl maniacally pierced him. Desperate, the demon begged for his life and to be his sword spirit. But Carl looked at him coldly and said he was not worthy. In an instant, the demon's body exploded. From the remains, the last key to imprint the swordsmanship into Carl emerged. But Carl dropped his sword. He whispered it was all delusion, a born motherless monster. But his mother's image appeared, saying he's not a monster and she was always there. Suddenly, someone called his name. He turned to see Anna running toward him. When she reached him, she gasped at his wounds and offered to heal him. While Anna cast healing magic on him, Carl remembered that in his past life, she had suffered the same fate as the concubines. Without thinking, he pulled her into a hug and this confused Anna. Meanwhile, Carl silently vowed to never let that tragedy happen again. The demon's disappearance caused chaos, so the guardians were executed, and no one dared bully Anna after that. However, Carl was blamed for the demon's loss and Hera had him confined, bled, and poisoned. Despite all this, Carl survived unharmed. 4 years later at Cooper Grounds, a servant was swiftly defeated. He then begged Alan for mercy, but Alan just mocked his weak ability. Watching Hugh of the Essex family said the rumors were true about Alan's great talent, but Leon of the Coopers replied modestly. Suddenly, a shout nearby drew their attention. There, they saw Carl going up against multiple guards. Carl then used his shadow blade and struck the guards with a move called Sword Wind. Seeing this, Hugh was impressed by the skill and number of Carl's techniques. He noted Carl's age usually meant Iron Rank, yet he was already at Silver Guardian level. Meanwhile, Alan became furious that Carl was stealing his spotlight. In response, he challenged Carl to a duel. Hearing this, Carl recalled Alan's true power was gone in this life. Hence, he agreed to use this moment to test Alan's skill. Meanwhile, Alan plans to use this as a chance to fake an accident and kill Carl. The crowd then cheered for Alan to prove himself as the true sword genius. Immediately, Alan moved and attacked with full confidence. However, Carl casually told him to hit harder, which left Alan confused. With that, Carl effortlessly pushed him back with a single strike. Frustrated, Alan charged again while recalling his mother's claim that none could match his strength. But Carl dodged easily and saw Alan's weak fake magic that proved he lacked real sword talent. Knowing this, Carl decided decided it was time to show Alan a real sword strike. As Alan turned, Carl's blade immediately struck his eye. Alan then screamed in pain as the guards rushed to check on him. Seeing this, Hugh burst into laughter. He then called Alan unimpressive and hinted at fake defeats earlier, so Leon called him rude. Hugh then apologized and explained that he didn't want his sister marrying a weak fiancé. But Leon said Hugh's sister might not have married without the royal family's help, which angered Hugh. Letting it go, Hugh walked away and reminded Leon of their joint operation in 10 days. After Hugh left, Leon turned to Alan with clear disappointment. He then asked who Carl was, and the servant said he was an unrecorded mistresses child. Hearing this, Leon assumed Carl had inherited sword talent and ordered him brought to his study. Later inside the study, Leon used his eye ability to analyze Carl. Meanwhile, Carl kneels before him and asks for his orders, but Leon sensed no power and thought Carl was hiding talent to steal the hair spot. With that, he told Carl to lead the 10th squad to Crystal City in 10 days to get a dragon egg. Holding out a sword, he explained that it could activate teleportation to Crystal City. Hearing this, Carl knew Leon meant harm since stealing a dragon egg would enrage the demonic dragon. Even so, he took the mission and was eager for the dragon egg. But before leaving, he made a request that changed Leon's expression. A few days later, Carl and the others arrived at the forest. There, Anna felt wrong to stay idle, especially after Carl told Leon she'd serve him. However, Carl said it was fine and asked Renault and Lucian, who quickly agreed. Eventually, they reached Crystal City and wondered where the crystal and dragon egg were. However, someone mocked them for knowing nothing about Crystal City. That person turned out to be Gloria, Hugh's sister and Alan's fiancé, who called them a joke. Nevertheless, she still extended her hand to Carl in greeting. But Carl ignored her and told Anna to stay with Mayo, which offended Gloria. As Carl walked away, she insisted that she was talking to him, but Carl replied it'd be a waste if they didn't activate the portal before sunset. He then recalled how she used to pester him to train and was still clinging to him now. Still, he silently hoped that Mayo would complete the mission he had given. Moving forward, Carl and Gloria's swords on the altar surprised the Coopers, so the Issex explained it was a teleportation. Soon after, the Crystal City appeared and sparked wonder about the dragon eggs. Unexpectedly, Carl noticed a blonde soldier preparing to attack the Coopers and steal the dragon egg for the Essex. The blonde soldier then raised his sword eagerly for the reward. Immediately, Carl ordered everyone to fall back. Right after he spoke, a massive explosion erupted. After that, the sentinel appeared and made the soldier tremble. Seeing this, Gloria called the blonde soldier useless. Still, she saved him with her thorn slash. Afterwards, she challenged the soldier's motives and exposed his selfishness despite his claim of loyalty. Before she could continue, the soldier told her to look behind her. While she was still in a daze, the sentinels had already been taken down. To their surprise, it was Carl who had defeated them. He then ordered all the shadows to get into formation, and they quickly complied. The shadows spread across the ground and bound the remaining sentinel. Carl charged to test if their light could defeat their shadows. With that, he destroyed the sentinels completely. Witnessing this, the Essex soldiers were amazed Carl alone defeated the sentinels. Even Gloria had to admit that Carl was impressive. Soon after, a flaming crystal appeared. Carl quickly absorbed the power and rose from Silver Guardian to Gold Sword Master. Now his next destination was the nearby pillar. Upon seeing an empty slot, he placed the crystal into it. A sudden tremor followed, and they soon saw the altar was descending because the dragon's den had been opened. After a while, the platform reached its destination, revealing what appeared to be the lair of the demonic dragon. Seeing the dragon eggs, Renault and the others thought there were enough dragon eggs for everyone. Observing this, Carl saw them as fools rushing into the dragon's jaws. Suddenly, the dragon awakened and sparked instant panic. As others fled, Gloria urged calm while Carl stayed behind to cover their escape with the eggs. However, the altar suddenly began to rise. They spotted Gray of the Coopers trying to escape with an egg. Gray revealed Leon ordered him to take the eggs and lead Carl since only the Coopers deserved a dragon egg. Before leaving, he told them to die for the family's good, which angered them. With that, Gloria called Leon ruthless for abandoning them and Carl, but Carl said he expected it. Hearing this, Gloria asked if he came knowing he'd die, but Carl said she was overthinking. As the dragon breathed fire, he slashed its wing and declared he wouldn't die today. But the dragon became enraged and sent Carl flying. Gloria quickly rushed to his side, but the dragon prepared to breathe fire on them again. So she raised her moonshine shield and asked if Carl was still confident now. Carl said he was fine and asked her to stall the dragon so he could strike its heart. Additionally, he told her that only she could do it. Hearing this made Gloria blush, and she immediately agreed. Fired up, she refused to be outdone since she was a skilled swordsman too. But Carl could only smirk. Suddenly, Gloria began signaling to Carl that it was time to attack. Noticing he stood still, she called out and questioned his silence. With no response, she feared he was too weak to move and knew they'd all die if she didn't act. Determined, she unleashed her sword dance of destruction. In response, the dragon howled in pain. As it collapsed, Gloria wondered if she had really defeated it. Just then, Renault and Lucian rushed over and began hitting the dragon. Still, Gloria questioned whether it was truly her doing. Suddenly, the dragon opened its eyes again. Seeing this, Renault shouted the dragon was berserk and urged everyone to hide. Hearing this, Gloria stood frozen in disbelief. Meanwhile, Carl refused to retreat. Instead, he activated the third skill from his swordsmanship inheritance, which is the Blood Shadow Slash. As a result, the dragon's blood rose into the air and flowed toward Carl's sword for his technique. A moment later, Carl's clone appeared, and he commanded them to condense. But Carl's use of blood magic and a transformed sword stunned others, and Gloria said it could explain the vanished sword spirit. However, she realized Carl had stayed behind waiting for her to draw the dragon's blood. Frustrated, she scolded him for using her, but Carl didn't care. In his previous life, he once a discarded pawn, so he now refused to wait quietly for death. With one final strike, Carl sliced through the dragon's neck. As the dragon's head fell, Gloria ran toward Carl to praise him. However, he suddenly warned her not to come any closer. Seeing his expression, they became worried. Carl saw his reflection in the blood, where the demon warned he'd soon depend on flesh and blood like him. Pointing toward Gloria and the others, the demon urged him to kill them. Overwhelmed, Carl went after their blood, and Lucian ran quickly after seeing Carl being demonized by blood magic. However, someone called Carl. Seeing it was Anna casting spells, Carl finally collapsed. Seeing this, Anna immediately pulled him back to safety. Later in the forest, Anna kept trying to wake him. When Carl awoke, she said she used purification magic to stop his demonization for now. She then stood up and showed him the last intact dragon egg. She said Gray was captured, the egg kept secret, and Gloria had left so Carl needn't worry about the mission. Hearing this, Carl thanked her, but he was never worried about the mission. Reaching for his sword, Carl recalled Mio was to fake Anna's death so she could escape the family. Frustrated, Carl raised his sword at Mayo for failing to carry out the mission. But Anna shielded Mayo, who talked back that Anna wanted to follow Carl. Suddenly, he was interrupted when Renault called out to Carl. Seeing them draw their swords, Carl thought they were going to take the dragon egg from him. But to his surprise, Renault and Lucian stabbed Gray instead. As they kneeled, they thanked Carl for saving them and vowed to follow him over the Cooper family. While Carl stood in shock, Anna suddenly pointed out that the egg was moving. As the egg cracked open, a demon dragon hatched from it. Immediately, Carl asked the dragon if it would accept him as master. In response, the dragon agreed without hesitation. Witnessing this, Renault happily declared that the demonic dragon had been tamed. After they congratulated Carl, they declared his rebellion against the family had begun. Back at the mansion, Alan asked to visit the racetrack, but Harris said to wait until his father was done with work. Hearing this, Leon scolded Alan for not being like Carl, who slayed the dragon and tamed its cub. But Harris defended Alan by saying he could have done the same if he'd been sent. Ignoring Leon, she chose to accompany Alan to to the racetrack. After they left the room, Alan cheerfully ordered the servant to bring his horsewhip. Meanwhile, Hera asked Doug about the progress of the deprivation magic research. Doug said the research was done, and they just needed an S-rank subject before using it on Carl. Satisfied, Hera vowed to finally eliminate Carl. 5 years later, Carl had finally undergone full purification. After being freed from demonization risk, he thanked Anna. But Anna said she should thank him for the wonderful staff. Suddenly, they noticed a figure at the window. Carl rushed over and recognized Doug, who had already escaped. Moments later, Reinald and Lucian arrived to report their task's outcome. They revealed that Doug planned a ritual in 3 days with black mages and found another S-rank target. Carl then suspected it's a deprivation magic ritual, but was surprised the target wasn't him. But he then realized that it could be Anna. 3 days later, Anna grumbled as she cleaned the storage room mess. Suddenly, Doug appeared behind her and covered her mouth with a handkerchief. Soon after, she fainted. Later during the ritual, the mages began chanting around her. They asked for her power to serve Doug like a shadow. Doug then raised the knife to steal Anna's talent by using her blood in formation, but when he struck, she vanished. Anna then appeared behind him and revealed he'd stabbed an illusion. Seeing him surprised, she reminded him not to underestimate her. She then cast Shining Star Lock, which binds him tightly as he cursed her cunning. Still restrained, Doug commanded the mages to attack her. Immediately, Anna closed her eyes and covered her ears as Carl instructed. Suddenly, a loud sound echoed. Moments later, a dragon and griffin surprised the mages. Nevertheless, they were immediately devoured by them. Meanwhile, Doug recognized them instantly, but someone scolded him for daring to harm Anna. Hence, Doug confirmed that it was really Carl. Carl then confronted him and asked why Anna was targeted. Doug confessed that deprivation magic works once, so Anna was chosen as the test subject. Realizing Anna was in danger because of him, Carl vowed to punish Doug. Hence, he cut his hand and performed a shadow oath that left Doug stunned. Afterward, he ordered Doug to report the ritual success and immediate start. Hearing Doug ask why, he explains that it was time to expose Alan's true colors. The next day, Doug told Hera the experiment succeeded as Alan tried to invite Gloria to the garden. Still, Hera asked if he was sure, so Doug said the full moon at Alan's coming of age was perfect timing. Pleased, she praised him and was convinced Alan would soon lead the family and empire. Meanwhile, Alan tried to please his mother by wooing Gloria and saying she was playing hard to get, but he was stunned when she suddenly aimed her sword at him. She then questioned if he deserved to be her fiancé, leaving him baffled. But Gloria explained that he needed to defeat her first, so Alan had her dragged away. Just then, someone blocked her sword. It was Carl. With a ridiculing smile, Carl ordered someone to drag Gloria away. Furious, Alan claimed he only forgot his sword and didn't need help. Unexpectedly, Gloria asked Carl to train, but he refused, leaving Alan to wonder about her closeness. When Gloria blushed and told Carl to reconsider, Alan realized she likes him. Clenching his fists, he tried to confront Carl, but Hera called him back, so he decided to deal with Gloria after their marriage. With that, he said goodbye to her, and Gloria cheerfully did the same. Without him, Gloria threatened to attack, and Carl finally agreed, but with one condition. He asked her to introduce him to her brother Hugh. Later that night, Carl told Hugh he canceled Gloria and Alan's engagement if he lent him the illusionary time box. While looking at Hugh, Carl aimed to exploit Hugh's desire to cancel the engagement that the royal family had always rejected. However, Hugh dismissed Carl as an arrogant kid who couldn't undo a royal engagement. In response, Carl drew his sword, declaring only he could solve Hugh's problem. Upon seeing Carl's sword, Hugh began to suspect Carl was the Cooper family's true S-rank talent. Suddenly, Carl stepped forward and told him he'll destroy Alan since the engagement couldn't be canceled. Hearing this, Hugh looked at him in silence. 1 month later inside the mansion, Doug tells Hera that Carl wasn't with the illegitimate children, and Alan was searching for him, so Hera told Doug to help Alan. Meanwhile, the summoned Cooper illegitimate children discussed if it was to showcase Alan as the heir. Outside, Leon was informed the guests were seated and preparations had begun. However, Hugh's sudden appearance puzzled Leon, who didn't recall inviting him. As Hugh claimed he just came to watch, Carl told Lucian to activate the illusionary box. After Lucian disappeared, the box was surrounded by chants. After that, the shadows began to unlock it. As a result, the entire mansion was enveloped by its power. As Carl watched, a voice called out saying he'd finally been found. It was Alan, and he asked while Carl was hiding alone. Inside a basement, Alan apologized to Carl as he drew a dagger. With it in hand, he declared that Carl's talent now belonged to him, and this was his fate. Seeing this, Anna urgently called out Carl's name. However, a girl suddenly told her to stop napping and get to work. But Anna knew it wasn't a dream since it was the stars showing a past life's reality. Realizing Carl was in danger, she rushed to his location. As she shouted his name, she planned to stop Alan before he could act. But when she arrived, Alan was offering Carl wine in their father's name. Immediately, she tried casting magic to put Alan to sleep for months. However, someone suddenly called her name. Hera arrived and ordered her servant to quietly take Anna away. Hence, Anna was then restrained by the servant. But this made Hera wonder why Anna could still use magic if the spell had worked. Still, Hera refocused on Carl and Alan since the ceremony was more urgent. Meanwhile, Carl finally drank the wine. As a result, he collapsed along with the glass and made Alan call him a fool for falling for the same trick twice. Later in the basement, Alan asked how Carl could have S-rank talent. He then punched Carl and demanded to know how he tamed a demonic dragon. He also hit Carl for gaining Gloria's favor. Lastly, he declared that everything should have been his. Suddenly, Hera told him to stop and begin the ceremony instead, and he agreed. Doug then gave him a dagger that can pierce Carl's body, which Alan thought wasn't bad. Holding the dagger, he declared Carl's sword talent would be his. As he stabbed Carl, he announced that this was Carl's true fate. As he told him to scream, he declared himself the true heir with the strongest powers, but Carl's body began trembling. He then burst into laughter and asked if Alan thought this was just a play. Hearing this, Alan and Hera were both shocked. Suddenly, Carl broke free from the chains. He urged them to open their eyes since their fate was on the line. With a snap of his fingers, the illusion faded and revealed they were in the banquet hall. The crowd saw everything and mocked Alan by calling his S-rank talent fake. Hearing this, Hera realized Carl saw through their plan and knew she had to act fast, so she and Alan quickly tried to explain that Carl was framing him. At that moment, someone began clapping. Hugh then called it an exciting show and asked Leon if he agreed. Hearing this, Leon furiously called out Alan's name. Hera quickly claimed she gave Alan the order and asked Leon to punish her instead, but Leon pushed Alan away. Seeing this, Carl commented that Leon was truly ruthless. Alan then shouted that Carl was just a bastard and everything should be his, but Hera silenced him. Despite this, the guests murmured that Leon earned his place while his son shamed the family. Hearing this, Leon raised his sword and left Alan confused. Leon then addressed his children and declared the start of the succession contest. Hearing this, his illegitimate children realized they could now compete and began plotting to eliminate Alan. Witnessing this, Hugh laughed after seeing the true Cooper's spirit power above all. Without hesitation, he canceled the engagement because Alan is unworthy of his sister. Leon then realized that Hugh had sided with Carl by lending him the illusionary box, but with nobles present and rumors a risk, Leon chose to step back for now. He then agreed to request the king to cancel the engagement, which earned Hugh's praise. Leon then told Carl he could compete for heir, but warned not to shame the family. If he did, Leon promised to make him disappear, but Carl simply asked if Leon really thought he cared about the title. With that, Carl challenged Leon to make him disappear. Hearing this, Leon was left confused by Carl's defiance. Still, he chose to retreat for the time being. Seeing this, a servant questioned him, but Leon chose to wait and see Carl's potential. Still, he admitted Carl was irritating and unsure who he took after. Later inside the mansion, Hera asked who leaked their plans, but Doug claimed he didn't know. Just then, one of her servants asked what they should do with Anna. Hera ordered them to feed her to the demonic creatures. However, she suddenly paused. She realized that Anna using magic meant the ritual had failed. She then glanced at Doug and suspected the ritual had failed. Hence, she ordered Doug to demonstrate the power he had stolen from Anna. But Doug said her talent was too too advanced and needed more time. However, Hera refused and ordered Doug's execution. Alarmed, Doug claimed Carl forced him, but they struck him down instantly. Seeing his body on the floor, Hera said a traitor dog wasn't worth hearing. She then turned to Anna and decided to extract her talent directly. As she began draining her, she noticed that Anna's body showed no burn marks, and that led her to suspect that Anna had an Ice Soul body. She recalled Ice Soul girls could boost men's power once they mature as hotbeds. With this in mind, Hera made plans to use Anna. The next day, Carl suspected Leon spared Alan out of fear of his mother's backing. Furthermore, Hera had confined Carl immediately, but he refused to leave until Alan suffered as he once did. Suddenly, he heard a knock and thought it was Anna. To his surprise, it was Gloria sent by her brother to retrieve the time box. Seeing her, he briefly thought of killing Alan with her family's help, but she saw his look and questioned him. As he handed over the box, he asked why such a weak illusion item was their heirloom. She then tells him on one condition to make him mow her, despite the legend being doubted. However, Carl casually said goodbye instead. Irritated, she challenged him to a duel. Later in the arena, Gloria began attacking Carl with her sword, but he effortlessly deflected her strikes and eventually knocked her backward. Declaring that she had lost again, Gloria called him ungentlemanly, but Carl reminded her she insisted he go all out, and she owed him the time box a secret. Reluctantly, she said the legend claims mastering the time box lets one sacrifice their life and rebirth another. Hearing this, Carl realized Anna gave her life to revive him, so he now owed her protection and revenge. However, someone arrived to inform him that Anna had been captured. Upon hearing the news, Carl immediately asked who had captured Anna. Lucian responded that someone saw Hera and some servants take her last night. Gloria added she heard rumors Anna would become the young master's mistress, but she assumed the young master referred to as Carl. Realizing this, Carl rushed off to find Alan. Gloria quickly ordered the others to follow him. Meanwhile, Alan was still fuming over Carl's humiliation and was calmed by a servant on Hera's orders, but Alan kicked him. A servant then showed Anna and suggested he use her to get back at Carl. Pleased, Alan called Anna his future mistress and promised she'd be a worthy concubine. Chained and powerless, Anna panicked as Alan was eager to see Carl's reaction once she's humiliated. With that, he urged her to accept her fate and become his concubine. Suddenly, a furious voice shouted Alan's name, then a punch landed straight on his face. Seeing this, Anna was relieved to see Carl. Without pause, Carl kicked Alan in the lower body, causing him to scream in pain. Determined to end it, Carl struck his shoulder, then his ribs. Seeing Carl all furious, Alan cried out for help. The servants rushed to defend him, but Carl quickly overpowered them all. Seeing that Carl was losing control, Gloria hurried over to Anna. After she broke her chains, she told her to calm Carl, who was demonizing again. Anna then immediately hugged Carl and assured him that she was safe. Meanwhile, the servants then rushed to Alan's aid. Suddenly, Hera arrived at the scene. She harshly scolded Carl and accused him of repaying his father with betrayal. In response, Carl took off his necklace and drew his sword, so Anna called out to him. Alarmed, Hera asked what he planned to do. In response, Carl sliced his palm with the blade. He poured the blood on Alan and declared a holy battle to end anyone who threatened Anna. 7 days later, at the dueling arena, Carl told Alan he didn't expect him to show up after 7 days of stalling, but Alan replied he wouldn't miss the chance to squash a stink bug like Carl. Suddenly, Carl noticed his shield, which immediately gave him a bad feeling. As the battle began, Alan caught Carl off guard with Medusa's petrification laser. Still, Carl managed to dodge the attacks, which made Alan ask if a gold sword master like him was just a dancing monkey. Meanwhile, Carl realized the Shadow Oath couldn't block petrification since it wasn't direct damage. As Carl eyed the shield, Alan bragged that having Medusa's shield proved he was destined, unlike Carl. He then kept up his attacks and claimed that all of Carl's efforts were useless. When Carl tried to leap toward him, Alan quickly ordered Medusa to attack with her eyes, but Carl managed to slash her eyes first. Though she still managed to petrify his sword, the stone faded shortly after. Carl then launched a powerful strike at Alan. His attack landed and shattered one of Alan's rings, but Alan smiled and recalled he was now a golden staff mage. He then cast a black magic to summon vengeful souls to devour Carl. Witnessing this, Hugh called Alan a bastard for using black magic with 1,000 sacrificed souls. He also turned to Leon for an explanation, but Leon said it was a family secret. Meanwhile, Alan mocked Carl for not dodging, but Carl sliced through the vengeful souls. Hence, he couldn't believe anyone could resist such corruption. Still, he continued to release more souls against Carl, but they simply passed through him without effect. As Alan grew confused, Carl told him he'd struggled enough and should just die. Still, Alan believed that Carl could not hurt him because he was his shadow. After activating the Shadow Oath, Alan's shadows sensed the pain and began to panic. Seeing this, Carl recalled Alan's Shadow Oath transfers fatal damage. Regardless, Alan summoned the Life Scepter to drain life and ignored why his Shadow Oath failed on Carl. As Lucian and the others grew weaker, Anna began to worry for them. Suddenly, Alan taunted them for giving up but kept punishing them. This made Carl feel conflicted. In response, Carl stabbed his sword into the ground and declared that he refused to become an animal like Alan. Thus, he activated his blood formation. The blood energy quickly shattered Alan's staff, which shocked him. As a result, the life force of the others began to return, and they called out to Carl with gratitude. Suddenly, a dragon appeared in the sky and shattered the protective barrier. After it landed behind Carl, Carl told Alan to enjoy his last breath because it would be his final one. Before that, Carl spoke with the dragon, who was also furious at Alan. Seeing this, Hugh began to wonder if the old legend was true, but Gloria was confused. He then said a dragon can transform and boost its master's power when their wills align in strong emotion. With that, Carl began to be covered in armor along his shoulders, arms, legs, and even his sword. Hence, this phenomenon was known as the dragon armor. Alan also couldn't believe Carl and the dragon had synchronized their hearts and minds. Thinking it was an illusion, Alan used forbidden magic to destroy it. Therefore, the vengeful souls began to charge toward Carl, but Carl calmly said their bond came from shared wrath toward Alan. With that, he unleashed a series of slashes to eliminate the approaching souls. After that, he turned to Alan. Striking his hand, he declared the attack was for the innocent whose talents Alan had stolen. Seeing this, Hera began to panic, but Leon ordered her to sit down. Meanwhile, Alan grew desperate and kept summoning more vengeful souls. Carl then leaped and declared the blow was for Alan's dead shadows and his own stolen past, but it's also for all the evil Alan had done in past, present, and future. With this in mind, he charged forward to strike the final blow. However, a small bead stopped his sword. Soon, he saw Hera carrying Alan as Leon scolded her for interfering. Meanwhile, Hugh noted Hera was once a top mage and didn't expect to see her fight again, but she seems weak after assassinating the previous family head and now relies on artifact spells. Hera then cast the 9th ring Holy Spear and said she should have killed Carl as a baby, but she would now. Unexpectedly, Leon shouted at them to stop. His voice's force shattered both the spear and Carl's dragon armor. Witnessing this, Hugh wasn't surprised because Leon's magic restraining ripple was legendary. After Leon approached, he ordered Carl to leave with his people, but Carl said he'd regret it. Hera also insisted on killing Carl, but Leon told him to leave before he changed his mind. With that, Carl said they would go. Later in the forest, Carl told Hugh not to come, but Hugh invited him to join the Essex, prompting Carl to ask if that meant war with the Coopers. Hearing that, Hugh was left speechless. Knowing the king's illness and coming war, Carl offered intel once he entered the academy, but Hugh questioned his trust. Carl then recalled a man who lost his loved one and declared he'd use his S-rank sword talent to become the hidden sword Saint Chris disciple. Meanwhile, a drunken man could be seen loitering nearby. As he hiccuped, he wondered aloud who was speaking about him behind his back. Days later, Carl can already see Gordon City's strongest defense towers, so Hugh then warned Carl to stay cautious around the city's many nobles. As Hugh spoke, Carl saw him as a backstabber for his family and planned to handle things alone. Still, Hugh promised to handle the academy, make Anna Carl's maid so they could stay together, and house his guards to fight bandits. Hearing of nearby bandits, Carl quickly saw an opportunity. However, Hugh said the bandits were noble valuable subordinates, and when Carl chose to fight them, he asked about Anna. In response, Carl asked him to send her to the Imperial Academy School of Magic. As Carl left, Gloria asked her brother's plan, and he said they'd first settle Carl's men in the manor. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Carl stood in front of a hidden bandit hideout. He then recalled Angela saying she was now 7 and secretly imprisoned here, but he knew her father Chris was desperately searching for her. Hence, saving Angela could earn him a shot at becoming Chris's disciple. With this in mind, Carl activated his dragon armor. Nearby, some bandits were busy training. Suddenly, their trainer sensed something approaching, but it was already too late. Their necks had been swiftly slashed. That's because Carl had used Flash of Blood to defeat them instantly. He then charged at the remaining bandits using his second skill. Unleashing the Blood Serpent, he allowed it to strike and kill them one by one. At that moment, the bandit boss named Plom appeared and rushed at Carl. However, Carl blocked Plom's sword with his own. Then he leaped into the air and unleashed a powerful Blood Shadow Slash. Realizing it was blood magic, Plom identified Carl as a Cooper and tried to talk to him, but Carl showed no mercy and slashed his neck. Using Plom's blood, Carl created blood clones. The clones chased the bandits as Carl was uninterested in the skirmish. Suddenly, Mio appeared. Carl then asked if he found the place, and Mio nodded, so he ordered him to lead the way. Upon arriving, Carl began tinkering with a rock. Soon, a hidden cave entrance opened. Without delay, he descended the steps. Soon, he met a girl, so he confessed he'd take her to her father to learn sword skills, since he recalled her lie-detecting ability. Hearing this, Angela said that he was telling the truth and agreed to go with him. They then began climbing the stairs back to the surface, but Carl quickly realized their escape would not be easy. That's because a skeleton monster stood before them. He then warned Angela that he could only block one attack, and she must run by then. This giant skeleton rivaled a sword saint's strength, so Carl warned the dragon they risked their lives. After equipping his armor, he urged Angela to prepare herself. In response, she assured him that she was ready. After taking a deep breath, he charged toward the skeleton. In response, the skeleton reached out to grab him, but he managed to block the attack and shouted for Angela to run. Angela quickly followed his order and ran. As Carl's armor began to crack, he had one final move he wanted to try. He then shouted release and triggered a powerful shockwave using the armor as a last resort. After that, he declared that no skeleton colossus would stop his revenge. Seeing Angela running, he planned to bring her out immediately, but the skeleton shifted its attention to her and launched an explosive attack. Fortunately, Mio managed to grab Angela into the sky. However, he couldn't hold on and ended up dropping her. Just in time, Carl caught her in midair and continued running from the incoming blast. But near the gate, Carl saw a seal blocking their exit and knew he had to destroy its core to escape. However, he had no time to analyze the array in detail to locate the core now. Suddenly, Angela asked if the core was in a restricted area, and Carl confirmed. So Angela pointed to one of 3 forbidden places, and they headed there. On their way, Carl guessed the skeleton's slow speed limited it to firing its cannon from afar. Still, one scratch from the skeleton could seriously hurt him without armor. As they reached the room, Carl saw it was reinforced with defensive magic, but likely wouldn't last long. Suddenly, Angela said that the bow nearby seemed to be calling out to her, so Carl moved closer, and Angela was able to retrieve the bow. When he asked if it's Self's blessing, she confirmed. After that, she tells him that the second place is just ahead, but the skeleton continued chasing them. When they arrived, they saw a strange glowing ball inside the room. Upon seeing it, Carl was shocked. He realized the mage had rigged the skeleton for self-destruction. Hence, he warned Angela he might lose control next, so she had to protect herself, and she agreed. With that, Carl activated the 4th skill from the swordsmanship inheritance. He then shouted the words Bloodbath Storm, and with that, the glowing ball connected to the skeleton exploded. But immediately after, the demon grabbed his hands and claimed him as its own. So Angela was left confused. At the Imperial Academy, Chris was dozing off, but someone reported the second prince's Deathbringer had left and asked if they should follow. Chris reacted at once upon hearing the Deathbringer was outside. Before vanishing, he told the man to guard his wine while he checked it out. Picking up the wine, the man remarked that Chris was finally free. Meanwhile, at the bandit's lair, Angela continued to call out to Carl, but Carl showed a frightening smile and attacked her, so Mio quickly grabbed her. Nevertheless, Angela continued to call for Carl with desperation. The dragon also attempted to stop Carl, but Carl only turned his wrath toward the dragon. Mio then stayed close to protect Angela, who then noticed the bow in her hands. With this, she remembered Carl saying that she had to protect herself. Therefore, she aimed the bow at him, but after releasing the arrow, Carl dodged it easily. In exchange, he attacked again with his sword, but Mio and the dragon quickly formed a shield around Angela. Still, the demon saw Angela as a tempting apple and wondered where to bite first. Meanwhile, Angela found herself unable to move, so Carl easily caught her and prepared to stab her in the chest in order to drink her pure blood. At that moment, Angela told Carl not to be sad because she knew he did his best. When a single tear fell, Carl regained consciousness and confronted the blood demon for going too far. Hearing this, the demon was shocked Carl broke free on his own. Regardless, the demon warned him to stop resisting because he'd never be free, and Carl agreed. But he also said that all he needed was one move. He then activated Blood Feast, and the demon reminded him using it would ruin his future as a swordsman. After purging the demon, Carl said Chris would help finish it, but the demon warned he'd regret trusting others. Suddenly, the Deathbringer appeared and condemned Carl for troubling the second prince. He then attempted to attack Carl, but Angela quickly protected him. Unexpectedly, the attacker's hand was chopped into pieces. As his body was sliced, Chris finally appeared and comforted Angela to go home. However, Angela insisted that Carl should come with them. Chris then turned to Carl and asked if he needed help healing his body. Carl accepted it, and added he wished to inherit Chris' legacy after saving Angela. But Chris noted he saved Angela, and Carl admitted his mistake still freed Chris from the second prince. 7 days later, Chris named Carl his heir, and when Carl asked if that made him a target, Chris said he could decline. Noticing Carl, students whispered about his past, but he boldly declared Chris' legacy wasn't all he wanted, and no one could stop him. At that moment, someone raised a sword against him. It was the top-ranked commoner William who accused Carl of betrayal and challenged him to a duel to strip his honors. Carl then realized Prince Sandrew was using William to attack while he healed. Suddenly, William demanded he leave Chris and forfeit his title if he refused the duel. Recalling William's past challenge, Carl accepted again with resolve and added that if William lost, he must swear eternal loyalty. With that, the crowd began cheering for William to teach Carl. William immediately charged at Carl, but as he used his heady cleave, Carl evaded it with his stealing shadow. This allowed him to teleport behind William and demand his surrender, but William refused and used Enraged, while Carl's skill needed 10 seconds to reset. Meanwhile, William began advancing toward him with increasing power. Carl recognized this as William's ultimate combo, something he had already mastered at the academy. William followed up by using Swallow Return. He then ordered him to repent for his evil deeds as he attacked with another heady cleave. Suddenly, Carl recalled Chris saying that he could barely manage Blood's second technique now. Using the third technique risked collapse or the demon's return, but Carl wants William's loyalty. As William's attack closed in, Carl activated his blood magic. He then unleashed the third technique Shadow Blades, aiming it directly at William. Cornered, William was stunned by the swordsmanship, and Carl said he was glad to see his expression again. Suddenly, the blood demon started to take control once more. William sensed something wrong as the bloodlust surrounding Carl grew darker. As it began spiraling out of control, several mages stepped forward. The fire, ice, and electric mages accused Carl of black magic and prepared to act. Other students also insist that Carl must be a villain and should be killed, but William stopped them, declaring Carl had earned his eternal loyalty even if he's evil. Chris then stepped in, hitting Carl and calling him the same troublemaker he was as a kid. He also reminded others the academy forbids exploiting weakness and they face Carl later. Hearing this, the students were clearly intimidated by Chris' presence. Meanwhile, Baron Moran asked what's next, and Prince Sandrew said to go to the trial hall for Carl's entry. But he still couldn't believe Carl used blood magic even though it's fatal. Witnessing this, Anna asked to follow Carl, but Cassidon thinks Carl's evil even though magic ethics were separate. However, he clarified that blood magic was an exception. At the same time, Chris reminded Carl that blood magic required total mental, physical, and willpower to master. So for the past 7 days, he had helped him recover. He also taught Carl to use bloodline magic to replace strength and enhance body control. So he questioned Carl's recklessness and warned no one would avenge the Coopers if he fell. Still, Carl said some things were worth it, and Chris wouldn't let his hair go mad. But the head of combat, George, arrived and Chris became annoyed. Moving on, George told Carl he had 1 week to complete a trial mission as a noble recommendation. Before leaving, he warned Chris not to interfere and promised no mercy if things went wrong. Chris then called George just a lucky fool and told Carl to follow the rules but also prepare against George's scheme. That night, Sandrew learned of Carl's trial and told Moran to poison the wilderness realm's water. Using it, animals inside are more aggressive. Nevertheless, Sandrew thought Carl's fate hinged on Chris's restraint. The next day, William warned Carl the mission would be tough, and Carl agreed since George hated his master. But William said it was more than that, as everyone was gathered at the Grand Hall. As he said they awaited Carl's failure, Anna casually waved at Carl. But Carl just shook his head, and Anna understood. Carl then approached Felix, who's George's disciple on duty, and stated he was there for the trial. But Felix said it now required a team due to the sudden difficulty, so William suggested making it a solo mission. But Felix said solo missions start next week, and Carl had 3 days to complete one for admission. The students then urged Carl to leave, and Felix asked if he'd find a team or quit. Carl then asked if Felix doubted him, but he said it was others who didn't want Carl or William. Carl then declared that if he formed a team, Felix must kneel and make amends to William. But Felix said only death could make him kneel, so Carl replied he'd report him to Chris instead. Regardless, Felix told him to return after forming a team of 4 by evening. Suddenly, Anna and Gloria stepped up to join, and Carl told Felix to register the mission. Additionally, he reminded him to kneel and apologize as promised. As Felix kneels, Carl felt any challenger should be ready for the cost, but others viewed him as a villain. William then said Carl went too far, but Carl wouldn't let others act without consequence. Meanwhile, Felix wanted to kill Carl, but George told him to use the shame to one day crush Carl. Later, at the forest of Mylessa, Carl and the others gathered together. William said the sorcerer Mylessa's inheritance was hidden here, but no one had found it. He also said the only exit was at the mountain lake top, with deadly beasts below and weaker ones higher up. Additionally, the forest mist was toxic, so sword masters could last 10 hours, but mages only 6 without protection. But Carl sensed danger and told everyone to prepare for battle. As expected, he saw a girl and others fleeing from a swarm of insects. William warned to avoid Mylessa's swarm path, but the girl said they'd run 20 minutes, and it still followed. Seeing this, Anna used her fat cat magic, which quickly created a barrier to shield the group. However, William began to wonder what kind of ability that was. Carl then mocked the group and asked how geniuses lacked the courage to draw their swords. Regardless, he summoned his blood serpent. Immediately, it struck the insects and caused them to explode. But seeing no blood mana boost, he deemed them worthless. After that, he asked the girl who was relieved if she felt no shame being rescued by an enemy. In response, she called him a country bumpkin. As the fog thickened, she scoffed at calling an illegitimate like him an enemy and ordered him to escort her instead. Soon after, she noticed the fog surrounding them. Gloria then guessed monsters were drawn by the swarm, and William quickly warned everyone. Suddenly, a large hand emerged from the mist, and the monster let out a deep growl. Seeing this, Carl declared that he would kill every last one of them. While fighting, Carl recalls the Cooper family's sword style centers on blood magic, so this makes its techniques strange, unpredictable, and hard to counter. Regardless, Carl used Rock Pierce and Stealing Shadow, since blood mages gain power by killing. With a precise strike, he pierces the bear. As he controls its blood, he absorbs and refines its core. Unlike fragile blood mages, blood swordsmen like Carl can advance freely, and this helps him save Anna. And regardless of magic quantity, this swordsmanship lets practitioners grow stronger by refining their blood. However, the price is that lingering malice can form a blood demon within the swordsman. But only strong will can suppress the curse, so Anna asks Carl if he's okay. He then assures her that he can regulate his power and handle the creatures. But unexpectedly, Carl begins to groan in pain, and the blood demon starts to overpower him. Reacting quickly, Anna summons the Wall of Stars to protect them from Carl's attacks. Gloria then asks if it's like the Dragon Lair, but Anna says this time feels different. The girl then says blood mages go mad, and the current Cooper head became the Silent Sword Saint to resist it. Still, Anna activated the Starling technique on Carl, though the other girl thought it was pointless. As Anna's eyes turned red, she entered Carl's spiritual world, saw the demon mocking her, and demanded to know what it did to him. The demon clarified that Carl consumed the same thing that killed the first Cooper head, so he offered to help save Carl if Anna let him plant a blood demon seed in her heart. Anna instantly chose to save Carl, and the demon called her foolish for it. Still, she remained determined. She then used her Purify technique in an attempt to wake Carl. Seeing this, the girl said Anna wasted her youth on training. Growing impatient, Gloria told her to either help or keep quiet. Meanwhile, Anna's spell triggered purple smoke to rise from Carl. Hence, the demon mocked Carl for needing to be saved by a girl. Carl then told him to leave, but the demon said he was bound by his promise to Anna. Before leaving, the demon offered one final lesson. He told Carl to identify what made him lose control, and warned that if it happened again, Anna could die. After the gem materialized, the demon bid them farewell for now. In return, Carl vowed that if they met again, the demon would regret it. After regaining control, Carl immediately used the Violent Feast technique on the remaining monsters. With that, the gem absorbs their blood. Suddenly, a light appeared in the sky, so William knew a half-saint came, but Carl found it odd they sent someone so strong. Meanwhile, the half-saint slowly descended upon the mountain. With a single move, he eliminated the surrounding beasts. As their blood bursts apart, the teacher Oliver thought Prince Sandrew would be pleased if he brought back Carl's body. With a tool made to find blood mages, Oliver was sure he could track Carl easily. Suddenly, he heard someone mock half-saints as title seekers. Oliver then saw the students and knew he couldn't act with them watching. The students also saw Oliver and thanked him for rescuing them. Despite that, Oliver drew his sword to expose and kill Carl, but Carl quickly sensed Oliver's murderous intent. Immediately, Oliver attacked without hesitation and shocked everyone. He then told Carl he should feel honored to die by a half-saint's sword strike, but Carl appeared behind him and mocked the academy's impractical things. Oliver then attacked Carl again, but Carl used demon-taught blood magic to detect the poison. But Carl realized Oliver's attack wasn't poisonous. He realized Oliver's attack used an internal energy flow that he can mimic. Suddenly, a fat cat barrier pushed Oliver away from Carl. Right after, William attacked from behind using an Empire technique. Oliver tried to block with his sword, but Carl struck from behind, so he decided to use his special move. He unleashed a powerful slash, sending a shockwave into the nearby lake. Soon, a 5-headed dragon emerged. Oliver thought the students would be grateful for the real battle training. Instead, they panicked and said Oliver tried to kill them, while another called him a mad dog for fleeing with a scroll. Amid the chaos, one student feared dying because he still had to earn for his family. Another cried and shouted that he would keep fighting, but the 5-headed dragon growled fiercely. Seeing the danger, Carl told William him to block the attack. As the dragon attacked, Carl told Anna and Gloria to protect the others. Anna then casts Wall Witnesses, prompting Gloria to suggest better spell names. Carl then asked for the crystal, but when William said it's for his mission, he replied it meant nothing if they couldn't kill the dragon. With the crystal, Carl avoided using Blood Shadow Blade and chose to use low-level swordsmanship. He then tossed the crystals and told William to cover him so he could prepare. William immediately stepped in to block the monster, but he was quickly thrown aside by the dragon's force. Seeing the creature closing in on Carl, William shouted for him to be careful. William then quickly covered Carl and used his Empire Sword technique. While fighting, he asked Carl how long until he absorbed the crystal. In response, Carl said he needed a few more minutes. Meanwhile, Gloria continued to help by casting Sword Dance, but she began to pass out. Seeing this, Anna quickly called out for someone to save her. Immediately, Gloria was caught and supported by a pool of blood. After that, Carl turned to face the magical beasts. Without hesitation, he used Blood Flame Slash against them. As a result, the beasts were directly struck and split into two. After successfully slaying the beasts, Carl began to walk back toward the others. Suddenly, a student named Louis stood up with his sword. As Louis approached Carl, he called him a devil and a traitor, prompting others to stop him. But he angrily raised his sword. After he plunged his sword into the ground, he apologized and thanked Carl for saving him. Seeing this, the other students also apologized to Carl and thanked him. Suddenly, the noble girl shouted for them to look up. When they looked up, they saw the swarm of insects returning. Carl immediately activated his blood vision. Using it, he tried to uncover the secret these insects were hiding. He then used Stealing Shadow and told Anna to guard herself and the others. After giving the order, he dove into the water. Seeing the insects, he realized the swarm was meant to harvest life force. The swarm's true purpose was to fuel black magic to resurrect the ancient mage Mylessa. Carl deemed this an unworthy act, so he cut the heart with Blood Serpent. Soon after, the other students regained their magic and stamina. Additionally, they spotted the exit, so Carl was shocked it appeared by accident. As the students cheered, Anna checked on Carl, who said he'd recovered and found two things in the lake. Upon inspecting the first item, Anna recognized the bottle's poison scent and thought of bringing it for her teacher to examine. Carl gave the second item to William, who called it a disaster-grade crystal, but feared the mission failed due to his lost crystals. Unexpectedly, Louis gave Carl his collected crystals to help complete the mission. The other students offered theirs too and showed Carl was finally accepted. Meanwhile, Oliver feared the secret realm events must stay hidden where Sandra's plan and his own power would be lost. Suddenly, he noticed that the door to the secret realm opened, so he drank a power-boosting potion to go all out to avoid failure. As Carl and the others exited, Oliver wondered why they hadn't just died inside. Carl quickly sensed danger and managed to evade Oliver's sudden attack using Stealing Shadow, but Anna grew worried, and Gloria stepped in to assist Carl. Carl then activated Blood Vision and warned Oliver that he had seen his death. Still, Oliver charged to kill, and Carl shouted he was the one who should die. Their clash sent both of them flying. During the scuffle, the crystal bottle slipped from Carl. At that moment, George arrived to stop the fight. He questioned Oliver, who only wanted to please Sandrew, but George came to kill the one who poisoned the realm. Hearing poison, the students panicked and asked George for proof. George responded by revealing a magic scroll made by the headmaster. He said it could detect poison and reveal the guilty party. The scroll floated then landed on the crystal bottle. Though the scroll pointed to Carl, some students doubted it but suspected he used a taboo to complete the mission. Hearing this, George scoffed at how easily they were manipulated. He then asked Carl to speak, and Carl calmly said freeing someone was easy by twisting facts. George seized Carl and warned he wouldn't escape justice, but Carl was stunned by his speed. George then cited Article 367 that allows staff to kill students who attack and plan to use it to punish Carl. However, George's sword was intercepted by magic. Immediately after, an old man appeared and told George that this was not the right time. Realizing it was the headmaster, George quickly showed him the bottle flagged by the magic scroll. The headmaster used his appraisal and found the bottle held a royal poison meant for blood mages. But since the discovery proved nothing, he ordered Carl and Oliver in prison pending investigation. While shackling them, the headmaster thought detaining Carl was safer due to ongoing threats against him. When someone objected, he insisted the investigation would continue at the academy. Meanwhile, the students debated if Carl was guilty or framed by Oliver. Later, in the academy dungeon, Chris told Carl the poison came from Sandrew and targeted blood mages, so Carl vowed to kill him. But Chris told him to stay put. While Oliver thought Carl was a fool for saying that since Chris' job is to protect the royal family. In response, Carl was surprised Oliver still served his master, and Oliver replied it was his honor. Hearing this, Carl recalled how they once saw serving the Cooper family as an honor. So he asked if Oliver ever felt his talent served the unworthy, and added he must feel abandoned now. Oliver tensed at the mention of his family, and Carl offered to help him break free if he confessed, but refusing to betray his family, so Carl said they'd see if his master would truly protect him. Later, someone visited Oliver in the dungeon. He was told Sandrew arranged a duel with Carl at the Beast Arena as his final chance. The visitor gave him the Vine of Life, and Oliver vowed to obey Sandrew even if it cost his life. As Oliver stared at the vial, he heard Carl say it meant death and glory after was pointless. With that, he saw they were both sacrifices, and questioned if glory was worth losing his life. Later at the arena, the match began as Carl and Oliver appeared. The announcer said the two would fight amid beast attacks, and the winner would earn Sandrew's reward. Soon after, the beast awoke and quickly impaled several nearby people. The duel began, and Oliver claimed Carl's tricks were useless against wide-range attacks. Though attacked, Carl struck back and asked if he knew the strength of a sword prodigy trained since age 4. Unexpectedly, Carl was caught by the beast. Fully recovered, he tested Chris's Silent Slash, and declared Oliver couldn't beat him now. Meanwhile, Sandrew saw Oliver not using the potion and ordered someone to fetch someone. Moments later, Oliver's mother Grace, who's Sandrew's cook, was brought out. Seeing her, Oliver feared what might happen if he failed. With this in mind, he pulled out the potion and drank it. Immediately, his body was filled with immense power. As the beast attacks, Oliver charges at Carl to protect his mother. While fighting, Oliver asked Carl to save his mother and offered help with the vines. After throwing Carl, he shouted that only his death could save his mother. As the beast continued to pursue Carl, Oliver begged him. After that, he unleashed his ultimate move, Flame Slash. Thus, he successfully pierced the beast. Witnessing this, Sandrew calls Oliver worthless while Grace cries out in fear. As his mother wept, Oliver hoped his death would calm Sandrew and that Carl would protect his mother. As the vine's core activated, Oliver begged Carl to protect his mother, who's the reason he served Sandrew. As the core merged with his chest, Carl stabbed him while saying no one would be saved if he died. Carl shattered the core and told Oliver to live and repay his debts for his family's sake. With that, he used Flesh Rebirth on him. Through this, Carl found the vine's blood could cure him and told Oliver to rest first. Meanwhile, Sandrew was surprised that blood magic beat both a disaster beast and a half-sword saint. Acknowledging Carl's win, he offered treasures or pardon for his crimes. But Carl asked for grace, making Sandrew suspect he sought revenge through Oliver's family. As guards forced Grace to bow, Sandrew noted Carl was a true blood magic cultivator. He added Carl reeked of chaos and invited him to be his blade. But Carl questioned Sandrew why Oliver's family was discarded despite his obedience. In response, Sandrew called Oliver's death a tragedy, so Carl asked what if he refused to join. Sandrew Sandru warned that without protection, Carl would be exiled and blamed for the real incident. At that moment, Sandru's guard lunged at Carl for rejecting the offer, but Carl stopped him with his sword. Suddenly, more guards burst in and accused Carl of being an assassin. Amid the chaos, Oliver ran to his joyful mother, but this made Sandru call him a traitor. However, Carl declared that it was Sandru who was destined for hell. With that, he used Stealing Shadow to slip past the guards. After cornering Sandru, he coldly remarked that authority was meaningless now. Desperate, Sandru asked Chris why Carl wasn't dead and if he too was a traitor. In response, Chris drew his sword to end the other guard. After that, he declared that his loyalty belonged solely to the king. Holding the potions, he claimed the right to investigate and felt lucky Carl saved Angela, or he might have ended up like Oliver. Meanwhile, Sandru feared the investigation could get him confined, letting his brother take over before the academy conference. So he claimed the potions were given to Moran and denied any knowledge of them. Claiming ignorance, Sandru offered to punish Moran, but Carl knew the truth and chose to strike Moran first to weaken him. Just then, Moran arrived. Without hesitation, Carl summoned a blood serpent to strike, but a shield blocked it, and a voice asked why he was attacking royalty. Alan then stepped out from behind and declared Moran a baron. So even if Moran killed Carl, it would only mean an apology and gold to the Coopers. But since Carl survived, no imperial law had been broken. He then apologized for not controlling Carl, and Sandru coldly said Cooper dogs belong in cages. Hearing this, Alan looked at Carl and asked if he was ready to be caged again. Later outside, Chris expressed surprise at Carl's earlier behavior. When Alan insulted him, Carl stayed calm, which is something that surprised Chris. Carl calmly replied there was no need for anger since he'd beaten a lamb before, but because of the Shadow Oath, Alan could not die. And as a result, the shadows in the Cooper family would be the ones to suffer. With this in mind, he figured Hera wouldn't send Alan alone and suspected she was nearby too. Since Sandru was leading the students' exchange, he'd likely invite the 7 great families to build his faction. Suddenly, students attacked and insulted Carl, who replied that only toothless dogs bark the loudest. He added that the true battle would be at the exchange where he'll be facing worthy S-rank talents, so he quickly defeated them because he had no time for pointless fights. Chris watched silently and was relieved that Carl was finally maturing. Later, a nearby bird overheard talk of Carl's meeting with the headmaster about his blood magic inheritance. The bird flew after them, silently following them to the training grounds. There, Headmaster Albus told Carl to strike with his strongest move, but Carl hesitated. Hence, Albus made the first move. A hand appeared beside Carl. Before he could react, a powerful and wordless punch hit him. Luckily, his blood magic softened the blow, though it still hit like a sword saint slash. Afterward, Albus summoned Puppet and told Carl to use his full power. This time, Carl agreed without hesitation. Carl used Bloodstorm of Carnage, and Albus calmly noted it needed more precise focus. Following that, Carl used Blood Flame, and Albus warned he was burning his own blood energy. Undeterred, Carl used Serpent Slash, but Albus called it reckless since it might awaken the demon. Albus then chained the evolving demon as Carl's force technique drained his blood and triggered a violent backlash. When the demon demanded release, Albus realized it had gained a consciousness like Blood Coopers. Alarmed by Carl's state, Chris warned Albus he wouldn't last much longer, but Albus calmly said not to worry since he had sealed the demon to protect Carl. He forbade Carl from using blood magic until he mastered the demon. Carl then refused because the exchange ceremony was near. Chris then offered to train him, and Albus warned his blood magic addiction could be disastrous. Albus then asked if Carl wasn't curious how the 1st and 2nd Cooper armies died in one night. Carl guessed blood magic went out of control, and this explains the lack of records. Albus confirmed it and urged him to master blood magic to protect those he cared about. After Carl thanked Albus, Chris invited him to begin training. Unseen, the spying bird followed them to their secret training. However, Chris noticed its presence. A moment later, the bird blushed. After all, it accidentally witnessed Carl unclothed. Embarrassed, it flew off as Chris muttered the academy would soon grow more chaotic. Meanwhile, the bird transformed into a young woman. Recalling the bath incident, Luna of the 7 great families blamed Chris and confidently aimed to eliminate Carl at the exchange ceremony. At the arena, the academy's annual new student duel began. Even Moran noted that the great Duke family heads were eager to witness the event. Beside the Dukes, teachers, and Sandru, Moran declared they gathered to witness the new student's potential. He added that Sandru would grant the winner a top academy slot and one personal wish. However, Carl knows Sandru plans to recruit people, but he also wants to use the wish to destroy the Cooper family. Moran explained the duel has the preliminaries and the eliminations. When 8 students advanced to one-on-one matches, the final victor would be decided. Hence, first 8 to sever Hydra's head and bring it out would advance to eliminations. With the announcement made, the competition began. Almost immediately, a student using nature magic swiftly sliced off a Hydra's head. Carl spotted Luna and noted her skill with magic arrows and raven transformation. Looking at her raven form, he saw the ceremony was full of hidden talents, but a massive axe suddenly appeared and hit the Hydra's head, so Luna demanded to know who had stolen her target. In response, Thora casually thanked her and claimed the Hydra's head. Irritated, Luna attacked and Carl watched curiously who'd win between King of the Forest or King of Storms. However, Luna's assault failed to break through Thora's defenses. Thora left with the Hydra's head and teasing Luna, while Carl noted his family's monstrous defense. Meanwhile, the students were stunned that Thora was first and commended his speed. Suddenly, a scythe-wielding girl struck the Hydra and claimed the spotlight. It was Gloria, and she ordered them not to let northern barbarians shame their empire. Inspired by her words, William rallied the students to charge forward. As the Hydra grew enraged, students were warned to brace, especially Anna nearby. In response, Carl rushed in to shield her against the Hydra. While Anna was impressed by him, Carl sensed the Hydra was being restrained to stop deaths. Just then, William proudly claimed a Hydra head, so Carl thought their group might all advance. But instead of another head, Carl aimed to retrieve something more valuable from the Hydra. With that, he warned the others to retreat, so he used this chance to train. Charging forward, he endured the Hydra's blows without blood magic by relying on his strengthened body. When the Hydra launched a blaze-type magical attack, Carl grabbed its head. He then redirected the flames toward another. With that, he successfully breaks its regenerating shield and Carl prepares for his next move. He knew that after 8 heads were severed, the Hydra would use its core to regenerate. Hence, it leaves it extremely vulnerable. So he readied Cleave and Blood Resonance to steal the Hydra's regeneration. Just before he struck, his attack was deflected. While he's being restrained, a mocking voice calls him foolish. It was Alan, and he mocked Carl for failing to claim the toughest head. He also teased that if Carl begged, he might give it to him. But Carl coldly called him thick-skinned for even suggesting such a thing. Seeing Carl unfazed, Alan noted his friends were restrained and asked if he'd abandon them too. In response, Carl broke free and shouted Alan's name in fury. In that moment, the suppression collar on the Hydra shattered. As the Hydra went berserk, Carl growled that Alan was courting death. Seeing the Hydra's seal break, Sandru secretly hoped some students would die. Meanwhile, Carl faced Alan, who vowed to repay him for past humiliation. With that, he called out to Lisa to attack. He then boasted that he had brought the fiercest dog from the Sana family. Carl recognized Lisa and knew her life-training magic would make battling her and the Hydra difficult. Knowing this, he chose to target the Hydra first. As the Hydra raged, Carl plotted to make Alan face its fury, but Alan mocked him and said destroying Lisa's hair wouldn't stop her. In response, Lisa began absorbing the Hydra's surrounding flames. She twisted them into monstrous hounds, which Carl found interesting but foolish, because he knew using the Hydra like that would only enrage it further. But with the Hydra breaking free, Carl had to finish Alan quickly. Seeing Carl ready to strike, Lisa warned Alan and sent her fiery hounds to help. But Carl cut them down and mocked Lisa for thinking they could stop him. Unexpectedly, Alan used damage transfer to send the hit to Lisa. Witnessing this, William asked Carl if he needed help, but Carl only ordered him to get Lisa out of the arena. As they rushed out, the announcer named Gloria, Anna, and the Nameless Knight as the next qualifiers. William's name was also called while he tried to calm Lisa down. He also told her staying in the arena would only delay Carl's fight with Alan. homeland. Finally, Lysa's face changed when William said Alan wasn't worth her life. Seeing William's face, Lysa relaxed as he reassured her they'd protect themselves once stronger. Lysa then placed 7, so William hoped to face her fairly next time. Seeing this, Alan cursed Lysa in anger for betraying him, but Carl ignored him and asked if he was ready to die, with no one left to take the hit. But Alan claimed he'd be the last to advance and left Carl behind his Hydra food. However, Carl calmly swung his sword. He sliced through the Hydra and then asked Alan if he still believed that. As he pierced the Hydra's head, he thanked Alan for helping him. He added that Chris once mentioned an ancient blood magic ritual from lost texts, that by mixing his blood with the beasts, he could create blood resonance. After gaining the Hydra's regeneration, he said it proved humans could now access beasts' innate powers. Before Alan could respond, his arm was suddenly severed. He then cursed Carl for cutting off his arm, which couldn't heal due to the Hydra's corrosive power Carl gained. Regardless, Carl asked him if he had ever felt the torment of the Shadow Oath. Alan then saw why Carl survived but wrongly believed shadows could keep carrying and sharing his damage. Nevertheless, Carl declared his regeneration made the damage meaningless, and Alan would feel all the pain instead. While screaming in pain, Alan called Carl a lunatic and then begged for death. But Carl said death was too easy, and he wanted Alan to live in constant fear. After Carl claimed the Hydra's main head, he secured the last spot in the qualifiers. Watching from a distance, Thor saw the main head and admitted Carl must be strong to take it. Carl also saw Thor and recalled his skills, so they both anticipated their battle. Facing someone strong like Thor first, Carl suspected Sandra had rigged the match. Still, he aimed to win without a single loss. As Thor attacked, Carl saw the strikes were too fast and strong to block head-on. Still, he skillfully dodged Thor's simultaneous attacks with ease. Frustrated, Thor called Carl a coward for avoiding a direct fight. Standing on Thor's axe, Carl calmly put on a ring and reminded him the Drank family preferred ranged attacks over direct combat. Provoked, Thor dropped his weapon and swung a fist for Carl to repeat the insult, but Carl easily caught the punch and noted Thor's small size hid great strength. With that, Thor realized Carl had provoked him on purpose to trigger a counterattack. Hence, he immediately summoned his twin axes and began to release his full power. Meanwhile, Carl was surprised Thor's defense held because his ring left no mark. Eager to punish Carl's arrogance, Thor charged in for another strike. Just before the axe could land, Carl halted him with blood resonance. With that, Thor found himself unable to move. Carl then explained losing composure only gave him the chance to exploit openings. With a swift sword swing, he ordered Thor to accept defeat. As Thor was flung backward, he called out to Phaesha. In response, an elite ice dragon appeared. Phaesha then immediately attacked and severed the blood link. Now freed, Thor praised Carl for making him summon Phaesha, but this also marked Carl's downfall. Seeing this, Chris said summoning was against the rules, but Morin allowed it since Thor was a dragon knight and said Carl could summon too. With that, Thor ordered Phaesha to strike Carl with a powerful attack. Surrounded, Carl realized the match wouldn't end unless he closed the distance, but Thor used summon lightning and was ready to unleash a dragon knight's full power. Above, Sandra praised Thor while his proud father agreed. He also said his lightning power marked him as future leader of the Drank and Dragons. After the strike, Thor said dying by it should be Carl's greatest honor. Just then, a magic immune dragon appeared beside Carl, who told Thor not to celebrate yet. Thor and his father were then shocked since this dragon was a rare species thought extinct. Alan had once failed to trigger its evolution, but Carl had succeeded, so it had now gained lightning powers alongside its fire and wind attributes. Carl then ordered the dragon to show its new powers as Thor watched in disbelief. Using the dragon's lightning, Carl closed in on Thor to say this would decide the true winner. As he announced his victory, the dragon released a surge of lightning and electrocuted Thor. After that, Carl then turned to the referee for the official results. Soaring skyward, Carl felt the sun's warmth, which is something he once thought a shadow like him could never have. Meanwhile, Thor's father angrily called Carl a thief for stealing the Drank family treasure. He grabbed Thor's axe and hurled it at Carl while demanding the dragon's return, but the dragon nimbly dodged the weapon. Unfazed, Carl asked if the dragon truly belonged to anyone else. With that, he ordered the dragon to force Thor's father to face reality. In a world of weapons and magic, dragon cavalry was the battlefield's strongest force. To stop any family from rising too high, the king wiped out all known magic dragons, but the last dragon eggs were sealed in Crystal City, with the key split between the Cooper and Isaac families. Now Thor's father felt relief that magic dragon survived, but regret it now served Carl. Still, he asked if the dragon had siblings in hopes to elevate the Drank family if they claimed one, but Carl replied it was the last magic dragon and the rest were destroyed. When asked who gave the order, Carl told him to come closer. He whispered it was someone who most feared the Drank family's rise like Sandra. As Carl walked away, he reminded him that a dragon without wings or teeth is the easiest to tame. Afterward, Carl reminded William his next opponent is from the Forest family, who excelled in traps and hunting. So at the arena, he advised William to use speed, close and fast, and strike hard. Following the advice, William immediately charged toward his opponent. Unexpectedly, Luna anticipated his move and deployed her defenses just in time. Watching, Carl thought William should use Luna's counterattack and strike when she slowed. Suddenly, William used explosive energy to break free from Luna's vines. He followed with a swallow counter and pierce, but the moves quickly drained his stamina. Luna took advantage of this and fired her crossbow. In response, William used a block counter to deflect the shot, but Carl saw William was at risk if his next attack failed. When William delivered his final strike, Carl immediately saw that he had failed. Meanwhile, William looked around to find where Luna had gone. Without warning, she appeared behind him and mocked his sword skills. While he can't move, she begins absorbing William's aura. Seeing this, Carl assumed William's energy was being drained. Then he realized that it was due to the effects of hallucinogenic plants. Luna had cleverly planted fly agaric spores within the vines earlier, so once the vines broke, mushrooms quickly grew and released spores, and during William's last attack, he had unknowingly inhaled them. Understanding her strategy, Carl silently vowed to defeat her for William's sake. In the end, William was sent out flying and Luna was declared the winner. As he fell, Carl rushed forward to catch him, but Lace's hair reached him first, and Carl wondered when she grew close to William. Additionally, he wonders why she was hiding far away. Afterwards, Anna found William unresponsive due to the strange hallucinogenic energy. Hearing this, Carl told Lisa to use her black magic to give William a mild electric shock. When the jolt worked, William woke up and thanked Lisa, causing her to blush. Without a word, she ran away and left him confused. Meanwhile, Anna saw Lisa's memories and expected Hera's punishment, but Carl doubted it before her match. At that moment, Hera was already punishing Lisa for failing Alan and still joining the competition. Striking her, Hera demanded to know if a mere dog like her deserved it. When Lisa was a child, she was a poor orphan raised in the Sana family's dark magic temple. Their magic fed on pain, so Lisa's dog was killed before her, and the Sana family had no morals, so humanity meant nothing to them. Thus, Lisa was one of the few survivors that was turned into a deadly killer. Now Hera demanded if Lisa had forgotten their family's teachings. She reminded her that true loyalty meant total sacrifice for her master, but since Lisa failed to protect Alan, Hera declared her arm useless. In response, Lisa admitted her failure. She bowed and accepted her punishment, but Carl's sword intervened and struck Hera's weapon aside. He reminded Hera she couldn't abuse Lisa freely at the academy. Seeing Carl appear, she was pleased that he had approached her first. She raised her hand with a ring and planned to collar Carl like Lisa. Carl then realized Hera didn't know Alan was bound to him by the Shadow Oath, but when Hera understood what he meant, she cursed him. In response, Carl warned her to wish for his happiness, or Alan would feel his pain instead. As he approached Lisa, Hera asked mockingly if he fancied himself a savior. She also emphasized that Lisa could never escape the Sana family's control. Seeing Hera's disregard for life, Carl drew his sword, but Anna warned that fighting Hera risked his disqualification and only Lisa's warmest memories could free her. Carl then told Lisa she still had a match to win and she could stay. At that moment, moment, William's face flashed through Lysa's mind, and she remembered the promise she made. Slowly, she reached for her collar as Carl urged her to leave the basement. Seeing Lysa beginning to resist, Hera prepared to increase her torment. But Lysa was determined not to die there, and finally broke free. Immediately, she ran toward the exit to keep her promise, but she's already exhausted. Fortunately, William caught her and was relieved she was safe. However, Hera insisted Lysa was still theirs despite the broken magic. But Albus arrived and declared that Lysa was a match participant, not property. Still, Hera emphasized the Academy couldn't protect Lysa after the duels. Albus then asked if making Lysa his student meant defiance, since Hera no longer had sign authority. As she left, Carl thanked Albus, who said he came only at William's request. They then entrusted Lysa to William, which left him confused. But Anna told him not to disturb Lysa, who was now resting in his arms. Meanwhile, Carl thanked Oliver for revealing the secret basement. Oliver then revealed that Lysa was forfeited, so Anna advanced. But in another group stage, Gloria faced the Nameless Knight. Despite her strength, she lost without landing a hit. Back at the arena, Moran urged Carl to enter or face disqualification in 3 seconds. In response, a bolt of lightning struck his side. Following that, Carl remarked that everyone seemed a little too impatient. Without wasting time, he called on Luna to begin the match. Luna immediately fired her crossbow at him, and the arrows laced with hallucinogens. Carl then countered with Thunder Flame and blocked her old tricks. Impressed, she praised his move as cool and admitted defeat. Moran then announced Sandru banned Thunder Flame, making Carl scoff at the Academy's fairness. Next came the match between Anna and the Nameless Knight. As Carl passed by, he heard Cassidon warn Anna not to punch the knight due to his strong defense, but he ignored Carl, so Carl simply advised Anna to be careful and retreat if needed. As he left, Carl wondered who the unknown knight was from his past. Meanwhile, Anna attacked with Crystal Meh, Lightning Crackle, and Rock Boom, which surprised Cassidon with her 3 unique spells. However, the knight stood calmly as the spells flew toward him. He then said Anna's spells failed, and Carl suspected the knight absorbed magic. Suddenly, the knight declared that power scales always balance equally. Immediately, Anna was thrown back by a wind spell that struck and defended. As Carl caught her, he realized the knight was too strong and the match was lost. Afterwards, the final match is Carl versus the knight, where the winner will be the Academy's new head. Hearing this, George and others laughed at the thought of Carl leading the Academy. As the announcer asked who would win between the knight or Carl, the match began. Carl stepped up confidently, vowing to win despite facing his toughest opponent yet. Moreover, he sought to reveal the knight and end the prejudice, but the knight scoffed. Carl then mocked the magic-fed weapon, and the knight praised him for revealing its true form. Still, Carl intended to test whether the knight was truly invincible. The knight confidently declared Carl could never break his defense, so using his wind, he enveloped him in the name of justice. But Carl simply snapped his fingers. He then asked if the knight was a judge, and that a mere wind couldn't defeat his boiling blood. Additionally, he claimed there's always a blind spot and formed a blood lava domain. While doing so, he stressed that others failed to break the knight's defense not from weakness. As he listened, the knight saw Carl's blood seeping in his shield. With that, Carl demanded to see how much blood magic he could swallow. In response, he called Carl a battle lunatic worthy of being his opponent. With that, he proposed that they have a proper duel. Unimpressed, Carl warned not to underestimate a blood swordsman shaped by the shadows. Before the knight could attack, he was caught off guard by Carl's attack. Looking around, he realized too late Carl had planted blood traps while he blocked overhead attacks. Regardless, Carl aimed his sword at him to reveal his identity. But the knight caught his sword and praised him as the first to get that close. Still, he insisted the battle wasn't over and unleashed angel wings for offense and defense. Pushed back, Carl realized this opponent was far from ordinary. The knight's wings boosted his power and speed, so he wasn't to be taken lightly. Determined to give him no time, Carl began attacking. The knight blocked it and declared it was time Carl learned the rules. He retaliated with another powerful strike, but Carl only told him to come at him. As their blades clashed, the knight found himself invigorated by the duel. From the stands, Chris recognized the knight as a former trainee but didn't know why he'd returned. Meanwhile, Sandra was also surprised and ordered Moran to assassinate him. Back on the field, the knight saw Carl as his equal but questioned his growing strength. In response, Carl triggered rapid healing and asked if the knight thought blood magic was just for traps. Taking it seriously, the knight summoned holy swords to drain Carl's blood with a wide-range barrage, but Carl warned him not to underestimate a blood magic swordsman. As Carl summoned a blood monster, the knight asked who would win between light and shadow. As his sword struck, he asked if Carl still planned to fight to the end, but Carl smirked and told him to struggle with his blood energy. In response, the knight called Carl cunning for binding him with blood energy. Carl then said blood energy lies and suffocates, but also wanted to see the knight's trump cards. The knight quickly unleashed Sana's hand of the undead that restrained all life. He also used Death Wither to drain vitality and admitted he didn't expect to need it. Thus, he admitted that Carl had already won by pure skill. Though the knight showed goodwill, Carl's instincts screamed at the looming threat. Without warning, an assassin lunged toward them. Carl quickly pulled the knight aside and sensed the ambusher held great power. Suddenly, the knight's mask fell, revealing Crown Prince Leonard, who once led rebel suppression but died young. Now Carl realized Leonard's death wasn't natural, but caused by ongoing noble assassinations. Unfazed, Leonard shattered the attackers with his spectral harm. As the bodies fell, he muttered they never stopped hunting him once they caught his trail. Thus, Leonard used Vault form to borrow weapons from the Empire's pawn shop to fight rebels. Carl also joined to impress Leonard and to not worry about Sandru anymore. Besides, he hadn't yet used his full power since rebirth, so now is the time. With a flash of his sword, he declared that a river of blood would flow. All fired up, Carl and Leonard were ready to kill everyone. Soon, Carl and Leonard found themselves surrounded by bandits. Without hesitation, Leonard used Eternal Stars to stop the challenging insects. Eager to show Thunder Flame Dragon's power, Carl joined the attack. As he struck the enemies, he mocked their pathetic attempt at assassination. Meanwhile, Leonard summoned his moon sight to punish those who threatened him. Suddenly, an arrow flew toward him. Blood splattered, but it was Carl's blood magic and warned Leonard to stay alert. So Leonard thanked him and proposed ending the fight together. Moments later, the remaining bandits were incinerated, and silence fell over the arena. Yet Sandra is determined to kill Leonard and performs a blood sacrifice ritual. The platform then began to move and sink. Suddenly, a potion struck Leonard and disabled his angel wings. Furthermore, he was unable to summon strength. Tapping into regeneration, Carl realized Leonard would have died without him just like before. At that moment, Carl's dragon unleashed Thunder Hellfire to clear the poisonous mist. Suddenly, a flesh-eating sandworm appeared, so Carl quickly warned Leonard. Carl knew the sandworm's shell resisted magic, so the poisoned Leonard had to stay away. Without delay, he summoned his dragon. It then used Dragon Stop to crush the sandworm's protective shell. Then with a blast of dragon breath, the creature was scorched. After that, the dragon followed up by dispersing it with a powerful swipe. So it was sent toward Sandru, who demanded if Carl was openly attacking royalty. But Leonard said Carl saved him, and asked Sandru why the assassination happened on his watch. Feigning innocence, Sandru claimed he was hurt too and vowed to find the mastermind. Leonard then declared that Carl saved royalty and granted him noble status by law. Hence, he made Carl a viscount and tasked him to help Sandru investigate. Besides, he thinks Sandru is linked to the sandworm. After Carl thanked Leonard, he reminded Sandru of his win and the promised wish. Sandru agreed, though he planned to enslave the winner, but Leonard already claimed Carl. Carl then wished for the Cooper family's Silvermist swamp as his fiefdom. Hearing this, Leon called Carl greedy since fiefs showed imperial rank. Even so, Leonard said Carl deserved a fief, but noted its political sensitivity. Instead, he offered Carl the Ink Abyss Ridge near the imperial capital. But Sandru already spent a fortune for the king's promise of the Black Gold Rich Ridge. Moreover, it held half the Empire's magic, so he wouldn't give it up.
So piracy is coming back. I think the reason why this is happening is the old quote from Gavin. Piracy is a service problem. The reason why piracy went down is because there were services like Netflix, for example, that acted as a market replacement for piracy, and the amount of money that you had to spend was minimal enough to where you could get the value out of it, and instead of spending the extra time and the potential risk with piracy, you could just simply access the shows easily. I think Spotify is the best example that a lot of us use now. How many of you guys had LimeWire, and now you have Spotify? I know I did. So Spotify is an example of this happening and working in an effective way. But the problem is that with TV shows and movies, there are too many mouths to feed, and now people are going back to piracy. That's what my opinion is. I'll watch the video and see what they say.
The 2010s were the golden age of piracy.
Oh, yeah.
BitTorrent accounted for a third of all internet traffic.
Wow.
LimeWire had more monthly users than Facebook, and the Pirate Bay was the only video store in town where you were sure to find what you were looking for.
You get that 1080p release a day before it comes out on theaters.
Exactly, of course. The world was slowly switching from physical to digital media, and even people who weren't particularly tech-savvy realized that digital goods could be replaced endlessly with practically zero marginal cost. At its peak, 95% of all music downloads were pirated because it had become cheaper and, above all else, an easier way to fill up large digital libraries that were being made possible by cheap digital storage. But then, it just stopped. Since 2012, the internet has gotten faster, storage has gotten cheaper, and people have become more comfortable with computers, which should have just accelerated a growth trend. But it didn't. Since 2015, peer-to-peer file sharing has collapsed in popularity. And you might think you already know why. Streaming services like Spotify and Netflix were just a better, easier, and safer way to access content.
That's one reason.
And now, as these services have become markedly worse and simultaneously more expensive, piracy is making a comeback. It seems
that's the reason.
Pretty simple, right? The only problem is that's not the whole story.
Good.
Realistically, these companies knew this day would come. It was just really important that they could pretend
it's
it
too hard
would.
for normies. Yeah, I think that also them like shutting down and then re-hosting Pirate Bay over and over hurt piracy a lot because, and also LimeWire. It's kind of like if you cut off the head of the snake, you're going to remove a lot of people's access to piracy because like there are these websites that everybody would use and everybody would know, and just by the nature of how torrenting websites work, then seeding and like all that, the more people use a site, the better the site is. So whenever you cut off a few of the heads and then people went to a bunch of different sites, I think that made piracy less accessible for the lowest common denominator of internet user. I think that was another effect that it had.
For a lot of people, they decided it's time to cut back.
Legitimately, it might be time to cancel some subscriptions, and I'm probably gonna have to cancel some.
Some of them I'm not using, and it's just wasting money.
There's so many of these, it's hard to keep track.
At that point, that's an adversarial relationship. I don't want to pay people to enter adversarial relationships.
That's right. As I said, for this business to be a growth business for the company with margins that our shareholders will feel good about.
So
well, that didn't happen.
Really made piracy go away, and what's really bringing it back might sound simple, but there's actually a bit more going on. First and foremost, the majority of people actually would like to acquire their media legally as long as it was easy and not ridiculously expensive.
People want to have the media legally because it makes it easier to transfer and to use. So, and also there's risks with piracy. Like for example, you download something and it could have a virus in it or something like that. Or obviously you could get caught, but like realistically it's probably a virus. So, and again, these are 1% probabilities, but like if you had a bag of M&Ms and one M&M was poisoned, would you want to eat a bag of M&Ms? No, you wouldn't, right? You want to have another bag, even if the other bag was like way, way more expensive.
Reasonable people understand that it costs time and money to produce a song, film a movie, or develop a video game. And the people involved in these projects do need to be compensated or else they are just not going to make them. Even people who frequent the high seas, so to speak, know this better than anybody else. A survey coming out of Australia at the peak of online piracy found that people who pirated content were actually more likely to pay for it if it was available. In a finding that really ages the study, online piracy...
Interest in content would imply interest in content. If people are willing to steal something, they're also probably part of the target audience automatically, because they wouldn't be stealing it if they weren't part of the audience. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like common sense, but like stating it kind of helps put things into perspective.
Were far more likely to pay for movies and music through iTunes or QuickFix. This was because people who pirated content were just more likely to consume content overall, and most of them would only make the trip to the Bay if they couldn't find what they were looking for more legitimately. So there were two things that changed after 2013. Sure, there were a few high-profile crackdowns on some of these sites, but even the regulators themselves knew they were just playing a game of whack-a-mole. One of the most downloaded files on the Pirate Bay was the Pirate Bay, a complete copy of the site with all the addresses that could be set up by basically anybody with some basic server hardware in the event that the authorities took down the original site. But then came along the streaming sites that, thanks to faster internet speeds, could let users watch content on demand without granting them direct access to digital files which could then be copied and shared illegally. The big thing.
And the fact is that like Netflix is a better service than using Pirate Bay. It is. It's a better service. You get a higher quality product on average. There's no watermarks. There's a lot like it's a better service. It's the same as Spotify. Spotify is a better service than Pirate Bay was. I don't know. Like I mean, so you like you're right in terms of the breadth of content, but I don't think that you're right in terms of the quality of the individual content.
Was that these options were just so easy compared to piracy, and so cheap compared to buying songs or movies one by one, that it just didn't really make sense to bother with anything else. Nowadays, that's clearly changed. There are dozens of streaming services that are each getting more and more expensive every year. The movies and shows that you watch are
This is crazy. This is insane. This is like we've gone full circle, and now we're all the way back to cable. Quality is worse? Well, again, like, so quality, you're thinking about quality in terms of video quality. I'm thinking about quality in terms of aggregation. I'm thinking about quality in terms of being able to give recommendations. I'm thinking about quality in terms of usability, quality in terms of finding files. All of these things, and again, guys, I understand a lot of, almost everybody in here, like, we're all internet Andes, right? Like, we're on the internet all the time. We're talking on the internet constantly, doing stuff constantly. I think that you really downplay the value that an average person gets out of having a self-contained system. You really, really downplay it. And I think Apple, Steve Jobs understood that. That's why he was such a great visionary. And that's why the iPod was so successful and it blew everything else out of the water. Its usability is something that is actually a massive accessibility issue, and it cuts out so many people that you just never even see. It's about convenience, yeah.
Split up over different providers, the services themselves are getting worse by introducing ads and pushing less relevant content. And on top of all of that, it's just not that easy anymore. Even individual TV shows have certain seasons split up over different streaming services, and the first step in saying
what? The same show is on multiple streaming services with different seasons? Is this true? Oh my god.
To watch a movie these days is
what
to
a
Google
scam.
what
That's
streaming
insane.
service
I've
has
never
the
heard of that.
1984 release of Gremlins, and if you're unlucky, what streaming service plus what VPN combo will get you the movie you want to watch. If you're already going through all that effort, it gets really tempting to just replace streaming services with your port of choice, because in most cases, it will just be easier. So yeah, streaming services were cheap and easy, which killed the need for piracy. But then they slowly became expensive and terrible, which brought it back. Pretty straightforward, right?
Exactly.
Wrong. It's easy to write this whole thing off as just dumb companies being needlessly greedy to their own peril.
Yeah.
And while that's definitely part of the problem, there is a lot more to it than that.
What is it?
Music streaming by comparison is decent. There are multiple services, but almost all of them have almost all of the music that you would possibly be looking for.
And also, you can import your own music as well.
Result, nobody really bothers to pirate songs anymore,
That's
which
right.
is particularly impressive when you remember that just 15 years ago, 95% of music was being downloaded illegally.
Service
Artists
problem.
have not been thrilled about the lower revenue they have got from streaming versus physical album sales, but most of them still go along with it because even a small share of something is better than most of their music being accessed for free.
Yeah, the thing is that like people are going, you either give it out for a price that people want to pay, or it gets stolen. Because they can't enforce it. That's the issue, is that like, it's unethical to steal things, but nobody cares if you can steal it and get away with it. That's just the truth.
This raises a potentially unpopular idea, that it might not be streaming that's broken. It might be the movie industry that's broken. The golden age of streaming was never going to last because it was never meant to last. So it's time to learn how money works to find out why piracy is really making a
Okay, let's find out.
This video was made possible by iScanner.
What's this?
I was sorting through some old receipts for tax season, trying to remember which ones I still needed to file.
Have receipts?
And of course, one of the important ones had coffee stains all over it. The text was barely
People do
readable.
receipts
Classic
still?
mean. That's why I started using iScanner. I just scanned the receipt and it used AI to clean everything up. It straightened the page, fixed the lighting, and even removed the worst of the stains. I could finally read the numbers again and drop the PDF straight into my records. Since then, it's kind of become a goal too. Whenever I'm scanning documents, notes, receipts, or even something my dog got his teeth on, iScanner makes it super easy to salvage whatever's left and turn it into something useful. It's fast, it works across all my devices, and the free version actually does what I need. Editing signatures and storing everything in one place.
So you got fake documents? That's cool.
And make your paperwork just a little less painful.
I don't even use paperwork.
Netflix is the most dominant movie and TV streaming service in the world.
Yeah, no surprise.
It has over 300 million paying subscribers, and
Jesus.
unlike a lot of its competitors, it's actually profitable.
Oh, it's actually making money now? I thought it was losing money still.
But from its very first days of online streaming, they knew they would eventually lose people back to piracy. They just really didn't care. And to see why, I'm sorry, but you are going to have to look at some financials.
Okay.
Last year, it made $8.7 billion in net income after taxes, which is extremely impressive. But it still makes it hard to justify the valuation of more than
8.7 billion. 8.7. Did it say billion or million? Wait, it only made $8 million, but the enterprise value is $500 billion? Who the fuck decided that? An elf? Oh, after 10,000 years, it's going to be worth it. Oh, billion? But that's a million.
after taxes. I have to look at some financials. Last year, it made $8.7 billion in net income.
Okay, well, I guess he just said the wrong number.
Taxes,
I
which
don't
is
know.
extremely impressive, but it still makes it hard to justify the valuation of more than $500 billion.
I mean, I don't know. Like, usually a company's valuation, like, especially if it's not like an intellectual property company, like Netflix does its own shows. So, like, even with intellectual property, like, you're really looking at like a 7 to 15x multiplier from everything that I know about venture capital, period. And like, even 7 is the ceiling, and 15 would have to be like some sort of like weird AI thing that like nobody's ever thought about. So, I mean, 540 is insane.
At that rate, shareholders would need 57 years for their investment to pay off, which is not a reasonable bet for a company in an industry that has only been dominant for a decade. 57 years ago, watching a movie looked like this. And in another 57 years from now, it's highly unlikely that we will still be watching movies through the current selection of streaming services. Now, most investors in this company aren't dumb. They know that Netflix can't make their money back with its current structure. What they are banking on is being able to offer a cheaper service that can charge more for in order to fatten up those margins.
Let's not talk about my margins, by the way. Being nice and fat, that's a nice shirt. Do they make it from men?
Anyway, cutting content, raising prices, and pushing strange features like mobile games within the app are not some surprise new rollout. They are part of a development.
It's the ads. I think the ads are what's really going to push people away from using apps. Because like people like the reason why people went to piracy in the first place is because of accessibility. You could only watch a TV show at 8 p.m. and also because there were a million commercials in it.
My plan that the company knew it would have to implement since it started offering online streaming. It would just be a lot better if they could do it without competition. Now, on the expenses side, there is some good news. As technology improves, network infrastructure has become cheaper for the same capacity, which means the actual cost to stream videos to users is getting better every year. Netflix's cost of revenue adjusted for inflation has actually been stable since 2022, despite adding almost 100 million new users in that time. Included in those costs are the
so their revenue stays the same, but they keep adding users? I don't think that's a good thing. That sounds like a bad thing.
aforementioned servers and network infrastructure, but it also includes the cost to license and produce their own movies, TV shows, and games. Another big reason their costs have been improving is because they just aren't licensing as much content as they used to, and that's for two reasons. The first was a business decision to cut down on a cost, especially for content that wasn't drawing in new users. The second reason is simply because they can't get their hands on as many titles anymore, because independent studios have made their own streaming services and want to keep their biggest IPs exclusive. So
this is the big reason. Is that like there are just too many other services, and you don't have a one-stop shop. Spotify is a one-stop shop. Netflix isn't anymore, and it's not even close.
Force users to either switch to their platform or shell out for 2 or more streaming services.
Crazy.
Netflix is slowly producing its own titles, but that hasn't caught up to the content they are losing from licensing. So then
Netflix also has Netflix has a massive weakness that they don't have. Every IP they have to source themselves. Like Disney has its own endemic IPs, like Snow White or something like that. That maybe they can make something really bad, but it's a known IP that everybody understands. Netflix, like One Piece, was a massive success. My dad watched this. He loved it. He thought the show was amazing. So, like, I mean, it was a big success. And even the Devil May Cry show, I think, did pretty well, right? But overall, Netflix has made good shows, but they have to source these shows themselves. And so they have to pay for licensing, etc. Whereas, like, Paramount or HBO, they might have the IP for this to begin with. Especially this is true with Disney. Like, think about the advantage that Disney has whenever they already own the entire catalog of Marvel movies. That's like such a massive baseline advantage.
Does this mean that Netflix doesn't care about piracy? Well, publicly they say they do, of course, but piracy is going to hurt their competition a lot more than it's going to hurt them. If people can't find a movie or show on Netflix and then give up and pirate it, that didn't really cost Netflix any money, because the vast majority of content out there.
I requested one of the doctors to call me. I don't count my chickens before they hatch. I'll feel better whenever he's at home, but things are looking good. Let's get back to it.
A lot more than it's going to hurt them. If people can't find a movie or show on Netflix and then give up and pirate it, that didn't really cost Netflix any money, because the vast majority of content out there wasn't theirs to lose, and they most likely didn't spend the money producing it. A 2023 paper in the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization titled Pirating Shell found that when movies moved off Netflix to another platform, piracy of that content increased by more than 20%. Now,
Netflix has such a massive first mover advantage. They're basically like the Twitch of like streaming platforms. Is that while other streaming platforms exist and they're successful, they don't have the same brand recognition and name recognition that Netflix does. Like, everybody knows what Netflix is. So I think that's another really big reason why this happens too.
First and foremost, that's an amazing name for a professional journal article.
Yeah.
But apart from that, it showed why Netflix hasn't been too concerned with online piracy. In a now infamous quote from the company's chief content officer, they said that in order for Netflix to be successful, we need to become movie studios faster than movie studios can become us. Piracy that disproportionately hurt legacy movie studios and their libraries of content was not something that Netflix would encourage. But behind closed doors, they certainly weren't too sad it was happening. Another way to think about this is that obviously Amazon isn't encouraging shoplifting, but it's a problem that hurts their competition far more than it hurts them.
POV, I guess. I mean, they're right. You know, yeah, obviously people like what Netflix is saying is that they have a lot of like smaller shows that don't have like a huge amount of like they're not super